Chapter 1: The Three Punishments of the Wealthy Family's Young Lady. The Shao Mansion, penthouse. All kinds of pouts and gasps, exuding a charming aura that makes people blush and their hearts race. Jiang Hao, you've finally come to your senses. If you want to pay off your debt, you have to trade your body like this. I don't know how long it took, but in the bedroom, a man and a woman let out two long sighs. Jiang Hao got dressed and got up silently. His face was delicate, but his features were sharp and handsome. At the moment, his upper body was covered in lipstick marks and shallow scratches. His mouth was also broken for some reason, slowly bleeding. President Shao, for the sake of our friendship over the years, I hope you will keep your word. Please lend a helping hand this week. I really don't want my Haoran media to go bankrupt and close down. And my 3 million debt. Jiang Hao said tiredly, averting his gaze and not looking at the stunning woman on the bed. The woman lazily lifted the quilt, not caring that a large expanse of her springtime beauty was pouring in front of Jiang Hao. Her skin was as white as snow, her long messy hair draped around her waist, and her exaggeratedly beautiful figure hardly matched her aloof and ethereal face. Her phoenix eyes were deep and cold, and the bloodshot red lips were still stained with Jiang Hao's blood. The woman known as President Shao did not say a word, but casually reached out and pressed the button next to the bed. Suddenly, several voice messages sounded in turn. Voice 1: President Shao, Shokang Hospital opened without our Shao Group's permission, trying to break our monopoly on medical resources in Tianhai City. Please give instructions. Voice 2: Mr. Shao, the mayor of Tianhai City has been replaced by us. I wonder if you have a satisfactory candidate for the next mayor. Voice 3: Xiao Yusheng, it seems that my little friend Jiang Hao has escaped to your place. What a disobedient child. Gee, it seems that my imprisonment was still too lenient. The voice message ended, and Xiao Yusheng stretched nonchalantly. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, was pale as death and sweating profusely. He had heard the third voice message clearly. Su Ruoyan was coming for him. Su Ruoyan was 3 years older than him and his big sister from childhood. She came from the Su family in the imperial capital. When he was young, he was called Lin Hao of the Lin family in the imperial capital. But then, the Lin family and the Su family became blood enemies and were almost wiped out. When he was 10 years old, he went into hiding under the protection of a distant relative and came to Tianhai to live a lonely life. Since then, Lin Hao is dead and Jiang Hao was born. Until a year ago, Su Ruoyan came to Tianhai for some reason and helped him establish Haoran media. The reason is very simple: he is very similar to Lin Hao. Naturally, Jiang Hao cannot reveal his true identity. Otherwise, what awaits him is only the end of being eliminated by the Su family. Over the past 6 months, Su Ruoyan has deliberately allowed the company to go bankrupt, alienating everyone from him. And now this sick woman has actually imprisoned him. He really had no other choice but to escape from Su Ruoyan's basement by chance today and come to Xiao Yusheng for help. And Xiao Yusheng's condition for help was very simple. Spend a night with her. Xiao Yusheng looked at Jiang Hao, who looked numb, with her lips curled up in a faint, indifferent curve. Then she grabbed up the wrapping paper on the bedside table and threw it at Jiang Hao's feet. Who said you could use a condom? Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. You said yourself that you were in your danger period. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth, but before he could finish speaking, Xiao Yusheng interrupted. I said I was in my danger period, but when did I give you permission to use that thing? A cold look flashed in Xiao Yusheng's eyes. Jiang Hao fell silent and stopped talking to her. He had already done what he needed to do anyway, and now he just had to wait for Xiao Yusheng to help him pay off his debts. After that, he would escape to a small city and live out the rest of his life. Xiao Yusheng curled her red lips into a smile, picked up a pair of scissors, and cut out the red stain that belonged to her from the bedsheet. She placed the stained red fabric in the exquisite little box on the bedside table, then waved at Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao nodded, and just as he leaned over, he was suddenly pushed onto the bed by Xiao Yusheng. She wrapped her arms around Jiang Hao's neck and kissed him gently on the lips she had previously bitten. In high school, they all bullied me, the illegitimate daughter who was kicked out of the Shao family. Only you protected me. If you had stayed when I returned to the Shao family, would Su Ruoyan have set you up? What about our promise? You promised to always be by my side, didn't you? You think I want to be like this? I would rather not have this shitty company. Xiao Yusheng's eyes could not help but well up at this. I don't want anything, as long as I can marry you and be with you every day. She clutched the corners of the quilt tightly, but you? You left at that time. President Xiao, we are not the same, and I am not worthy of you. As for why I didn't keep my promise. Jiang Hao shook his head and looked at Xiao Yusheng, who had already controlled the rise and fall of countless people, and sighed. He had witnessed Xiao Yusheng's madness step by step. Staying by Xiao Yusheng's side, sooner or later he would also be in danger. Xiao Yusheng slowly got up, took out a piece of paper, and threw it at Jiang Hao. Sign it. The debt will be paid off, and you won't have to be afraid of Su Ruoyan anymore. The Su family in the imperial capital is very terrifying, but in this Tianhai city. Speaking of which, Xiao Yusheng's scarlet lips curled up into a cruel smile. The emperor is far away, and anyone in the imperial capital who dares to stretch out a hand will have it chopped off, and anyone who dares to stick their head out will lose their head. She carelessly poured a glass of red wine, her red lips slightly parted, and she lightly sipped the blood like wine. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, stared at the paper agreement with an unpleasant expression. Marry you? And not be able to leave your side after marriage? He took a deep breath and smiled at Xiao Yusheng. President Xiao, didn't you say that if I slept with you just once, you would help me? Why do I have to marry you? I've changed my mind. If you don't marry me, I won't help you. You didn't keep your promise back then, and now I can break mine too. Xiao Yusheng's expressionless face lazily gazed out of the floor-to-ceiling windows at the dazzling view of the Tianhe city center. Jiang Hao clenched his fists tightly on hearing this. What's the point of begging this woman himself? This is clearly the same as Su Ruoyan. It's just a different way of saying imprisoning him. He has escaped from one sickly woman to the side of another sickly woman. At this moment, Xiao Yusheng glanced back at him and gently touched his face. So what if I'm just wasting my time with you? She leaned into Jiang Hao's ear and whispered coldly, you can take this as revenge. Don't love me? Hate me? Don't want to be around me? Fine, I'll let you experience everything you hate. But if you can get me pregnant within a year, I'll give you whatever you want, not to mention 3 million. Xiao Yusheng kissed Jiang Hao's lips lightly, and a rare tenderness flashed in her deep eyes. Jiang Hao only had one thought in his head at the moment. Escape. I have to escape. So, he forced a smile and said, President Xiao, I want to go outside and buy a pack of cigarettes to calm down, is that okay? This reason was lame and childish, but he had already run out of options. Unexpectedly, however, Xiao Yusheng just narrowed his eyes meaningfully. It was as if he had completely seen through Jiang Hao's escape, but he didn't say anything. Go. Xiao Yusheng's mouth curled into a cold arc. Jiang Hao nodded quickly got dressed and left the bedroom. Xiao Yusheng walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the bustling and luxurious night view of the Tianhai city center. The secretary walked in and respectfully said, Mr. Xiao, have you listened to the previous voice message? How are those matters to be resolved? Shoukan Hospital, you figure it out yourselves. The new mayor, pick someone who can contribute benefits but who can't be heard in the imperial capital officialdom. The previous mayor can be discarded. Su Ruoyan doesn't need to be bothered. Xiao Yusheng's beautiful eyes were deep and lonely as she stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. The neon lights in the distance cast a shadow over her stunning profile. President Xiao, it seems that Jiang Hao is planning to escape. Should I tell the security guards to stop him? The secretary asked cautiously, bowing her head deeply. I know. Let him escape. Let my beloved prey escape for a little while longer. If I don't discipline him a little, how will he ever stay by my side? I'll go catch him myself. Xiao Yusheng's lips pursed up, pulling up a strange arc. Aren't you afraid that he will really escape? The secretary was sweating like rain, always feeling that the temperament of her CEO today was not quite right. Escape? The entire Tianhai is mine, where can he escape to? Xiao Yusheng raised his chin and looked out the window at the Tianhai city center. His originally exquisite lips were now twisted in a somewhat deranged manner. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the various CBD corporate buildings, whether they are food and medicine, entertainment or technology, all have two words printed on them without exception. Zhao's. Jiang Hao, this time I will give you 3 punishments for catching you. For the first punishment, I will make you not. Slow rhythm, slightly sickly, the plot of the crematorium chasing her husband is gradual, not a direct vulgar outburst. As for the very aloof President Xiao, he will slowly become a soft and cute little wife. The main point is the contrast. Brothers, you will understand from reading the comments on Xiao Yusheng. As the plot develops, it will become more and more sweet, unlike ordinary sickly beauties who like to oppress the protagonist. Also, the worldview of this book is a parallel world controlled by the chaebol and the aristocracy. I won't say more, I won't say it. Chapter 2, The Sickly and Spoiled Qingmei Su Ruoyan. Zhang Hao's face paled as he desperately left the Shao building. He could sense that Xiao Yoxing's gaze just now was not right. It was as if he could see through his thoughts. But now, he had completely run out of options. Today, he must fight for his freedom. He wanted to take a taxi to escape, but he didn't have a penny in his pocket, and he had even left his phone at the company before being imprisoned by Su Ruoyan. He had to walk. Not far away, a cleaning lady looked at Zhang Hao and laughed, then called someone. Miss Su Ruoyan, I've seen Zhang Hao, he's escaped. Haha, I guessed it. But Miss Su, I saw lipstick marks all over Zhang Hao's face. And there was a woman's underwear hanging from his belt. Is he with Xiao Yusheng? Xiao Yusheng, that bastard, she dared to sleep with my mannequin? Miss Su, calm down. Zhang Hao is just a doll that you use for emotional support. There is no intimate relationship with any physical contact. Just find another one, right? There's no need to. Calm down? There's only one doll in the world that looks like my dead brother Lin Hao. Now, I'm going to catch him. Zhang Hao ran as fast as he could, and after a 3-kilometer journey, he finally arrived at the company. He had to get his phone back, otherwise, there was no way he could escape from Tianhai City. The Hao Ran media office was deserted. None of the employees who were supposed to be on night shift monitoring the operation of the short video anchors were left. His employees had basically all run away. Zhang Hao didn't have time to feel sad about people leaving him behind. He quickly ran to his office to get his phone back. As he was about to push open the office door, he heard voices inside. The voices were those of Jiang Qingyao, the hottest internet celebrity created by Hao Ran Media, and Wang Tianming, his former CFO, whom he trusted the most. Jiang Qingyao is a newcomer he really likes. The company has spent an unknown amount of resources to make Jiang Qingyao famous. Zhang Hao narrowed his eyes and peered into the office through the glass door. Jiang Qingyao was wearing a white dress, her long, dark hair falling to her waist, looking charming and pure. Wang Tianming, on the other hand, was wearing a suit with a spring in his step, smiling from time to time and pushing his gold-rimmed glasses. Qingyao, the employees haven't been paid yet, so I'll secretly take the money and then pin the blame on Zhang Hao. As you wish. Thunder Media has already contacted me. I'll directly unilaterally terminate the contract with Hao Ran in a few days. The penalty is only tens of thousands of dollars. Ha, Qingyao, I wish you success in terminating the contract in advance. The two men smiled at each other, while Zhang Hao's expression was gloomy, and a terrible anger flashed in his eyes. He was not only angry at these two brutes, but also at his own naivety. He was furious that he had been blind at the time and had not seen through his best friend Wang Tianming's true face. He was furious that, of course, he had been blind and had actually placed high hopes in Jiang Qingyao, promoting her. You have to know that Jiang Qingyao was expelled by the Tianhai Jiang family when she was young, and she couldn't even find a job after graduating from university. It was Zhang Hao himself who had cultivated her into the current internet celebrity with millions of followers. This ungrateful wretch has actually betrayed his trust and maliciously jumped ship. I praised you like that, but you woman. Zhang Hao's anger was difficult to dispel. He had wanted to record the two of them and the illegal content from earlier, but his phone was nowhere to be found. He could only deal with these two brutes the next day. Thinking about this, he opened the door with great difficulty, suppressing his anger. I'm back. I'll leave as soon as I get a phone, he said indifferently. Wang Tianming and Jiang Qingyao were taken aback, and then they looked at each other meaningfully. President Jiang, you've already run away, so why are you in the mood to come back and get your phone now? My resignation letter has been on your desk for 3 days. You're right, I forgot, the company is about to go bankrupt, so it doesn't matter if I resign or not. Jiang Qingyao smiled, lightly surveying Zhang Hao's disheveled appearance with unkempt hair and a pale face. Hey, Qingyao, that's not right. Our boss Jiang now owes a buttload of money and can't even afford to eat, and you want compensation too? That's too much. Wang Tianming laughed heartily. Zhang Hao's face was expressionless, as if he were treating them like rocks. He unlocked the drawer and took out his phone and charger. Zhang Hao was about to leave when he was stopped by Wang Tianming. Zhang Hao, the company has not yet issued employee wages, and you have embezzled it, haven't you? Now, hand over the money. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave today. Wang Tianming grinned cruelly. Jiang Hao's eyes were already bloodshot. You animal, you swallowed the hard-earned money of your employees, and now you dare to ask me for it? Jiang Qingyao also stopped him. Jiang Hao, you Puxian man have finally suffered retribution. I didn't beg you to make me an internet celebrity. You were just being self-absorbed. You just wanted to chase after me because of that. You think I can't make money as an internet celebrity without you? She stared at Jiang Hao coldly. Jiang Hao didn't say a word, staring blankly at the fruit knife on the table. A hint of madness crept up in his heart. His life was already going to be ruined anyway, so he might as well take 2 pigs and dogs with him before he perishes. Just as he was about to do something extreme, the office door opened again. The woman was wearing a burgundy wrap skirt, with long, slender, yet plump black silk legs. Her long, permed burgundy hair flowed down like a waterfall. When her narrow, beautiful eyes fixed on Jiang Hao, they flashed with a greedy, possessive light, and her flaming red lips curled up in a wicked smile. Her exaggerated figure was like a demon, seductive and mature. Jiang Hao felt utter despair when he saw the woman in front of him. Su Ruoyan. His face turned pale, and he almost lost hope of escape. In the past few days, he had been imprisoned in the basement by Su Ruoyan, and he had also seen the madness that this older sister-in-law had always hidden. Bondage, intimidation, and even forcing himself to be pinned under her every night when he went to sleep, as if she was treating him like a doll. He had countless times wanted to confess that he was actually Lin Hao, but he knew that once his identity was revealed, all that awaited him was to be killed by the Su family. Dear Jiang Hao, how could you run away? I hate disobedient children. Su Ruoyan smiled pathologically, gently stroked Jiang Hao's face, and then squeezed Jiang Hao's chin hard. Jiang Qingyao and Wang Tianming's heart sank. They could only see Su Ruoyan's tenderness, as if she were treating a lover, but they could not see the pathos and madness in Su Ruoyan's eyes. They thought that Su Ruoyan had come to avenge Jiang Hao. Of course, they had no idea about Su Ruoyan's real identity and background. They only knew that Su Ruoyan was a wealthy businesswoman and the person behind Hao Ran. At this moment, Su Ruoyan looked at Jiang Qingyao and Wang Tianming with a sinister expression. You two are just like 2 flies, and you dare to bully my little friend. You really want to die, don't you? Chapter 3, Everything About You is Mine. President Su, let me explain. Wang Tianming spoke first, his face looking unpleasant. Jiang Qingyao's face was grave, and she knew who the real owner of Haoran Media was. God knows how many companies like Haoran there are under Su Ruoyan's control. If she offended him, she would really be unable to survive in this industry. Jiang Hao was just lowering his head at the moment. These 2 pigs and dogs were no longer important in his eyes, and he was calculating how to escape. Su Ruoyan didn't bother with these 2 people, just smiling and letting Jiang Hao lean against her bosom, whispering in his ear. Well, Jiang Hao, what should we do with these 2 flies? No answer? You want to take your revenge yourself later? Jiang Hao, you're really bad. But don't get angry, otherwise how can I settle the score with you later? How dare you, a lowly puppet, sleep with Xiao Yusheng? Su Ruoyan's lips curled up in madness, and she stuck out her finger. Then, a few black-clad men barged in. Apparently, this was to prevent Jiang Hao from escaping again. Wang Tianming and Jiang Qingyao, on the other hand, had misunderstood the situation. Wang Tianming suddenly became a bit flustered and smiled apologetically. Su Zone, Jiang Zone, we just spoke a bit too much earlier. We hope you will forgive us if we offended you. We will leave now. He looked at the black-clad men around him, clenching his fists nervously. General Jiang, I was just joking. Wang Tianming looked at Jiang Hao with a smile. I hate flies talking. Su Ruoyan said indifferently, not bothering to look at such small people. Then one of the black-clad men stepped forward and blocked Wang Tianming's mouth. Jiang Hao's younger brother, I'll help you take care of these 2 in a while. Come with me first. I really want to know how you dare to contact other women. Su Ruoyan whispered, forcing a pill into Jiang Hao's mouth, and then with a sinister look on her face, she led Jiang Hao away from the office building. At the corner of Jiang Hao's clothes, a tracker was flashing from time to time. That was what Xiao Yusheng had previously installed on him. A secluded riverside, rarely visited by people. A Maybach slowly pulled up here. Inside the car, the seductive and evil-looking woman's beautiful eyes flashed with madness. Let me go. Jiang Hao's face was dark with anger. He wanted to resist, but his limbs had long since become limp and weak from the drug Su Ruoyan had fed him earlier. "Little brat, what are you playing at being innocent with me? What a load of rubbish you told me in the basement yesterday. You said you wanted to become Lin Hao completely and provide me with spiritual entertainment for the rest of my life. And today? Today you actually dared to go and sleep with Xiao Yuxing directly?" Su Ruoyan said coldly. "Don't tell me you want to sleep with me now too." Jiang Hao gritted his teeth and said, "Heh, sleep with you? Are you worthy? You are just a puppet chosen to satisfy my spiritual needs. Even if Lin Hao is dead, my innocence has always been reserved for him. If it weren't for you and my dead younger brother Lin Hao, who look and act alike, I would have killed you long ago. Your only reason for living in this world is to imitate my dead younger brother, Lin Hao. How dare you go to other women when I love you so much as a doll?" Su Ruoyan laughed maniacally. "Do you really think I can't see it? This year, you have not only treated me as a doll, but also as a chess piece to restrain Xiao Yusheng. Your love for me and Lin Hao is not love at all, it is just to satisfy your perverted desires." Jiang Hao angrily said, trying to push Su Ruoyan away, but he was too weak. Su Ruoyan's beautiful eyes were bloodshot, and she gently stroked Jiang Hao's face. "Pawn? Ha, you are my puppet, I can use you however I want. What's more, I imprisoned you for your own good. There are so many flirtatious bitches out there, and you are so innocent, I'm afraid you will be charmed by those bitches. Only my basement is the safest. Be good, listen to me, be imprisoned by your sister for the rest of your life, become your sister's doll, imitate Lin Hao, and don't go anywhere. Whatever you want, sister, I'll give it to you. Lin Hao's younger brother, sister, loves you so much, I miss you so much." Looking at the young man beneath her, Su Ruoyan's eyes filled with a trace of sad loneliness, as if she had remembered the young boy who had followed her around when she was a child, calling her sister. "I want to be free. Let me go." Jiang Hao trembled. Being by her sister's side is the most free and happiest. "Don't worry, after we get back, I'll cripple you so that you'll become Lin Hao's younger brother for good." Su Ruoyan smiled wickedly. Just as the two were entangled, the car door slowly opened from the outside. Xiao Yusheng was wearing a black trench coat, with her long hair floating in the cool breeze, looking absolutely beautiful. She stared at Su Ruoyan indifferently, as if she were staring at a lifeless corpse. "Isn't this President Xiao? How dare you come alone, President Xiao?" Su Ruoyan sneered. Jiang Hao was temporarily released from her grip, and looking at Xiao Yusheng condescendingly, he felt even more nervous. It was hard enough to deal with a sickly person like Su Ruoyan, and now there's another one? So what if there's only one person? This is my city. Xiao Yusheng said indifferently, and just glanced back, and the group of black-clad people who had surged over at some unknown time dispersed in panic like a tide. They were all natives of Tianhai, and their fear of Xiao Yusheng was engraved in their bones. No one wanted their wives and children to be inexplicably kidnapped in Tianhai City one day, or for them to be accidentally killed by a dump truck one day. "You're so arrogant, aren't you afraid of the authorities?" Su Ruoyan sneered, but before she could finish speaking, Xiao Yusheng pushed her aside and pulled Jiang Hao up. "Authorities? In Tianhai, I am the official family. If you want to report to the authorities, come to me." Xiao Yusheng's gaze was indifferent, and his long fingers lifted slightly. Instantly, the sirens sounded around them, and several police cars surrounded Su Ruoyan's Maybach. Jiang Hao was shocked. He knew that he had underestimated Xiao Yusheng's power in Tianhai. Xiao Yusheng lowered his head. The murderous intent and intimidation in his eyes had all turned into affection the moment he looked at Jiang Hao. Although that love was a little crazy and strange. "Jiang Hao, I am not her, I will give you a choice. Choose me or choose her." Xiao Yusheng breathed in Jiang Hao's ear like orchid, with a rare tenderness in his eyebrows and eyes. Su Ruoyan regained her composure and smiled. "Jiang Hao, younger brother, you have to choose carefully. Who knows when the people from the imperial capital will come down, and who knows, one day, will Tianhai City change its surname to Su?" Jiang Hao's face looked ugly, and he kept backing up. "Don't even think about running away. I haven't even tallied the debt for running away just now," Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. But as soon as she finished speaking, there was a plop in the river. Yes, Jiang Hao had not paid attention when he retreated, and coupled with the fact that he had been drugged and felt weak, he accidentally fell into the river. He was struggling in the water, and his miserable experiences were playing back in his mind like a revolving lantern. "In the next life, I hope." He was desperately reciting his last words in his heart when he saw a woman fall into the water above him. Xiao Yusheng swam recklessly downstream and grabbed Jiang Hao's hand. A few minutes later, Jiang Hao fainted and fell to the ground, feeling someone pressing his chest from time to time, and occasionally, a pair of lips pressing against his mouth, performing artificial respiration. Jiang Hao, remember, your life, your body, your soul, everything about you is mine. You dare to commit suicide before you get married? After you escaped, I thought of 3 punishments for you, and now, I'll add one more. The 4th punishment, if you dare to die, I will commit suicide and go to hell to find you. Wake up, I order you to wake up. Jiang Hao opened his eyes slightly and saw Xiao Yusheng's tears welling up like a spring, his eyes full of sadness and trembling. The former arrogance and indifference were completely shattered, replaced by helplessness and humility. Seeing him wake up, Xiao Yusheng was so happy that he wept, embracing his neck and crying out in grief. Jiang Hao, you say I've changed. It's true, I don't know how many people I've killed over the years. But one thing I've never changed. I've always loved you. Chapter 4, you just want it for free, don't you? The next morning, Jiang Hao opened his eyes blankly. Outside the window, the lush garden was full of birdsong and flowers, full of vitality. He vaguely remembered being taken back to Xiao Yusheng's manor by Xiao Yusheng last night. I hope I'm not locked up. Jiang Hao's heart sank as he looked at his hands and feet, but he was surprised to find that he was not bound. There was no way he had really been afraid of being imprisoned by Su Ruoyan these past few days. He surveyed the luxurious bedroom, a little puzzled. Where had Xiao Yusheng gone? Thinking of this woman, Jiang Hao's heart warmed. Last night, he accidentally fell into the river, and Xiao Yusheng actually jumped in to save him without hesitation. You have to understand, she could have easily asked someone else to save her, there was no need to take that risk. It's just that he really couldn't connect the current Xiao Yusheng with the little sister in high school who needed his protection. Back then, Xiao Yusheng was kind and gentle. But now, Tianhai City doesn't know how many people have died at her hands. Thinking about this, Jiang Hao shook his head with a bitter smile. At that moment, a maid pushed open the door. Young master, you're awake? Miss said that you can go to the garden of the manor to take a stroll after you wake up. Anything is fine as long as you are happy. The maid said with a smile. Jiang Hao was stunned. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Xiao Yusheng had not imprisoned him? He let out a sigh of relief, put on some clean clothes, and left the bedroom. In the wide corridor, there were various exquisite oil paintings hung on both sides, lifelike. Jiang Hao looked at the maids following behind him and hesitated. How is your lady doing now? She has a fever. She was given intravenous fluids last night, but her temperature is still low. Mrs. weak in the first place, and I don't know what happened yesterday, she was soaking wet. The doctor said that Mrs. weak and shouldn't take too many medicines, so she'd better rest for a day. Here, this is Mrs. bedroom. The maid pointed to the Roman-style carved door at the end of the corridor. Jiang Hao nodded, wanting to go in and say thank you. Only those who are on the verge of death know how precious life is. He really appreciated Xiao Yusheng. Young master, you can't go into the young lady's bedroom. Even when cleaning normally, you have to let the young lady's trusted butler Zhao Shuer come in person. Apart from the young lady herself, Zhao Shuer is also the only maid in the Xiao family who can enter the young lady's bedroom. Before the maid finished speaking, she stared with wide, frightened eyes. Jiang Hao saw that without having time to react, he had already pulled open the bedroom door. You should have said so earlier. Jiang Hao's mouth twitched, and he took a step back, feeling self-conscious. But at that moment, a weak voice came from the bedroom. Shuer, come in and pour me a glass of water. Xiao Yusheng muttered in a low voice, his voice slightly hoarse. Oh no, did she mistake me for that Zhao Shuer? Jiang Hao's face was ugly, and he was about to sneak away when he was pushed in by the maid. Young master, there's no other way, so just pretend to be Miss Shuer for now. It's only about pouring a glass of water. The maid whispered, closing the bedroom door. As soon as he entered the bedroom, Jiang Hao smelled a strange, faint fragrance. The aroma was slightly cold, but when he sniffed it more closely, it had an indescribable sweetness. The curtains were drawn tightly shut, and the room was almost pitch black, but the furnishings and colors of the bedroom were faintly visible. Jiang Hao was stunned. Was this definitely Xiao Yusheng's bedroom? Everything, from the curtains to the bed sheets and quilts to the various pieces of furniture, was pink. It was the kind of girly pink that was really cute. Something was wrong. How could the female CEO of the Xiao Group, who was known to be ruthless and heartless, live in a room like this? As for the bedside table, it was filled with all kinds of photos. Jiang Hao looked at them intently and suddenly felt a little lost. Those photos were all of himself and her together in high school. On the bed, Xiao Yusheng was curled up in the covers, shivering, and from time to time, she let out some weak moans. "It's so cold." Xiao Yusheng coughed, her voice was unexpectedly somewhat indescribably soft, completely different from her previous cold and commanding manner. Jiang Hao's mouth twitched, and he poured her a cup of hot water and placed it by the bed. At this time, Xiao Yusheng struggled to peek half her face out from under the covers. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were dazed, and a few tears were hanging at the corners of her eyes. Jiang Hao awkwardly looked at her. When she saw Jiang Hao, she suddenly opened her eyes wide, flashing a trace of fierceness. Then, she sat up directly, and the softness and weakness just now turned into indifference and coldness. "Who allowed you to come in?" Her gaze was fierce, and she exuded an unquestionable air of superiority. "President Xiao, you let me in yourself," Jiang Hao said wordlessly. "Come here," Xiao Yusheng said indifferently, glancing at him indifferently. Jiang Hao had no choice but to come over. One has to bow one's head when under the same roof. As soon as he came over, Xiao Yusheng immediately grabbed his arm and pressed him under him. In an instant, a warm quilt with a faint fragrance covered the two of them. Jiang Hao was startled because Xiao Yusheng was simply wearing a thin silk nightdress. He could clearly feel that he had not even had time to exclaim before sweet, soft lips covered his own. After a long while, he dared to retort. He was in need of discipline. Xiao Yusheng's red lips curled into a cold arc, and he held Jiang Hao's wrists with each hand, his eyes beautiful and deep. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth, just about to resist, but immediately dismissed the idea. During the days when he was imprisoned by Su Ruoyan, he knew the consequences of resisting this kind of sickly beauty. If he goes along with it. Jiang Hao swallowed, and tentatively touched Xiao Yusheng's cheek. Xiao Yusheng was slightly startled, and his face, which was already flushed from the low fever, seemed to turn even redder. No resistance? This response is promising. What if I go a little further? Zhang Haozhuang plucked up his courage and, as he had often done in high school, gently pinched Xiao Yusheng's cheek. Xiao Yusheng's eyes were blank, as if he had fallen into some kind of memory. His eyes were also faintly moist. Zhang Haozhuang was startled, coughed lightly, and then, with fear, called out, trembling, "Shenger." The next moment, a tear fell on his face. Xiao Yusheng wrapped her arms around Zhang Haozhuang's neck, as if she was enduring some extremely volatile emotions, and her whole body was shaking. "You haven't called me Shenger in a long time. I've been waiting for you for a long time," she murmured hoarsely, kissing Jiang Hao's neck gently. Jiang Hao was also full of emotions, and sighed deeply. It was as if he had seen the timid and kind Xiao Yusheng from his high school days. But he understood that Xiao Yusheng had long since died in his own memories. The gap between him and Xiao Yusheng was like a chasm. "President Xiao, thank you for saving my life like that yesterday. If there is anything I can do for you, I will go through fire and water," Jiang Hao said hesitantly. But the next second, an aura that made his bones chill naturally emanated from Xiao Yusheng. Xiao Yusheng stared at him coldly, his left hand firmly grasping his chin. "Almost all the power and wealth in Tianhai City is in my hands. Do I need you to go through fire and water? Do you really know what I want?" she said indifferently, and began unbuttoning Jiang Hao's shirt with her right hand. "What do you want?" Jiang Hao asked subconsciously. Xiao Yusheng's lips slowly curled up into a beautiful arc. "I want you. I want you to love me. I want the rest of your life. Now, do you want it yourself or do you want me to do it?" Chapter 5, No matter, he called me his wife. Jiang Hao looked at Xiao Yusheng's eyes full of aggressive possessiveness and was shocked. "President Xiao." He hadn't finished speaking yet when his shirt was savagely ripped open by Xiao Yusheng. "Call me Shenger," Xiao Yusheng said indifferently, his red lips slightly curled in a seductive way. "Shenger, you can't do this." Jiang Hao gritted his teeth. "Can't do what? Trying to resist? You opened the door yourself, barged into my bedroom, climbed into my bed. You just want it for free, don't you? You took my virginity yesterday at Zhao's mansion, and now you're shy?" Xiao Yusheng whispered in Jiang Hao's ear, and then lightly bit his ear. "Shenger, get up first, I have something important to say." Jiang Hao gasped. I haven't settled the score with you for running away yesterday. So now, the first punishment. Xiao Yoxing's eyes flashed with an indescribable lust. It was as if she had treated Jiang Hao beneath her as a delicious dessert, and she couldn't wait to eat him up. Shanger, calm down first, I really do have something important to say. And you have a fever, I feel that you are very weak right now. Jiang Hao was quick-witted and felt that he had found a good excuse. Xiao Yushang was momentarily stunned and nodded, you're right. Then she rolled off Jiang Hao's body. Jiang Hao was overjoyed. This time, he had finally gotten away with it. In the dim light, the two of them lay on their sides in the covers, their eyes locked. Just as he was rejoicing, Xiao Yusheng pinched his chin, you're right, I am very weak, so now you do it yourself. She gave a small smile, and then buried her face in Jiang Hao's arms. In Jiang Hao's shocked eyes, she gently drew circles on his chest, don't you want to know what 38 degrees feels like? Jiang Hao froze, and then angrily said, that's not what I meant. He took a deep breath and forcibly changed the subject, Shenger, how is Su Ruoyan? As soon as she heard Su Ruoyan's name, Xiao Yoxing's beautiful eyes instantly turned cold. How dare you care about another woman? Her enchanting lips curled up in a crazed, sickly smile. Jiang Hao was distraught. He just wanted to make sure that Su Ruoyan would leave him alone in the future, not that he cared. He looked at Xiao Yoxing's murderous gaze, which was becoming more and more intense, and hurriedly explained, I just want to make sure that she won't bother me in the future, because I want to stay by your side forever. Xiao Yushang was momentarily stunned, and most of the murderous intent in her eyes disappeared. Really? For some reason, a slightly shy curve appeared at the corner of her lips. Really, really? It's true. Jiang Hao gave his solemn promise. Xiao Yusheng pursed her lips, kissed him lightly, and whispered in his ear, my husband is so good. Don't worry, last night, I talked it over with that woman, and within a week, even if you're not by my side, she won't be able to bother you. As for after a week, it's fine too, as long as she stays by my side, she dares not do anything. Xiao Yoxing's eyes flashed with a cold light, and then he carefully observed Jiang Hao's expression. Jiang Hao was stunned, followed by ecstasy. Finally, he can get rid of that woman Su Ruoyan. Although he would be controlled by Xiao Yusheng as a result, at least his basic freedom would be guaranteed. This was a completely different concept. Su Ruoyan had completely regarded him as a puppet replacing Lin Hao, that is, the person he was as a child, and had treated him as an object, even going so far as to cripple him. He could not confess that he was Lin Hao, and once the truth came out, he would definitely not survive for more than 3 days. Jiang Hao was truly grateful. However, Xiao Yoxing's eyes were still cold, and he took Jiang Hao's hand and asked nonchalantly, I looked into your company yesterday, and I know everything. I want to kill that internet celebrity Jiang Qingyao. No, you can't kill her. Jiang Hao's eyes flashed with cold light. Killing Jiang Qingyao would be too easy for her. This woman must pay a price more tragic than death. I have supported her in the past, even made her an internet celebrity, but in return I get nothing but contempt and ingratitude. It's too easy to let her die. But Xiao Yoxing's eyebrows shot up in anger. Her eyes flashed with cold murderous intent. I knew it. I knew you were lying to me, that there was another woman in your heart. It's always the same. Last time, you abandoned me alone, and this time. She clenched her fists tightly. For some reason, her eyes were red, and the coldness in her gaze was gone, leaving only a dullness. Jiang Hao reacted and hurriedly explained loudly, Shinger, you've misunderstood. Misunderstood? Xiao Yusheng bit her finger pathologically and muttered to herself, I should have made a decision long ago. I want to imprison you, and I want to make sure that the only woman you see in the future is me. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she raised the corners of her mouth coldly. Just as she was about to lock Jiang Hao up, Jiang Hao suddenly shouted, Honey, I love you. Let me explain. Xiao Yusheng froze, and then dumbly let go of the shackles. What did you call me? Her eyes shone with tears, and she gently pursed her lips. Honey, honey. Jiang Hao shouted at the top of his lungs, his heart filled with fear. He really didn't want to be imprisoned again. Then, in the simplest of terms, he explained his hatred for Jiang Qingyao, adding, Don't worry, I don't want you to kill Jiang Qingyao, I want that woman to suffer more than death. His eyes were bloodshot, and he gnashed his teeth, saying, Jiang Qingyao and Wang Tianming deserve a fate 100 times worse than death. After a long while, Xiao Yusheng snuck into his arms and whispered, Honey, is what you said true? You've always had a place in your heart for me, haven't you? Jiang Hao was dumbfounded. In the past 2 days, the impression Xiao Yusheng had left in his heart had always been that of a strong female devil. Now, why did he suddenly feel a sense of humble begging? Just then, the bedroom door opened, and a woman in an OL uniform and quite attractive looked at the two people in the warmth of the quilt with a smile that looked like it wasn't a smile. "Shuer, why didn't you knock?" Xiao Yusheng said coldly, but a faint blush appeared on her face. She quickly let go of Jiang Hao, lifted the quilt and got off the bed. Obviously, the only person who could enter Xiao Yusheng's bedroom was the housekeeper Zhao Shuer. "Mr. Xiao, the doctor said that you can't do that kind of thing for a few days. Will you go with me to get a physical examination now?" Zhao Shuer giggled, and gave Jiang Hao a disdainful glare. Jiang Hao was puzzled. He didn't know her, so where did she get the hostility from? Xiao Yusheng nodded, turned his head, took Jiang Hao's hand, and the corner of his lips curled into an indifferent arc. "Go ahead and do whatever you want. This afternoon, your debt will be paid off, and the company will be put back on track. I have to warn you, if you dare to flirt with any woman outside." Xiao Yusheng's gaze suddenly turned cold, and he gently lifted the shackles on the bed. Jiang Hao nodded vigorously and quickly fled out of the bedroom. After he left, Zhao Shuer closed the door, sat down next to Xiao Yusheng and said puzzledly, "Yusheng, I heard what you were saying just now outside the door. You won't be confused by his flowery words, will you? Men like him are the best at fooling around with women." Zhao Shuer said indignantly. "If you say anything bad about him again, you'll be punished by going to my stepmother's garden to help her with the gardening." Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. "No, Auntie Hang, that would be too boring. Every day, all you do is drink tea and admire the flowers. And Yusheng, are you delirious from the fever? I could hear it just now. Jiang Hao sweet nothings for you were not sincere at all." "Well, but he called me his wife." "Yusheng, he's cheating on you." "No matter, he called me his wife." "Xiao Yusheng, calm down." "I'm calm, but he called me his wife." Ignoring Zhao Shuer's dissuasion, Xiao Yusheng lay in bed, hugging the pillow that Jiang Hao had leaned against in his arms, and blissfully closed his eyes. In the darkness, Xiao Yusheng's coldness disappeared. Although his face was almost expressionless, the corner of his mouth twitched up in a shy smile that hadn't appeared for a long time. If Jiang Hao were here, he would definitely notice. This smile is the same one that would bloom on the lips of the young girl who followed him around unobtrusively in high school. "I'm so happy. Did he just confess his love for me? He must like me, right? Shuer, he doesn't dislike me, does he?" Zhao Shuer was momentarily stunned by Xiao Yusheng's faint voice. "Like you? Maybe, but it's probably just a grain of sand in the wilderness." Zhao Shuer sighed. "Even if it is a grain of sand, so what? As long as he likes me, even if it is only a little bit, even if it is smaller than a grain of sand, even if it is lighter than a speck of dust, I will feel so happy. Shuer, you go, I want to sleep for a while. I'm so afraid, this is a dream." Xiao Yusheng hugged the pillow that Jiang Hao had slept on, and muttered, "But even if it is a dream, I am content." Chapter 6, Mysterious Mature Woman. In the garden path, Jiang Hao kicked the stones in depression. He walked away from Xiao Yusheng's villa for a long time before discovering this quietest garden in Zhao's manor. Originally, he only needed to worry about Su Ruoyan being a sickly beauty, but now, well, there's another sickly beauty. Fortunately, Xiao Yusheng's level of insanity feels much less than Su Ruoyan's. Jiang Hao sighed and nodded. At least Xiao Yusheng doesn't imprison herself like a doll, tied up in knots. And she doesn't yell from time to time that she wants to be beaten into a vegetative state so that she can be by her side forever. The source of all evil here is Su Ruoyan. Just as Jiang Hao was feeling this, he saw a woman not far away and froze slightly. He saw the woman sitting by a stone table, clearly wearing only a simple white cheongsam and no jewelry, but every movement she made was so graceful and elegant. Her long hair was tied into a simple bun, her snow-white furrows were so deep they were almost frightening, and her plump, jade-like legs were slightly visible from the cheongsam, exuding a milky luster in the sunlight. From time to time, the woman's full, red lips parted slightly as she sipped the fragrant tea in her cup. Whether it was her snow-white skin or her long, narrow, fox-like eyes, they were all extraordinarily charming. This is a beauty that has reached the pinnacle of maturity. Jiang Hao wondered to himself. He felt that the woman looked younger than 30, but her mature and extraordinary temperament clearly indicated that she was a young and attractive woman. At this time, the woman's long, slender fingertips stopped on the cup, propping up her snow-white chin as she stared lazily at Jiang Hao. This is really strange. When did Xiaoshang hire a manservant? You're new here, don't you know the rules? No one is allowed in this backyard. The woman finished the tea in her cup and looked at Jiang Hao with interest. It was as if she had seen some rare animal. Me? A manservant? Jiang Hao pointed at himself, but didn't say much. One had to bow one's head when under someone else's roof. And who knew if this woman wasn't some high-ranking member of the Shao family? Jiang Hao didn't say much, feeling that this woman's aura was probably that of an important member of the Shao family, and it would be bad to offend her. Not to mention that he seemed to have violated some taboo. Is this backyard off limits? Now that he's reacted, it's too late. If he just walks away, he might get into trouble. So, he walked directly up to the woman and carefully helped her tidy up the tea set. He's good at reading people. Aren't you afraid of being punished? Moreover, the woman raised the corner of her lips and gave Jiang Hao a finger-wagging smile. Jiang Hao was confused, but he could only come up to the woman. He is quite handsome, and he is really young, making a wreck of a woman like me reminisce about youth. The woman's beautiful eyes twinkled as she shook her head in self-deprecation. Jiang Hao said innocently, "Reckon of a wreck of a woman? What does that have to do with anything? You are clearly my age, sister. Does that mean I'm old at the age of my early 20s? The woman was momentarily stunned by his words, and then burst into a giggly laugh. It was obviously a normal laugh, but the mature and intellectual voice was enough to make people blush and their hearts race. You're so sweet. The woman looked at Jiang Hao with interest, and after a while, she suddenly narrowed her eyes and stood up suddenly. Before Jiang Hao could react, the woman pulled open his collar and sniffed deeply. The two were close enough for Jiang Hao to see the woman's snowy ravine and smell the faint rose fragrance on her body. Jiang Hao's face turned red, and he felt a sense of grief and indignation. He had endured Su Ruoyan's advances. He had accepted Xiao Yoxing's advances. But now, just some random stranger could molest him? He was about to resist when the woman let go of his collar and pursed her lips in confusion. Ah, yes, this smell is indeed Xiao Yoxing's. It turns out to be the personal manservant who takes care of Xiao Yoxing's daily life. The woman rubbed her chin in confusion. What's wrong with Xiao Shang? Why would she suddenly let a man serve her intimately? Jiang Hao sighed, knowing that it would sound bad if he told people about his relationship with Xiao Yusheng, so he simply changed the subject and told the woman in a measured tone about Xiao Yoxing's current cold. A cold? The woman pondered for a moment, and then handed Jiang Hao a bottle of unknown liquid under the stone table. This is medicinal wine. When Xiao Shang was little and had a cold or a fever, she would drink this and get better. You take it to her now. The woman waved her hand and turned to leave. Sister, may I ask your name? Jiang Hao hurriedly called out to the woman. Hang Junshuang. Just call me Hang Jie. This name can only be mentioned in this manner, so don't let it get out. Hang Junshuang smiled back, placing her index finger by her lips. If you let it get out, kid, you'll be dead. Jiang Hao nodded, his expression a little grave. He could feel that the woman wasn't joking. After he left, Hang Junshuang stood next to the brilliant crepe myrtle flowers, staring at his back. Strange, this child looks so much like my good sister from the Lin family back then. Relative? Son? No, the entire Lin family should be dead. Hang Junshuang let out a lonely sigh. Jiang Hao walked into Xiao Yoxing's bedroom again with the medicinal wine. At this time, Xiao Yusheng was curled up, fast asleep on the bed. Her hair was disheveled and spread out, her red lips slightly parted, biting her thumb in her sleep, and from time to time, she let out some faint moans. Jiang Hao sat down by the bed and looked at her beautiful face, which was a little cute with its rosy hue. He couldn't help but think of some mischievous thoughts in his head. What a terrifying chaebol in the heavens and seas, when asleep, he's just like an ordinary person, kicking the covers. In high school, I was petting your head every day, and every once in a while you would tentatively confess your love for me. Now you're really cocky. Come bite me if you dare, little brother. Are you sick and spoiled? Jiang Hao poked Xiao Yoxing's face with his finger, then disdainfully placed it by Xiao Yoxing's mouth, feeling in a great mood. He could be said to have fully carried forward the spirit of AQ. It's so soft, is a girl's face really this soft? Jiang Hao was a little surprised. After all, when Xiao Yusheng was awake, he would not dare to rub her face so recklessly. Xiao Yusheng let out a soft moan in her sleep, then changed her sleeping position, and a little drool trickled out of the corner of her mouth. She's drooling, just like a humanoid kitten. Should I take a closer look? Jiang Hao asked himself, then plucked up the courage to lean over Xiao Yoshing's pretty face and observe her more closely. He had to admit, Xiao Yushing was very cute right now. Her eyelashes trembled from time to time, and a certain sweet and mellow sound was exposed at close range. The way she drooled while biting her finger made Jiang Hao can't help but think of the kind of heartless stray kitten he liked to feed when he was in college. Suddenly, Jiang Hao's hair stood on end. He saw Xiao Yusheng slowly open her eyes. The two of them then locked eyes. Chapter 7, Rewards and Punishments. As Xiao Yoshing's gaze went from dazed to cold, Jiang Hao flinched and quickly handed her the medicated wine. "I'm here to give you the medicated wine," Jiang Hao said with conviction. Xiao Yushing looked at Jiang Hao's hand, which had not yet let go of her face, and said indifferently, "It's soft." Cough cough, it is indeed quite soft. Jiang Hao snickered and withdrew his hand. Xiao Yusheng lifted the corners of her lips, and with a gentle catch of her gaze, she grabbed Jiang Hao's hand. "If it's soft, you can squeeze it any time in the future. As long as you like it," she said indifferently, and placed Jiang Hao's hand back on her little face. Jiang Hao looked at Xiao Yoshing's face, which was as cold as ice, and wanted to cry but had no tears. "Does he dare? Come here, get closer. Lie down." Xiao Yusheng sat up on the bed, lifted the quilt, and patted her pale, jade-like legs covered in a sheer nightdress. Jiang Hao had no choice but obediently rest his head on her soft, supple legs. A sweet fragrance wafted up, and the warm, wonderful silky feeling made Jiang Hao swallow. "Good boy. You were very proactive today, and you need to continue being proactive in the future, understand? There are rewards for being proactive, and punishments for not being proactive." Xiao Yusheng played with Jiang Hao's Adam's apple, and her red lips curled up in a stiff arc. "So what are the rewards and punishments?" In front of the #1 tycoon in Tianhai City, Jiang Hao had no more temper, so he simply continued the conversation in a nonchalant manner. "Reward is being gentle by me. Punishment is being rough by me. Don't worry, I won't let you get hurt. I'll try not to. And continue to be an active and obedient husband in the future." Xiao Yoshing's eyes flickered, and the rare smile on the corner of her lips was gentle and yet sickly. Jiang Hao's mouth twitched, and he depressedly turned his head away. "No matter what I do, I'm going to be punished, right?" Xiao Yusheng was about to say something when she noticed the medicinal wine in Jiang Hao's other hand. It was a familiar medicinal wine. She narrowed her exquisite eyes slightly in confusion. "What's wrong?" Jiang Hao asked subconsciously. Xiao Yusheng shook his head and answered non sequitur, "This medicated wine is very spicy. I drank it when I was a child and never wanted to drink it again." "No, drink it, and your body will get better quickly. You should use medicated wine to dispel that kind of cold." Jiang Hao opened the seal on the medicated wine and handed it to Xiao Yusheng. "No. Drink it, this medicated wine seems to be quite rare." "No, it's very spicy. Spicy is what medicinal wine is supposed to taste like. Do you want me to take the spice out?" "That's fine. Miss Xiao, how can the spice be taken out of the wine?" As soon as Jiang Hao finished speaking, Xiao Yusheng thoughtfully ran her hand along her chin. Before Jiang Hao could react to the pungent taste, Xiao Yusheng pressed her red lips against his, biting down hard and drinking the medicated wine from his mouth. That way, it wasn't so spicy. It was actually quite tasty. "Your lips are so sweet. Did you just eat candy?" Xiao Yusheng licked the last drop of medicated wine from Jiang Hao's lips and lovingly pinched his chin. Jiang Hao could not voice his bitterness, and could only nod repeatedly. "I love you so much, baby. How is it that no matter what you do, you can always stoke the fire in my heart?" Xiao Yoshing's fair and pretty face was flushed red from the alcohol. His cold and charming voice, accompanied by warm breath, made Jiang Hao's ears itch, and goosebumps rose on his arms. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth. This was not going to do. He was just about to make some lame excuse when he noticed Xiao Yoshing's expression suddenly change. "No, this medicated wine. Have you seen that woman? Did that woman ask you to deliver the medicated wine?" For some reason, Xiao Yoshing's usually cold voice was tinged with shame. "That Hang's sister? She's the one who asked me to deliver it." "Yusheng, what is she to you, a relative?" Jiang Hao asked curiously. "She's my step." Xiao Yusheng stopped short before finishing his sentence. Jiang Hao didn't catch it and asked curiously, "What are you?" "She was my nanny when I was little." "And don't ask anything you shouldn't in the future." Xiao Yusheng waved his hand with a cold face, as if trying his best to hide something. Since it was her who asked me to drink the medicated wine, I will continue to drink it later. Nanny, when you were little, you're 21 now. Holy shit, how old is that Hang's sister? Zhang Hao exclaimed. She's in her 30s now. Don't reveal our relationship in front of her, okay? If she asks, just say you're my manservant. Xiao Yusheng, as if hiding some emotion, lifted his snow-white chin and directly and boldly blew the medicinal wine into the bottle. Buddy, do you think this is milk tea? Medicinal wine is also wine, you're not going to drink it all at once, are you? Stop drinking. Zhang Hao was anxious. He had just grabbed the bottle, but helplessly discovered that it was already empty. Xiao Yusheng's face was as red as an apple, and she whispered softly, Zhang Hao, you go find her now, that woman, and just say that I drank the medicinal wine. Also, if you can, spend more time with her. She's very lonely. But I can't see her, absolutely not. After she finished speaking, she went straight to lie on the bed and fell asleep again. Obviously, President Xiao was not a strong drinker. Chapter 8 House Arrest. If you don't want to die, get out. In Xiao Yusheng's bedroom, the cold and ambiguous words accompanied by the sound of breaking things scared the maids into fleeing. Zhang Hao stood outside the bedroom, and he and the housekeeper Zhao Linger exchanged bitter smiles. Zhang Hao, what on earth did you do? How could Miss be fine and just drink and act crazy? Zhao Shuer said angrily. The medicinal wine she drank should be fine, but who knew she would drink it like milk tea and gulp it down in one go? Zhang Hao sighed. Then you'd better think of a way, the young lady can't keep acting like this. Zhao Shuer stamped her feet in frustration, wanting to go in and calm Xiao Yusheng down, but the bedroom door was still locked. I have an idea. I'll go find Hang Junchuang. Zhang Hao ponders for a moment, turns his head and leaves. You keep an eye on her, I'll be right back. Zhao Shuer freezes upon hearing Hang Junchuang's name, and just as she is about to call out to Zhang Hao, he has already disappeared from her sight. She is completely flustered, even more so than before. Her lady said that no one is allowed to see her. 10 minutes later, Zhang Hao ran to the back garden where he had been before and shouted, Hang Jia, are you here? Seeing that no one answered, he could only sit down by the stone table where Hang Junchuang had been drinking tea before, and pat his head in annoyance. If he had known then, he should not have given Xiao Yusheng the medicated wine. After all that fuss, Zhang Hao was parched, and subconsciously picked up the cup on the stone table and drank the remaining tea in one gulp. Instantly, the mouth was filled with the fragrance of tea, and faintly mixed in was a few indescribable wonderful flavors, sweet and slightly tangy. Zhang Hao felt refreshed, and just as he was about to pour another cup, 2 green onion-like white jade fingers grabbed his ear. Little friend, was the tea delicious? Hang Junchuang smiled behind him. Hang Jia, you finally showed up. The tea was very good, what's wrong? Zhang Hao turned his head in confusion. It's nothing, as long as you think it's good. Hang Junchuang smiled gently, then pinched Zhang Hao's ear with 2 fingers until it turned red. Hang Jia, my fault, I really didn't mean to drink your tea. Zhang Hao stood up awkwardly in pain. You really are a bold little boy, this is the second time you've barged into my place. Do you know what happened to the servants who accidentally barged in here without Xiao Shang's orders before? Hang Junchuang gave a faint smile and made a gesture of cutting the throat. Zhang Hao was speechless. Was this some forbidden place in Zhao's manor? That, Hang Jia, I have something important to ask you. The young lady has drunk too much medicinal wine and is acting crazy. Is there any way you can calm her down? After all, the young lady said that you were her nanny when she was little. Zhang Hao anxiously said. Nanny? Hang Junchuang was stunned at first, and then she smiled bitterly. In a sense, I really was that girl's nanny. A nanny without blood ties. Is acting drunk? When Xiaoshang was 12 or 13, she accidentally drank some wine and did the same thing, getting drunk and making a big fuss. From my experience. Hang Junchuang mused, let her calm down first, and when the wine has worn off a bit, scold and bully her. Okay, let's give her a moment to cool down, and then. Wait, Hang Jia, what did you say? Bully her? Zhang Hao coughed and pointed at himself with difficulty. Hang Jia, you want me to bully miss? I wouldn't dare if you lent me 10 guts. Listen to me, you can't go wrong. When she was drunk as a child, if I bullied her and ordered her to be quiet, she would obediently listen. After Hang Junchuang finished speaking, she sat down next to Zhang Hao. She picked up the cup that Zhang Hao had just drunk from and refilled it with tea, slowly bringing it to her lips. Jiang Hao frowned and pondered. He always felt that Hang Junchuang had a close relationship with Xiao Yusheng. She didn't seem like a nanny at all, but more like an elder. Right, I need to get along with her. Maybe she can speak up for me if Xiao Yusheng gets angry and does something one day. Jiang Hao nodded to himself and then said hesitantly, Hang Jia, I used that cup just now. It would be too much for you to drink what I used. Where is your cup? I'll go get it for you. Hang Junchuang gave him a look, sipped her tea lightly, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I'm all alone, and this is the only cup I have, or else would there be another one? This is the only one, which means I just used your cup, Hang Jia. Hang Jia, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Jiang Hao was dumbfounded. He had put all his attention on Xiao Yusheng and hadn't thought about it carefully. He had thought that Hang Junchuang had pulled his ear simply because he had drunk her tea. Looking at Hang Junchuang's seductive and charming red lips, Jiang Hao's face flushed. Hang Junchuang looked at Jiang Hao, who was blushing and his heart pounding, and giggled. Little guy, you look so cute when you blush, just like a good boy. It's not because a woman like me, who is old and faded, is shy, is it? She teased, with a gentle smile on the corners of her lips. Old and faded? Don't be ridiculous. Sister Hang is simply the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. You're far from old and faded, you're clearly full of charm. Jiang Hao had long since developed the habit of saying whatever came into his head, and he immediately let fly with a rainbow fart, which made Hang Junchuang's beautiful eyes sparkle. My, you're so sweet. Talking to you makes me feel so much younger. The garden is really lively today. There's actually someone to talk to. Hang Junchuang carelessly plucked a rose and sniffed it between her nose. A trace of unspeakable loneliness flashed through her deep eyes. Hang Jia, don't you usually not talk much? Jiang Hao asked tentatively. Talk? Who can I talk to? Even the maid who usually delivers meals and serves me doesn't dare to talk to me. Little friend, do you know what house arrest is? Hang Junchuang gently raised her eyebrows, as if indifferent to her dire situation. House arrest? Jiang Hao was secretly shocked. He didn't expect Xiao Yusheng to still be capable of pulling this kind of stunt in this day and age. It seems that Hang Junchuang is not just Xiao Yusheng's simple childhood nanny. This is an old story, and it's hard to explain in a few words. And if you little manservant knows anything, you'll be in big trouble. Forget it, just go. And don't come back next time. It's for your own safety. Hang Junchuang put down the rose and sighed. Jiang Hao's eyes flickered as he slowly got up. Before leaving, he turned back and smiled at Hang Junchuang. Hang Jia, I'll go first, I'll see you tomorrow. He hadn't forgotten Xiao Yusheng's order to let him spend more time with Hang Junchuang. Upon hearing this, Hang Junchuang immediately frowned and scolded, You brat, didn't I tell you not to come anymore? You don't care about your life? It's already a blessing that no one found out you were here today. Hang Jia, don't worry, I won't let anyone find out. Jiang Hao laughed. You brat, what's so good about me that you have to come? Do you really not care about your life? Hang Junchuang angrily asked. What's so good about me? Let me think. Jiang Hao pondered, and after a moment looked up. Hang Jia's tea is delicious, and the roses are also very beautiful. I want to bring some roses to Rose as an embellishment tomorrow. Hang Junchuang was slightly startled, and watched Jiang Hao walk away into the distance. Wait, rose should be paired with a rose to look good, why bring roses? She shouted to Jiang Hao, who had already walked to the exit. Jiang Hao turned his head and laughed, because Hang Jia is much more beautiful than a rose, and without such a beautiful flower as a rose as an embellishment, the garden would pale in comparison to Hang Jia. After saying this, he left the garden. Hang Junchuang's usually gentle and calm pretty face suddenly flushed with a little bit of red, and she was stunned for a long time before slowly sitting down. I never thought that at my age, I would actually be molested by such a brat. But he really is an interesting friend. Hang Junchuang gave a small smile, removed a rose petal and placed it in the already cool tea. Chapter 9, Turning Jiang Hao into Lin Hao. Just as Jiang Hao left the garden, at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Su Ruoyan was holding a glass of champagne, expressionless as she looked down at the slightly short oriental pearl tower outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was wearing a large bathrobe, her red hair falling to her waist, and her red-nailed feet casually stepping on the carpet. Her female assistant walked up to her and whispered carefully. After a long while, Su Ruoyan stretched, her beautiful and seductive curves faintly visible under the large bathrobe. The female assistant came over and whispered something respectfully in her ear. Su Ruoyan yawned and looked at the female assistant. Do what I told you to do, and don't tell me about these trivial matters in the future. The female assistant replied in a timid whisper, yes, but miss, what you told me to do doesn't conflict with your 1-week appointment with Xiao Yusheng, does it? If I really drug Jiang Hao and take him away, will Xiao Yusheng be afraid? It's me who will drug him, not you. I don't care about Xiao Yusheng's stupid appointment. Su Ruoyan licked the corners of her red lips, her eyes evil and gloomy. I can't wait any longer, the thought of the puppet I used as a tool having to be with Xiao Yusheng every day. She sneered, and slammed the champagne glass in her hand onto the ground. The female assistant quickly squatted down, picking up the glass shards, and said weakly, Miss, I've heard some rumors from the imperial capital recently. Some people say that Lin Hao didn't die that year, but just lived in hiding. Su Ruoyan's eyes darkened a little upon hearing this. You also know it's a rumor. Dead is dead. The Su family is ruthless and unrelenting. They could strangle a newborn baby in the Lin family, so how could they let a teenager go back then? My poor Lin Hao younger brother, if this grudge is not avenged. But don't worry, I only treat Jiang Hao as a puppet. I would rather remain chaste for the rest of my life than take advantage of such a puppet. He is only satisfying my spiritual needs. Su Ruoyan's voice was slightly hoarse, and her eyes were red. After a long time, she took a deep breath, and her red lips lifted up in a neurotic frenzy. This time, I will make Jiang Hao completely become Lin Hao, a puppet who acts and speaks like Lin Hao's younger brother. Jiang Hao returned to Xiao Yusheng's bedroom again. Looking at Xiao Yusheng, who was waving a fruit knife around like a madman, he couldn't help but break out in a sweat. Should he really go after Xiao Yusheng, as Hang Junchuang had said? Damn it, I'm not going to do that, am I? Jiang Hao swallowed, and slowly walked towards Xiao Yusheng. Under the influence of alcohol, the blush on Xiao Yusheng's face had turned from red to white, down to the base of her neck. She waved the knife around recklessly, smashing the vases around her from time to time. She muttered unintelligible words and her eyes were bloodshot. Yu Xian. Jiang Hao called out, tentatively approaching her. As soon as she saw Jiang Hao coming, a flash of hatred crossed Xiao Yoshuan's eyes, and she pounced directly, overwhelming Jiang Hao and knocking him to the ground. Jiang Hao cursed under his breath, and just as he was about to struggle to his feet, he noticed that the sharp tip of the glistening knife was already approaching his eyes. Why did you leave me back then? Why? It's all because of you. It's all because of you that I become this way. I'm going to kill you. Xiao Yusheng's tears fell in a torrent. The originally delicate and beautiful red lips were bitten by her, and bloody red blood mixed with tears dripped onto Jiang Hao's face. Jiang Hao was scared and had no other choice but to take a deep breath and then yell angrily, Xiao Yusheng, put the knife down, do you hear me? His voice was loud, bordering on a roar. But as soon as he had finished speaking, he regretted it. He didn't know if Hang Junchuang's method of provocation would work, but if anything went wrong, he would really die here today. Jiang Hao had even thought of his last words, but then something unexpected happened. Xiao Yusheng just stared at him blankly, then carefully put the knife down in his hand and said timidly, Brother Jiang Hao, I've let go. Jiang Hao was dumbfounded. Did it really work? Hang Junchuang is truly a genius. But he was also very puzzled. Even if it did work, Xiao Yusheng's personality wouldn't have changed so drastically. She called me Jiang Hao brother, just like she did in high school. Jiang Hao let out a long sigh as he recalled something. Then, he pointed sternly at Xiao Yusheng, don't ever play drunk again. If you do, I'll leave you. Xiao Yusheng's face darkened as he slowly stood up. Jiang Hao's heart skipped a beat. Did that method fail? Just as he was in a daze, Xiao Yusheng tightly embraced him, her usually indifferent phoenix eyes watery and her little face full of pleading. Brother Jiang Hao, I was wrong, please don't leave Shenger, okay? She cried out, her small hands wiping away the tears. Jiang Hao's confidence immediately doubled. He felt that he could now control the drunken Xiao Yusheng. Fine, I won't leave you, but you go back to bed and go to sleep right now, do you hear me? Jiang Hao ordered coldly. I know. Oh, I'll go to sleep now. Xiao Yusheng nodded repeatedly, struggling to get up and walk towards the bed, but stumbled again and fell to the ground. She was already drunk as a skunk. Jiang Hao had no choice but to pick her up and gently place her on the bed, covering her up. Suddenly, he thought of something and grinned wickedly. He switched on the voice recorder on his phone and said seriously to Xiao Yusheng, Yusheng, don't worry, I will continue to be by your side in the future. But we need to agree on 3 rules. What? Rules? Xiao Yusheng muttered indistinctly, her eyes already closed, overcome by her emotions. Listen carefully. 1. You are not allowed to threaten me in the future. Okay. Second, you can't restrict my freedom. Third, until we get married next month, we'll sleep in separate rooms. As soon as Jiang Hao finished speaking, Xiao Yusheng opened her eyes and cried, hugging his arm. This is not okay, absolutely not okay. Why not? Because if we sleep in separate rooms, I won't be able to snuggle up to my husband at night. I want to be held by my husband while I sleep. My dear, baby, please, please. Xiao Yusheng's voice gradually faded, and after a while, the faint sound of sweet breathing could be heard in the room. Jiang Hao looked at her and sneered. The 3 rules became a thing, and silence is consent. He stopped recording contentedly and walked out of the bedroom. At the door, Zhao Shuer looked at Jiang Hao in shock. Do you know some kind of magic? You can even coax to sleep a lady who is drunk and acting crazy? Jiang Hao waved his hand confidently. Nothing else, just practice. Chapter 10, I'm jealous. Early the next morning, Jiang Hao nervously arrived at the door of Xiao Yusheng's bedroom. I hope she doesn't remember how I yelled at her yesterday. I still have to go back to the company today to deal with Wang Tianming and Zhang Qingyao. Jiang Hao wiped the cold sweat from his face, knocked 3 times, and entered the bedroom. In the bedroom, which was filled with a faint fragrance, the white gauze curtains swayed in the refreshing breeze. The breeze was accompanied by the rustling of the leaves in the backyard, sweeping in the warm sunshine and illuminating the beautiful side face of the refined woman in front of the dressing table. Xiao Yushan was wearing a long black haute couture dress, her jade-like legs looking particularly white and plump in the sunlight, while half of her pretty face was hidden in the shadows. Looking at Jiang Hao's uneasy and restless expression in the dressing mirror, she raised the corner of her lips into a stiff arc. With a gentle wave of her hand, the stylist who had been bustling around her momentarily understood and respectfully stepped out. Come here. Xiao Yusheng said expressionlessly. Jiang Hao nodded, took a deep breath, and walked slowly towards her. When he arrived at the dressing table, he looked at Xiao Yusheng's indifferent and cold-to-the-bone delicate face in the mirror, and Jiang Hao began to calculate in his heart how to approach this familiar yet strange woman. The medicinal wine is very effective. I've recovered from my cold. Xiao Yusheng said with an expressionless face. That's good, that's good. Jiang Hao replied in a muffled voice. Why are you so scared? Xiao Yusheng glanced at Jiang Hao's trembling hands. No, haha, where am I scared? Jiang Hao gave a ha, and Xiao Yusheng then unsuspectingly pushed the comb made of golden phoebe wood into Jiang Hao's hands. Comb your hair. Xiao Yusheng slightly closed his eyes. I'm not very good at combing girls' hair, so don't blame me if I don't do a good job. Jiang Hao gave an awkward but polite smile and gently placed the soft hair between his fingers. But he finally let out a sigh of relief. Xiao Yusheng definitely didn't remember what happened after she got drunk yesterday. Xiao Yusheng, on the other hand, suddenly opened her eyes, and an indescribable coldness filled her pupils. Not very good? What, it's not the first time you've combed a girl's hair, is it? She asked indifferently. Jiang Hao, because his nerves were on edge, didn't think much about it and casually replied, well, I did it for my ex-girlfriend in college. As soon as the words fell, the Perrier in Xiao Yusheng's left hand fell to the ground with a crash. The bubbles on the LV carpet gradually dissipated, while Jiang Hao was so shocked that cold sweat ran down his face and he couldn't speak. After a long silence, Xiao Yusheng said indifferently, so, you already had your first love? Jiang Hao nodded, immediately understanding why Xiao Yusheng was angry. Continue combing. Xiao Yusheng closed his eyes again, his fingernails digging into his palms, blood trickling from them. Jiang Hao hurriedly agreed, being even more careful in case Xiao Yusheng exploded again. He was speechless. It was just an ex-girlfriend, was it really necessary to be jealous? After a while, Xiao Yusheng got up and motioned for Jiang Hao to stop, sit. Jiang Hao squeezed out a smile, President Xiao, no, Yusheng, why would I sit down? I'm not wearing any makeup. But when he saw Xiao Yusheng's murderous gaze in the mirror, he took a deep breath and sat down anyway. As soon as he sat down in the chair, Xiao Yusheng sat in his arms and gently played with the hair on his forehead. Jiang Hao's heart was in turmoil, and he had no mood to feel relaxed, even though the cool but soft body was in his arms. Even the natural, tranquil fragrance of Xiao Yusheng's body made him feel a little frightened. What was that woman's name? Xiao Yusheng asked, pinching Jiang Hao's chin condescendingly. You mean my ex-girlfriend? Jiang Hao's voice trembled, and he had a bad feeling. Speak. Xiao Yoxing's eyes were cold, and the corners of her lips curled into an icy smile. Fine, her name is Zhou Jihan, she's in my department. Jiang Hao said, cautiously probing, Yu Xian, why do you want to know her name? That was all in the first year, ancient history. It's nothing. Xiao Yuxian withdrew her gaze, as if playing with the dessert on her plate, leaning over and nibbling Jiang Hao's earlobe. That's good, that's good. Jiang Hao sighed with relief, just about to ask Xiao Yuxian how she was feeling, when he heard Xiao Yoxuan's next words like being struck by lightning. Zhou Zihan, right? I'll kill her tomorrow. Xiao Yoxing's eyes flashed with an indescribable murderous intent, and there was a twisted madness in his beautiful face. No, I've already told you, it's all ancient history. Yusheng, calm down, why kill her? Jiang Hao immediately became anxious and kept apologizing. I'm jealous. What's wrong with that? Xiao Yusheng said in his ear, unable to refrain from putting her arm around his neck. Jiang Hao shook his head, feeling both angry and amused. You're jealous? You're on the verge of exploding, aren't you? If you don't want me to kill her, fine. But we have to make a trade. Xiao Yusheng got up, her beautiful eyes fluttering slightly as she bit her lower lip in a slightly seductive manner. What do you want? Jiang Hao stuttered, feeling that the woman in front of him had an unreal, dreamlike beauty. The beautiful and soft woman in his arms, with her faint fragrance, was enough to make any male animal in the world go crazy. A trace of unspeakable possessiveness flashed in Xiao Yoxing's eyes as he gently undid the buttons at the collar of Jiang Hao's shirt. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth, knowing full well that the deeper he got, the more entangled they would become. He hurriedly said, Yusheng, aren't we getting married? What does it have to do with getting married that I want you now? Xiao Yusheng interrupted him indifferently, then pushed him forcefully onto the chair, forcibly controlling his arms as he kissed him greedily. Wait, I have something to say. Jiang Hao was anxious. His plan was to first stabilize Xiao Yusheng and then slowly fade the relationship between the two. If it's every day, what's the point of fading it? What? Hurry up and say it, I'm. Xiao Yusheng snorted, her pretty face flushed, looking like she was on fire with desire. Yusheng, I think we should abstain from sex first and save the best for after we get married. After all, marriage is sacred and… Jiang Hao hadn't finished speaking when Xiao Yusheng unreasonably used her soft lips to block his mouth. After an unknown period of time, when Jiang Hao felt a dangerous sense of almost suffocation and kept slapping Xiao Yusheng's back, Xiao Yusheng reluctantly let go of his mouth. So, you agree to get married next month? Xiao Yusheng whispered in his ear, and the warm breath made his ears itch. Agreed, 1,000,000 times agreed. Jiang Hao said with a solemn oath. Getting married is always a first, after all. Xiao Yusheng's gaze was stern, and he lazily ran his fingertips across Jiang Hao's lips. It's definitely the first time, don't worry, you can check if you don't believe me. Jiang Hao said with tears in his eyes. Xiao Yusheng nodded, and then leaned lightly against Jiang Hao's chest. I can let bygones be bygones regarding your ex-girlfriend. But listen carefully. From now on, all of your first times belong to me. You're not giving me my first hair combing, but the last time you'll ever comb your hair will be with me. In other words… Xiao Yusheng's red lips curled up into a crazed smile. Her normally clear eyes were now bloodshot, reflecting Jiang Hao's nervous expression in her eyes, filled with a morbid sense of possession. Jiang Hao, from now on, I want all of your first times and last times. Chapter 11, I'll only help my husband. In the back of the Rolls-Royce Phantom, Jiang Hao fidgeted uneasily, his mind constantly flashing back to Xiao Yusheng's sick and terrifying appearance just now. If this trend continued, how could he possibly dilute the relationship or even slowly distance himself from her? It felt like she had completely locked him down. So it seemed that the only feasible plan was to first stabilize her and then eat soft rice peacefully? Jiang Hao muttered to himself, sighing with lament. Xiao Yusheng, I can go to the company by myself, there's no need to see me off. He whispered to Xiao Yusheng next to him. It's just a short walk to Zhao's building. I'm seeing you off, aren't you happy? Xiao Yusheng gave Jiang Hao a faint glance, and Jiang Hao quickly corrected himself, happy. Xiao Yusheng snorted, and looking at Jiang Hao's slightly trembling fingertips, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. What, were you afraid of me just now? She grabbed Jiang Hao's hand and leaned close to his neck, kissing him softly. No, absolutely not, I'm just cold. Yu Xin, why would I be afraid of you? I like you too much. Jiang Hao smiled weakly. Even though she knew that Jiang Hao was just being polite, when she heard those words, Yoshuan's lips couldn't help but curl into a stiff smile. Don't go to the company anymore, I'll support you with my earnings from now on. You know. Xiao Yusheng quietly leaned close to Jiang Hao's ear and whispered, word for word, my mixed fish husband. Even though Jiang Hao knew that the person sitting next to him was a female devil who didn't blink an eye when it came to killing, as soon as he heard this, Jiang Hao's ears turned red and his face flushed, and goosebumps rose all over his body. Yusheng, you still have to make a career. He scratched his head and gave a laugh, based on the principle of muddling through. Seeing his perfunctory manner, Xiao Yusheng's eyes flashed with a cold gleam, and her usual indifference returned. It's cold, isn't it? Here, put this on. She took out a trench coat from the storage compartment and draped it over Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao didn't refuse, and didn't dare to refuse either, so awkwardly he put on the trench coat. After about 15 minutes walk, the Rolls-Royce stopped at the entrance to the Xiao mansion. The driver got out of the car and respectfully opened the door for Xiao Yusheng. Just after Xiao Yusheng got out of the car, Jiang Hao suddenly thought of something, and without even taking off his trench coat, he hurriedly chased after him. Not far from the Xiao building, Jiang Qingyao's eyes welled with tears as she anxiously held her phone. Zhan Lu, why should he have to pay Jiang Hao 8 million in compensation for breaking the contract just because he initiated the resignation? She was pale and felt nothing but horror. Ms. Jiang, I really can't do anything about this. The main reason is that you did initiate the resignation. I have read your contract with Haoren, and it is completely compliant and legal. It clearly states that there is a liquidated damages clause for voluntary resignation, except for major illness or accidents. So, Ms. Jiang, my advice is to immediately apologize to your boss and admit your mistake, and ask him to cancel your resignation, otherwise you will definitely have to pay the 8 million. Before admitting your mistake, go back to work at your company and try to return to your normal routine as much as possible. The phone was hung up, and Jiang Qingyao let out a miserable laugh, lost in thought, and sat helplessly on the steps. In the 2 years since she became an internet celebrity, she had indeed become quite famous, but she had only earned 4 million in total. How could she possibly afford to pay 8 million? Forget it, listen to what lawyer Zhang said, let work return to normal first, and then apologize to Jiang Hao. Jiang Qingyao bit her silver teeth lightly. As soon as she stood up, she suddenly froze, and an expression of disbelief appeared on her face. She had seen someone extraordinary. She saw a stunning woman with long hair like a waterfall, wearing a black haute couture long dress, slowly getting out of a Rolls-Royce at the entrance of the Xiao building. Since she was a little far away, she could only see the exquisite side face of the woman. But even if she only saw the side face, she instantly recognized who the woman was. Because this woman is so famous, and every time she sets foot in Tianhai City, she causes countless waves. This is the young master of the Xiao group, the president Xiao Yusheng? Jiang Qingyao let out a gasp, and couldn't help but lower her eyes. A strong sense of inferiority welled up in her heart. Regardless of the fact that she and Xiao Yusheng are far apart in terms of beauty, both in terms of their origins and backgrounds, or their status, they are worlds apart. When she saw Xiao Yusheng, the feeling of inferiority made her feel bad. At this time, something even more surprising happened. A man wearing a trench coat walked 3 steps at a time to Xiao Yusheng, suddenly took Xiao Yusheng's hand, and said something to Xiao Yusheng. She could only see the back of the man. Oh my god, the number 1 person in Tianhai City has a boyfriend? Jiang Qingyao gasped, and then couldn't help but smile wryly. To be the boyfriend of the top chaebel's daughter, this man must be outstanding. I'm afraid that he is top-notch in terms of appearance, family background, and personal ability. I just hope that I can meet such an outstanding man one day. No, how could such a man look at me? Otherwise, I wouldn't be so troubled by the mere liquidated damages. Jiang Qingyao let out a long sigh, took out her phone, and took a photo of the two of them with emotion. She boredly enlarged the photo and suddenly froze, her eyebrows furrowed together. Why did this man always feel a little familiar? It was as if she had seen him somewhere before. Did he look a little like Jiang Hao? She muttered to herself, shocked and unable to speak, and could only stand there stupidly. No way, absolutely not. What kind of joke is this? How could Jiang Hao, a typical man, be seen by the number 1 person in Tianhai? It's true, it's probably just a look-alike. Jiang Hao would never buy that kind of trench coat. Jiang Qingyao shook her head coldly, apologized again to Jiang Hao, and took a deep breath. It seems that she will have to temporarily put up with this. While Jiang Qingyao was waiting, at the entrance of the Xiao building, Jiang Hao somewhat awkwardly released Xiao Yusheng's small, smooth hand. What's the point of releasing it? Just hold hands if you want to. Xiao Yusheng pursed her red lips. Although she could not completely change her cold appearance, the gentle curve hidden in the corner of her lips seemed to be able to melt the iceberg, dazzling and beautiful. She could tell that Zhang Hao's initiative to hold her hand made her feel very good, and even the habitual coldness in her eyes had dissipated by half. Yusheng, I want to ask you to do something for me. Zhang Hao pondered for a moment and said seriously. No. Xiao Yusheng snorted, turned her head and walked away. Her slender, pale legs in high heels made a crisp, charming sound. Zhang Hao suddenly became anxious. Just as he was about to continue begging, he heard Xiao Yusheng, who had not yet gone far, say indifferently, "Why should I help you if you don't even call me wife? I only help my husband." Zhang Hao then realized the problem and hurriedly caught up to Xiao Yusheng, once again taking her hand and grinning. "Wife, I'm a clumsy person, I said the wrong thing just now. If you have something to say it quickly, I have to go to a meeting." "That's right, there are still some problems with the funds in my company. Wife, can you invest 10 million in me, just as a loan? I will pay you back when I make money in the future." 10 million? Xiao Yusheng's eyes turned cold, and she wrapped her arms around Zhang Hao's waist. "Honey, this is too much to ask. I admit my mistake." Zhang Hao swallowed, looking nervously at Xiao Yusheng. "I'm glad you know it's too much. Do you really need to tell me about the 10 million? Just go and transfer it from my account yourself. The password is your birthday." Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. Chapter 12 Han Xiao Xiao. "Oh, okay? What the hell? Didn't you hear clearly? It's 10 million yuan. Not 1,000 yuan. Why is 10 million yuan like a cabbage?" Zhang Hao said dumbly, completely dumbfounded. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yusheng directly pinched Zhang Hao's chin and said coldly, "Zhang Hao, you keep calling me your wife, but do you actually treat me as your wife?" "Huh?" Zhang Hao said stupidly, confused. When someone else is asked for money, they either refuse or pretend to be poor. He had already prepared the right words and was ready to beg Xiao Yusheng nicely. But why did Xiao Yusheng look as if he was being looked down upon if he asked for so little? "You are my husband, I am yours, not to mention money. Between us, there has never been a division between what is mine and what is yours. But I have to say, the way you are so careful to beg me." Xiao Yusheng's eyes were indifferent, and a playful curve formed at the corner of her lips as she said in a soft voice, "You suddenly make me excited." "Excited?" Zhang Hao said suspiciously, but before he could ask, he was handed a bank card. There was 100 million yuan in the card. "Since you're begging me to do something like this, that's fine. According to your logic, if you want me to do something, you have to exchange something." Xiao Yusheng's eyes flashed with an unconcealed sense of possession as he gently stroked his face and whispered in his ear, "I want your first kiss tonight. Let's trade it for 100 million. Come to my bed tonight, and don't make me come get you. Otherwise, you'll get a punishment you can't imagine." After saying this, Xiao Yusheng turned around and left. Zhang Hao stood there in a daze, shaking his head and smiling wryly after a long while. What the hell is going on? Zhang Hao put his trench coat in the car, waved to the driver, and then walked towards the entrance of Haoren Media. He was going to the staff meeting that afternoon. Now that the situation in the company had temporarily stabilized, what was needed was to restore morale and calm the unease of the employees in the past few days. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Hao saw a group of employees gathered together whispering. "You tell me, did our wages get swallowed up by President Jiang himself?" "No way, Mr. Jiang has always been good to us. I've been an employee for a long time, and Haoren Media has never defaulted on employee wages in the past 2 years, and the employee benefits have never been lacking. Right, Mr. Jiang is quite approachable. Last time I played hooky and went to the company's billiards room to play billiards, and not only did Mr. Jiang not scold me, he actually laughed and played with me. Sigh, so what if he's approachable? As the saying goes, you can't tell what someone is really like just by meeting them. Who knows how black-hearted this kind of boss is?" Several employees exchanged comments in a low voice, and it wasn't until Zhang Hao coughed that they suddenly noticed his presence. They all looked up and greeted him respectfully, "Mr. Jiang." Zhang Hao nodded and smiled, striding towards his office. He would settle the matter of Wang Tianming embezzling employee wages today. Back in his office, he took a deep breath and sat back in his boss's chair. There was still half an hour until the meeting, so Zhang Hao idly took out his phone and saw a series of messages in the company's senior management work group, which made him frown. "Jiang Qingyao, picture?" Jiang Qingyao, can you believe it? The most important person in Tianhai, the Xiao family's young lady, has a boyfriend. I'm really curious, what kind of man is she with that President Xiao? Chief Financial Officer Wang Tianming, gee, I'm really envious, I guess it's some unimaginably important person. Human Resources Director Li Mingtao, why does this guy look so familiar to me? Holy cow, does he look a bit like President Jiang? Finance Director Wang Tianming, sweating soybean face. Operations Director Han Xiaoxiao, Li Mingtao, cut it out. Our President Jiang is a bull, and he's also good looking, but he's not that good. Jiang Qingyao, Mingtao, you can joke around, but I think you'd better not spread rumors. Jiang Qingyao, after all, the man who can get close to the eldest daughter of the Xiao family, whether it is his background or status, is not something that people like us can speculate on. Wang Tianming, CFO, that's right, people like this can only be looked up to, just watch the fun, don't really fantasize about things like looking like Jiang's own. Jiang Qingyao actually took a picture of me and Yusheng? What does she want by being so active in the work group? She can't be trying to act like nothing happened, can she? But let's deal with Wang Tianming first, and then you. Wait, Han Xiaoxiao's profile picture. Jiang Hao couldn't help squinting at the profile picture of Han Xiaoxiao wearing an LV bracelet on her wrist. I remember that Wang Tianming has been chasing after Han Xiaoxiao, hasn't he? Han Xiaoxiao's family is not well off, and the monthly loan payments add up to 10,000 yuan, so I'm afraid Wang Tianming is buying this luxury item for her. After a long while, he sneered and rang the bell on the table. After a short while, Operations Director Han Xiaoxiao walked in. 2 months ago, Jiang Hao's secretary resigned for some reason, so Han Xiaoxiao volunteered to double as his secretary at the same time in order to get in touch with him more. Han Xiaoxiao is the kind of innocent and cute girl. But although she looks harmless, Jiang Hao knows that Han Xiaoxiao is a green tea bitch. President Jiang, I heard about the company's stock market surge. It's really all thanks to you. Why don't we have dinner tonight? My treat. Just the two of us, I'll consider it a celebration for you. Han Xiaoxiao blinked. Jiang Hao didn't pick up on her, just said lightly, Xiaoxiao, you can now, not to mention the LV bracelet on your hand, even the shoes are limited edition collaborations between Stone Island and Dior. Have you paid off your mortgage and car loan? Han Xiaoxiao's smile at the corner of her mouth stiffened for a moment, before she said with a smile, oh, my family has recently become rich, so I'm just being a little extravagant. Xiaoxiao, you're making this difficult for me. Jiang Hao shook his head, took a deep breath, and muttered to himself, I'll have to put up with this to complete the plan, just put up with it. Then he got up and walked over to Han Xiaoxiao, grabbed her chin, and felt sick to his stomach. Han Xiaoxiao's cheeks flushed with shame, and she whispered, Mr. Jiang, before I chased after you for so long, why are you being so proactive now? Chasing after me? You're chasing me? What do you mean? You're wearing the luxury goods Wang Tianming bought for you to meet me. Jiang Hao pretended to be indifferent, quickly released her chin, and then wiped his hands on the corner of his own clothes. Although he was not completely sure, he could completely bluff Han Xiaoxiao. Han Xiaoxiao's eyes widened sharply, and then she confidently raised her chin. She thought she knew why Jiang Hao was angry. Mr. Jiang, you know that Wang Tianming is a lickspittle. The other day, for no reason at all, he got rich and insisted on taking me shopping to buy a gift. Mr. Jiang, I know I was wrong. I'll return the gift. Please don't be angry with him, okay? As penance, Mr. Jiang can make any request of him today. I'll agree to anything. Han Xiaoxiao said with a pout, looking as if she were about to burst into tears. Chapter 13, The Clueless Wang Tianming. Jiang Hao looked at Han Xiaoxiao, who had been tricked into almost completely confessing, and smiled slightly. Wang Tianming also came from an ordinary family and didn't have much money in his pocket. How could he possibly buy Han Xiaoxiao luxury goods on his own? The only possibility was that the money he used came from the employee wages he embezzled. Jiang Hao pushed away Han Xiaoxiao's hand and pretended to be angry. I'm not in the mood to flirt with you right now. You've always wanted to fall in love with me, right? But what about your attitude? You're spending another man's money to woo me? Han Xiaoxiao's mouth curled up in triumph at these words. Men really are such simple creatures. As soon as they see another man approaching, they get angry. So what was Jiang Hao pretending to be so serious about before? Isn't he still interested in me? Mr. Jiang, don't be angry. I'll never fool around with Wang Tianming again. I'll follow you. Han Xiaoxiao hadn't finished speaking when Jiang Hao interrupted. Okay, I promise you. As long as you distance yourself from Wang Tianming, I'll go out to dinner with you tonight. Now go and, in front of all the employees, mock the money Wang Tianming spends on you, which you're not interested in at all, and casually ask where Wang Tianming got the money to suddenly become rich. You know, I've always liked to beat up a dog when it's down, and it would be hard for me not to make him lose face this time. Zhang Hao smiled gently, concealing the disgust in his eyes very well. I see. Hee, Mr. Jiang, don't worry, I'll go now. Han Xiaoxiao smiled slyly, and kissed Zhang Hao again before leaving. After she left, Zhang Hao quickly pulled out a wet wipe to wipe off the lipstick kiss from Han Xiaoxiao. His stomach was in turmoil, and he felt nauseous to death. He took out his phone again and sent a WeChat message to Li Mingtao, the director of human resources, asking him to come to the office. Li Mingtao was the person he trusted the most in the company, and he was also his good friend from college. In fact, his relationship with Li Mingtao was even better than Wang Tianming's in college. In a short while, Li Mingtao entered the office with a smile on his face. As soon as he came in, Li Mingtao's eyes lit up and he laughed heartily. Brother Hao, it's still you, you're awesome. I thought the company was completely finished this time. Never mind that, I have something to tell you. In a moment, you do this. Zhang Hao whispered to Li Mingtao. The salary for this month has not been paid yet, and the accountant said that the funds originally intended for paying the salary have disappeared. Oh my god, it must have been embezzled by someone, right? Heh, I think it was swallowed by President Jiang himself. Apart from this kind of top dog, I can't imagine anyone with the guts to embezzle the company's funds. Several employees gathered together, and their voices got louder and louder. One of them, a female employee wearing a mask and a loose-fitting overcoat, slammed her hand on the table and shouted, "Damn you, heartless boss! Does anyone dare to go with me to demand our wages? If the worst comes to the worst, we'll just quit. We must go to Zhang Hao and demand an explanation." The rest of the employees looked at each other, just smiling. After all, there are so few people like her, and everyone is just an ordinary person, so how dare they offend their leader? The female employee sneered, "You bunch of losers, are you afraid to fight for your rights?" She strode directly to the door of Zhang Hao's office and knocked hard. "Zhang Hao, I'm sick of this. Give me my money. I quit." But Zhang Hao was not in his office at the moment, so no one answered her. At this time, Wang Tianming was sitting in his office, enjoying the sound of the employees' discussions outside. Very good, Zhang Hao, you can be the scapegoat. He leisurely put down his coffee, but still had some doubts in his heart. Why has Zhang Hao been so amiable with him until now? Could it be that Zhang Hao has really let me off the hook? How is that possible? I did all those things, and any normal person would be furious. How could he possibly let me stay in the company? Could it be? Wang Tianming relaxed and opened his eyes. Could it be that Zhang Hao is completely stupid and has not sensed my previous hostility towards him at all? He still thinks that I am his good brother. Right, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid he doesn't even know that I've swallowed the employees' wages. After all, the fake financial statements I made before were flawless, and the transferred funds were also laundered cleanly, so there's no way to tell there's a problem. Zhang Hao, you really are stupid. Wang Tianming sneered, let out a long breath, and completely calmed down. At that moment, his office door was slammed open. Wang Tianming, please stop pestering me in the future. Han Xiaoxiao shouted, her eyes brimming with tears and her face a picture of being bullied. What? Xiaoxiao, what's wrong with you? Before Wang Tianming could react, Han Xiaoxiao threw a bunch of bags and dresses on his desk. Everyone come and take a look, who can give me some advice? Ugh, Wang Tianming, this pushover, thinks he can buy me off just because he's suddenly rich and has a few smelly bucks. What do you take me for, a chicken? Han Xiaoxiao burst into tears, leaving Wang Tianming's mind in a blank. Soon, the office door was packed with employees watching the commotion. Han Xiaoxiao held the bill in her hand and loudly told everyone about the lengths Wang Tianming had gone to in order to woo her. Holy shit, is Director Wang that awesome? He spent over 300,000 yuan on luxury goods just to woo Director Han. Some employees were shocked, shaking their heads in disbelief. No, where did Director Wang get all that money? His monthly salary is only 20,000 yuan, and his family is particularly poor. He is the only university graduate in his village. Some employees were also puzzled, their eyes flashing as they guessed the answer. Wait, the employee wages were embezzled, and Director Wang suddenly became rich. Damn, why didn't I think of that? After all, Wang Tianming is the CFO, and the accountants are under his control. Several employees in the crowd had a sudden realization. At this point, Li Mingtao first closed the door to Wang Tianming's office, and then yelled at the top of his voice, "Stop gawking! Where did all this gossip come from? How could Director Wang have embezzled the employees' wages?" Instantly, the whole room fell silent. After a short silence, someone laughed and said, "Who said that Director Wang embezzled the wages? Isn't this just like throwing wood at a fire?" "Right, who said that? It's obvious that they're trying to cover it up. Director Li, you need to make yourself clear." An employee wearing black-framed glasses said indignantly. "I understand, this is the company's senior management covering up for Wang Tianming. Wang Tianming must have embezzled the money." "Yes. Otherwise, how could it be that Wang Tianming got rich while the employees' wages disappeared?" Soon, the employees surrounded Li Mingtao, looking fierce and threatening, as if they were going to rebel if they didn't get an explanation. Li Mingtao's face showed signs of anxiety at this time, and he sighed deeply. He knocked on the door of Wang Tianming's office and said apologetically, "Tianming, I can't help you anymore. You'll have to fend for yourself." Then he slunk away. Wang Tianming in the office listened to the commotion outside and opened his mouth in shock. He clenched his fists in trembling and roared in his heart, "What the hell is Li Mingtao doing? Is he trying to get me killed by making such a pointless defense for me?" Chapter 14, Wang Tianming's family is miserable. Zhang Hao narrowed his eyes with amusement as he looked at the crowd gathered outside Wang Tianming's office. He knew that Wang Tianming was finished. He walked slowly into the crowd, and the employees, who had been noisy and restless, instantly fell silent. After a while, one of the employees said apologetically, "President Jiang, we're really sorry for talking about you like that before, saying that you'd swallowed our wages for this month. Yes, I should have thought of it earlier. With such a large sum of money gone, it must have been the people in the finance department who did it." Someone clenched their fist and angrily said. The female employee who had previously gone to Jiang Hao to argue and swear also said awkwardly, "Mr. Jiang, I was too short-tempered before, I'm sorry." "It's okay, we're all family, I understand if you're having difficulties," Jiang Hao said with a smile, a trace of unnoticeable coldness crossing his eyes. Then, looking around, he said in a firm voice, "Don't worry, I will transfer the wages that someone embezzled to your accounts tomorrow. As for who that someone is, I will find out today. But I also want to thank you for choosing to stay with the company despite the crisis and the embezzlement. This Friday, I will pay for a dinner for everyone and give you a half-day afternoon off." Zhang Hao spoke with righteous words, and as soon as the words fell, the employees stared at him with wide eyes and let out cheers. "I told you, it's still our general manager Jiang. General Manager Jiang is awesome. Free half-day leave, yes." As the employees dispersed, Zhang Hao gave Li Mingtao, who had been watching the fun, a finger wag. "Brother Hao, you were saying?" Li Mingtao walked over to him and listened carefully. "The woman wearing a mask is the one who just scolded me. She's so aggressive that I suspect she's up to no good. Wait until next week when the storm has passed. Well, after all, you're in charge of personnel." Zhang Hao put a hand on Li Mingtao's shoulder and squeezed it a little harder. "I understand." Li Mingtao laughed. Zhang Hao coughed and pounded on the door to Wang Tianming's office. Soon, the door to Wang Tianming's office opened. Wang Tianming looked at Zhang Hao and then at the various employees who were now staring at him with contempt. He felt a sense of grief and indignation in his heart. His plan was flawless, so why had it become known to everyone for no reason? Could it be that Zhang Hao had planned the whole thing? Wang Tianming drew a breath. Zhang Hao walked into the office, motioned for Han Xiaoxiao to leave, and then locked the door behind him. He patted Wang Tianming on the shoulder, smiled with a relaxed face and said, "Tianming, don't be afraid, buddy. I believe you. Don't worry, I'll go report to the authorities right away and find out the truth and clear your name." Wang Tianming's face instantly turned white when he heard the words "report to the authorities." His original plan was that when Haoran Media went bankrupt and Zhang Hao was sent to prison, no one would care if he secretly pocketed the wages. But now, Haoran has returned to normal, and Zhang Hao is also alive and kicking. Once he reports to the authorities, the only thing waiting for him is prison. His own tricks are not good enough in front of the authorities. However, when Wang Tianming saw Zhang Hao's relaxed and gentle appearance, he still harbored a few flukes in his heart. Could it be that Zhang Hao really still considers him a brother? If I admit it on my own initiative. "Brother Hao, do you remember when we were at university, drinking and playing games together? Back then you said that we would be good brothers for life. If we are brothers and I'm in trouble now, Wang Tianming hesitated for a moment, taking the initiative to talk about the past and change the subject. I remember. Tianming, I will never forget when you stuck your neck out for me back then. Don't worry, no matter when or where, no matter what kind of thing you've done, I will help you. Jiang Hao said with a solemn oath, his eyes red with emotion, as if he really meant it. Wang Tianming was overjoyed when he saw him, almost on the verge of tears, his face full of emotion. It was true, he had always treated me like a good brother. He secretly gloated, and then said to Jiang Hao in a trembling voice, Brother Hao, I accidentally lost the employees' wages. I really know that I was wrong, but I don't have any cash on hand. Brother Hao, can you advance me the money first? I will definitely pay you back. After saying this, Wang Tianming regretted it. This was such a stupid excuse that even a 3-year-old wouldn't believe it. How could the wages be lost when they were sitting in the account? However, this excuse was better than saying that he had swallowed the wages himself. What? Is that really the case? Tianming, don't worry, I believe everything you say. We're buddies, if I don't believe you, who else would I believe? But the problem now is that I don't have any cash either. This month's employee wages are about 1.5 million. It seems that I still have to report to the authorities. Don't worry, the authorities have many methods and sophisticated technology, and they will definitely find the money you lost. I'll go make the call now. Jiang Hao sighed. No, don't report this small matter to the authorities. Brother Hao, can you think of a way to lend me some money first? Wang Tianming's eyes turned red at the mere mention of the word officials, and he almost lost his senses, grasping Jiang Hao's arm with all his strength. Are you kidding? Being thrown in jail for more than 10 years? What's the difference between that and being dead? Jiang Hao heard this and a barely perceptible cruel smile rose at the corner of his mouth. Finally, he'd taken the bait. Now, everything could be carried out according to plan. The plan that would bring misery to Wang Tianming's entire family. Tianming, I have a way to borrow from loan sharks. Instant loans without checking qualifications. It's just that I can't borrow from these loan sharks. The borrower needs to have family members or relatives. You know, I've been an orphan since I was a child, so I don't have any family. Forget it, let's just report it to the authorities. Jiang Hao took out his phone and pretended to make a call. 1 minute to the account? Brother Hao, I'll borrow it. I'll be grateful if you can provide me with the way. I have family, so it'll definitely be fine. Wang Tianming excitedly pressed Jiang Hao's hand, but after a moment, his eyes cleared up a bit and he hesitated, saying, It's just that the interest rate on this kind of loan sharking is too high, it's almost killing me. Don't worry about that, this kind of loan sharking is illegal, so we'll just sue them directly and just pay back the principal, right? Jiang Hao laughed heartily. Oh, Brother Hao, look at my head, I forgot about this. Yes, isn't this just pure prostitution? Wang Tianming was ecstatic, and the big stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. He would finally not have to go to prison. What he didn't know was that the loan shark that Jiang Hao was about to push him into was the Xiao family. And the government simply could not control the Xiao family, one of Xiao's top financial clans. What he didn't know was that even if he went to the police, the first thing that would be investigated would definitely be his embezzlement of employee wages. Yes, this was a perfect closed loop. But the most lethal part is still the so-called high-interest loans with 1-minute due dates from the Xiao Group, hourly loans. As the name suggests, the interest on hourly loans is charged on an hourly basis. Note, I know some of you don't like this kind of plot, so as of chapter 170, there are very few of these kinds of plots in the whole book, because after all, Jiang Hao wants revenge. The rest of the plot is sweet and funny, and it's just as good as the rest. It's not funny now purely because the author didn't let loose as much when writing these chapters before. After chapter 50, you guys will understand. Chapter 15 Xiao Yusheng and Su Ruoyan's agreed upon dinner date. The money has arrived, it has arrived. Wang Tianming looked ecstatic at the extra 1.5 million in his account. He was in a great mood, while Jiang Hao simply left the office. He yawned nonchalantly, turned his head and looked indifferently at Wang Tianming in the office, who was gloating. He knew that Wang Tianming was finished and didn't need to worry about him anymore. The Xiao Group's hourly loan can put his entire family in debt in just 2 days. At this moment, the phone in his pocket started vibrating. Jiang Hao took out his phone and saw the caller, and immediately let out a bitter smile. It was actually Xiao Yusheng herself. They had just parted less than an hour ago, and she was already calling? But Jiang Hao had no choice but to obediently answer the phone. Hello, Yusheng, what's up? 3. What 3? Yusheng, what are you talking about? Since you arrived at the office, you have spoken to 3 different women. Yuxian, I have to do this for work. Besides, how do you know so clearly? Jiang Hao asked solemnly, looking around slightly anxiously. Could it be that Xiao Yuxian has planted an eye in his company? At the other end of the phone, Xiao Yuxian did not answer, but simply said lightly, You are going to have a bad night. After saying that, she hung up the phone. Sigh. Jiang Hao had nothing to say, and could only sigh heavily. At the same time, he was alertly surveying his surroundings, knowing that he could no longer speak freely even in the office. At that moment, Han Xiaoxiao suddenly appeared, smilingly walking up to him. General Jiang, why is there cold sweat on your forehead? Here, let me wipe it off for you. With that, Han Xiaoxiao slyly extended her finger and reached towards Jiang Hao's forehead. Jiang Hao slapped her hand away, looking serious, not during working hours. Oh, Mr. Jiang, there's no one else here, so don't be so serious. Are you trying to have an in-depth exchange with someone after work? Han Xiaoxiao laughed, biting her lower lip lightly. Jiang Hao didn't say anything, because he was already stunned. Are you kidding? Xiao Yusheng is observing your every move in some way, and you little green tea are just going full throttle? A moment later, his eyes were wide with anger, and he pushed Han Xiaoxiao away. Don't you know? I have a wife now. My wife is so obedient and cute, so beautiful and kind. If I go talk to another woman, isn't that unfaithful behavior? Han Xiaoxiao was dumbfounded. A wife? Mr. Jiang, you're not married either, are you? I just wanted to invite you to dinner tonight, as we agreed. Enough. How can I go out to dinner with another woman tonight? The first thing I do after work is go find my wife to give her a hug and a kiss. I'm going crazy with loneliness because I can't see my wife right now. After saying this, Jiang Hao strode away from the office area, leaving the dumbstruck Han Xiaoxiao standing in place. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the Xiao Group building, Xiao Yusheng took off her headphones and her pretty face turned a rosy red. Just like back in high school, he was smooth-talking. She snorted, but the corner of her lips couldn't help but curve up in an inexplicable way. Of course she knew that Jiang Hao had sensed that she was eavesdropping and deliberately said such romantic things to appease her. But even if it was just a way to appease her, even if it was very pretentious, and even if she wasn't sure if what Jiang Hao said was true or not, she was very happy. Xiao Yusheng looked up and glanced at the office, which was eerily quiet. A terrible sense of loneliness welled up in her heart. Now that she has finally managed to lure Jiang Hao to her side, Jiang Hao insists on starting his own media company. This cannot continue. But there is always a hurdle in her heart that she cannot overcome. That hurdle is the hatred she felt years ago. How do I turn you into a good boy who is content to be a kept man? As she pondered, she looked at her phone screen and couldn't help but narrow her eyes. Su Ruoyan. Xiao Yusheng's indifferent gaze flashed with murderous intent, and she picked up the phone directly, saying indifferently, What is it? TSK, President Xiao, you took Jiang Hao away from me, so you should be very happy now, right? Just say what you want to say. It's nothing, I've been honest. According to the conditions we discussed, I won't harass Jiang Hao for at least a week. But I want to have dinner with Jiang Hao tonight. I don't agree. Don't be so quick to reject, don't worry, you can come along, I wouldn't dare play any tricks on you. Don't you want to see who has a higher status in Jiang Hao's heart, me or you? Besides, I can also offer you a condition that you can't refuse. What condition? I can sell Haoran Media to you. Don't forget, I am the chairman of Haoran. Xiao Yusheng immediately fell silent upon hearing this. She knew that if Haoran was acquired, then she could keep Jiang Hao by her side. After a long while, she took a deep breath and said slowly, What time? 9 p.m., Ultraviolet Restaurant, don't be late. Jiang Hao looked at the smiling girl in front of him and couldn't help but feel a little headache. The girl was dressed in a black OL uniform, her long black silk legs and high heels were lazily folded together, and her long hair was tied into a neat high ponytail. She has bright eyes and white teeth, with fair skin like snow. Her appearance and temperament are extremely inconsistent, sweet and immature, white and childish. The girl's name is Jiang Yoshua, and she is a shareholder of his company. And Jiang Yoshua's identity is extremely terrifying, because Jiang Yoshua's surname Jiang is the Tianhai Jiang family's Jiang. No, you ran a long way from Suwei to Pudong just to tell me that I can't deal with that woman Jiang Qingyao for the time being? Why? Speechless, he placed a cup of tea in front of Jiang Yuxue. Jiang Yuxue sipped the black tea lightly and laughed. President Jiang, ever since I became a shareholder of Haoren 2 years ago, you've been trying to get close to me, wanting to cooperate with the Jiang family, haven't you? Jiang Hao nodded. Back then, I was too naive, I didn't know what level the Jiang family was, and I didn't understand the principle of exchange of interests. Now that I think about it, why would the Jiang family cooperate with a small company like mine? I'm glad you understand, but now we can cooperate. Don't ask why, I have my reasons. Jiang Yuxue lightly brushed her hair at the ear and handed Jiang Hao a photo. The photo shows a young and beautiful young woman. As you know, the identity of your company's Jiang Qingyao is very special. The person in the photo is my father's mistress when he was young, and she is also the biological mother of Jiang Qingyao. Back then, she caused havoc in our family with the young Jiang Qingyao. As you know, Jiang Qingyao was expelled from the Jiang family, and her mother died of illness. And yesterday, I got some news. My father, out of guilt, wants to take Jiang Qingyao, his illegitimate daughter, back home. Jiang Yuxue sneered, and tore the photo to shreds. Jiang Hao silently collected the pieces and put them in the trash can. This is a great opportunity for him. President Jiang Qingyao's return to the Jiang family is a foregone conclusion, so for the time being, she cannot be touched. What I want is for Jiang Qingyao to be disgraced during the time she is back in the Jiang family, so disgusting that everyone in the Jiang family will oppose her return. The reason I came to you is that I trust your abilities, and secondly, you should know Jiang Qingyao best right now. Jiang Yuxue took out a contract and placed it in front of Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao smiled slightly when he saw the contract. It really is a generous benefit beyond my imagination. I'm a little worried that our Haoran can't handle it. But Miss Jiang, do you mean you want to sign the contract directly? Aren't you afraid that I won't do anything after I receive the money? Jiang Hao laughed and picked up the landline phone to call the legal department to come and look at the contract. Mr. Jiang, I know how much power the person behind you, Mr. Su, has, and I also know the saying that even if the monk escapes, the temple remains. Of course, none of that matters anymore. Because Jiang Yuxue propped up her snow-white chin lazily, blinked her beautiful eyes, and smiled brightly, because what I trust most is Mr. Jiang's personal ability and charisma. She gently took Jiang Hao's hand. Mr. Jiang, you really don't know how lethal your appearance is to women. Chapter 16 Jiang Qingyao. Jiang Hao lightly shook off Jiang Yuxue's hand with a carefree air, his mouth twitching. Miss Jiang, we are considered partners now, and you are still pulling that with me? Jiang Yuxue gave a wan smile, but secretly she was shocked. She thought she had hidden her petty thoughts deep enough, and wanted to test the waters to see if she could quietly influence Jiang Hao through her beauty. Unexpectedly, Jiang Hao saw right through her. It seems that Mr. Jiang doesn't like my outfit today. Jiang Yuxue shrugged innocently and pinched her black silk legs with pretended annoyance. Didn't you say that men like black silk? Jiang Hao just smiled perfunctorily in response, then stood up. I will sign the contract directly after the legal department has finished reviewing it. Jiang Qingyao, I won't touch her for the time being, but I will plant several landmines in advance. They will explode during the period of time when Jiang Qingyao is back at the Jiang residence. By the way, does Jiang Qingyao know that she can return to the Jiang family? Jiang Hao asked. Don't worry, she doesn't know. My father plans to first calm the discussions in the family and then notify Jiang Qingyao the day before she returns to the Jiang family. Jiang Yuxue tilted her head and smiled. That's good, Miss Jiang, then I'll go first. Goodbye. After saying this, Jiang Hao turned around and left. Jiang Yuxue stared at his back and smiled slightly. What a strange man. What? Dinner with Su Ruoyan at 9 p.m.? You're serious, Yu Sheng? Jiang Hao broke the defense directly to the phone, his fingers shaking. Well, don't worry, I'll be with you. Okay, since it's your decision and you're still going to accompany me, it doesn't matter. Jiang Hao let out a sigh of relief. With Xiao Yusheng there, Su Ruoyan wouldn't dare do anything reckless. By the way, I had someone send a Ferrari to your garage. You can drive it for now. It's your new mode of transportation. The key is on the roof. A Ferrari, that's pretty awesome. Wait, that wife of yours, Jiang Qingyao, I'll probably be seeing a lot of her these days. I wanted to let you know. I already know about what Jiang Yuxue from the Jiang family told you. Don't try to eavesdrop on me, wife. But since you already know, tell me, my dear, I'll fulfill any condition you want. Tonight, you have to take the initiative. Before that, you have to read me a bedtime story, bathe with me, etc. What's that? Zhang Hao asked with a knowing smile. Xiao Yuxing on the other end of the phone couldn't help but fall silent, and his voice was muffled as he spoke. That's the thing. What thing? My dear, I really don't understand. I don't understand, but tonight I'll let you understand. The phone hung up, and Xiao Yuxing's cold voice disappeared. Zhang Hao let out a sigh of relief and couldn't help smiling. This kind of equal dialogue was really rare, and it reminded him of high school. He left the company and walked towards the underground garage. The Ferrari should have been repaired and delivered to the company garage. Meanwhile, Jiang Qingyao was crouching on the ground, annoyed, looking at her Porsche Panamera, and from time to time, she pounded on the tire. Apparently, her tire had blown out. What should she do? Jiang Qingyao pondered in private, and when she inadvertently saw a Ferrari SF90 parked quietly not far away, she immediately brightened up. A Ferrari? The company actually has this car? No, it should be some big client. This kind of Ferrari costs at least 4 to 5 million. I wish I could drive a car like this someday. Jiang Qingyao sighed and helplessly glanced at her own Porsche again. She had saved up for a long time to buy her Porsche, and paid 400,000 yuan as a down payment and took out a loan to buy it second-hand. Otherwise, it would not break down so easily. I guess only a rich second-generation boss can drive a Ferrari like this. Why don't we take a photo together? Jiang Qingyao smiled, quickly took out her phone, walked over to the Ferrari, and took a selfie happily. She decided to use this video as today's short video daily update. No need for words, the Ferrari will speak for you. Thank yourself for your hard work. She satisfiedly added the text and posted the video. If you don't build a good persona, how can you be an internet celebrity? At this moment, Jiang Qingyao saw Zhang Hao slowly walking towards her. She pinched the hem of her skirt with her fingers, struggling with herself. She knew that she should go up to Zhang Hao and get close to him, so that she could continue working at Haoran Media. Otherwise, she might not be able to pay the huge penalty fee even if she worked for 5 more years. But she really couldn't bring herself to do it. After all, it was Zhang Hao who had always been the one pursuing her, buying her things and acting like a dog. After a lot of internal struggle, she took a deep breath and walked up to Zhang Hao and said, Mr. Zhang, can you help me figure out what's wrong with the tires? My car is always breaking down. Jiang Qingyao tilted her head, looking carefully innocent and cute. This was her surefire technique for dealing with Zhang Hao in the past, and it had worked every time. But this time, it seemed that her goal had been thwarted. Zhang Hao gave her an expressionless look and said indifferently, what does that have to do with me? Although he had promised Jiang Yuxue that he would deal with Jiang Qingyao after a while, it didn't mean that he had to be Jiang Qingyao's lapdog like he used to be. Jiang Qingyao was momentarily stunned, and her cheeks soon flushed with anger. But now she dared not contradict Zhang Hao, so she could only take a deep breath and continue pleading, Zhang Hao, will you help me fix my car? I can let you take me out to dinner tonight. Zhang Hao almost laughed in anger when he heard this. You want me to help you fix your car and let you take me out to dinner? Not interested. Zhang Hao crossed his arms behind his back and stood there, staring coldly at her. Obviously, Zhang Hao wanted Jiang Qingyao to quickly move away from his car. But Jiang Qingyao had no idea that the Ferrari was Zhang Hao's. So Jiang Qingyao snorted lightly and raised her fair chin. Zhang Hao, don't you just want me to make the first move? Why are you looking at me like that? Fine, I'll take the initiative again. If you fix my car for me, not only can I have dinner with you tonight, but we can also go on a date. You've been begging me to go to the movies with you, haven't you? Jiang Qingyao was smug with herself, thinking that this would definitely make Zhang Hao, the lickspittle, take the bait and dutifully fix her car. Moreover, it would also bring her closer to Zhang Hao and allow her to stay at the company. But Zhang Hao just sneered, I'm not interested in going out with you. Jiang Qingyao was instantly shocked, clenching her fists in anger as she glared at Zhang Hao. I've even agreed to go out with you, and you're still just standing there? Fine, I'll just assume you can't fix it, so are you just going to stand there, or are you going to drive me in your car? Sorry, I'm not interested either, I'll just take a taxi. Your broken-down Passat is not even good enough for a dog. You're so narrow-minded and you're the boss of a company. Do you see this Ferrari? This is the difference. Other people drive Ferraris, and you drive a Passat. Jiang Qingyao gritted her teeth and was extremely angry. She had planned to take the initiative to please Zhang Hao in order to continue working at Haoran, but now she was really angry. Someone else's Ferrari? Jiang Hao's expression became strange. What, it's not someone else's, is it yours? Jiang Hao, don't you dare pretend to be aloof and cold to win my favor. Jiang Qingyao snorted and walked away. Jiang Hao shook his head and just pulled open the door of the Ferrari and got in. In a moment, the roar of the V8 engine resounded through the basement. Jiang Qingyao turned back dazedly and saw Jiang Hao, who was calm and composed in the Ferrari, and her face instantly turned pale. How is this possible? She lost her voice and covered her mouth. Chapter 17, Pay for Your Own Gas. Jiang Hao, wait. Jiang Qingyao ran over to the Ferrari, knocked on the window, and said incredulously, is this your car? Jiang Hao glanced at her and said, so what if it's mine? How is this possible? Jiang Qingyao looked down bitterly, and unspeakable remorse welled up in her heart. Thinking back to what she had just done, Jiang Qingyao hated herself and wanted to slap herself, and then find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Don't get me wrong, I was driving someone else's car. How could a petty little company owner like me afford a Ferrari? Jiang Hao shrugged innocently, thinking he was being honest. He was indeed petty and just a small business owner, and the Ferrari belonged to Xiao Yuxing. But when Jiang Qingyao heard this, it didn't sound right. Jiang Qingyao blushed instantly, and unusually, she didn't pick on Jiang Hao. Those calm words pierced her heart of shame. She gave a bitter smile and couldn't help but ask herself what she had just been. A clown? However, she finally understood why Jiang Hao had been standing in front of her without moving. She had foolishly thought that Jiang Hao was playing hard to get, was being stubborn, and was not moving because he wanted to help her. In the end, she had simply been blocking his way, blocking the way to the Ferrari. Suddenly, Jiang Qingyao felt 100 emotions in her heart, and it wasn't a good feeling. An indescribable sense of remorse welled up in her heart. If she had just learned to be a little smarter and let Jiang Hao give her a ride, would she be sitting in the passenger seat of the Ferrari right now? Jiang Hao, my car broke down, and I was a little angry just now, so don't mind what I said. Jiang Qingyao looked apologetic, and Jiang Hao was stunned. Over the years, he had never taken the initiative to hear Jiang Qingyao apologize to him. He had always been submissive to Jiang Qingyao in every way, and this was really the first time. However, he was just surprised, and he didn't have any other thoughts. Jiang Hao looked out the car window at Jiang Qingyao, who looked like she was about to cry, with a pure and innocent expression, and couldn't help but snicker. At this point, he no longer felt anything for this woman. If there's nothing else, I'll go first. Jiang Hao said indifferently, and then he was about to step on the accelerator. Wait a minute, I have something to tell you. Jiang Qingyao was anxious, and she patted the car window again. Jiang Hao, I can't drive now, can you give me a ride? Jiang Hao waved impatiently, and just as he was about to walk away, he narrowed his eyes. Jiang Yuxue told him to ruin Jiang Qingyao during the time when Jiang Qingyao returned to the Jiang family. In this situation, he must lay a landmine beforehand. When Jiang Qingyao returns to the Jiang family, it will be the kind of landmine that will blow up Jiang Qingyao. Jiang Hao looked out the car window at Jiang Qingyao, who was full of hope, and then lowered his head and pondered for a moment before smiling slightly. Dealing with a vain woman like Jiang Qingyao, isn't this the perfect landmine fuse? An extremely shameless and dark plan slowly took shape in his mind. Give you a ride, is that it? Okay. Jiang Hao's mouth curled up into a strange smile. Thanks. Jiang Qingyao happily agreed and got into the passenger seat. She looked curiously at the exquisite and luxurious interior of the car, her eyes shining. This is a Ferrari. Jiang Qingyao muttered to herself, looking at Jiang Hao next to her, and she felt incredibly comfortable. At the same time, she was secretly delighted that she had indeed made the right move in dealing with Jiang Hao's weak attitude. But at this time, Jiang Hao opened the WeChat payment code on his phone and placed it in front of her. You pay for the gas. Jiang Hao said expressionlessly. Jiang Qingyao was slightly stunned on hearing this, and then pointed at herself in disbelief. I have to pay for the gas? Nonsense, otherwise why would I let you get in the car? To help you? Do you think you deserve my help? If you don't pay for the gas, get out of the car quickly. Jiang Hao said indifferently. Jiang Qingyao was suddenly stunned when she looked at Jiang Hao's profile, and a sense of strangeness that she had never felt before rose in her heart. Is this still the Jiang Hao who was subservient to her at the time? Are you serious? Are you kidding? I'm a girl. I've just graduated from university and I'm still a young girl, so how can you make a young girl like me pay for the gas? Jiang Qingyao said angrily. A university graduate? You're not even a newborn calf that's just left the pen. Pay if you want to, or get out if you don't. Jiang Hao sneered, and then he was about to kick Jiang Qingyao out of the car. Jiang Qingyao slammed her bag down hard, then left the Ferrari angrily, coldly saying, "Jiang Hao, don't regret it, I finally wanted to sit in the passenger seat with you once." Her game of playing hard to get wasn't over yet when the Ferrari roared and left its parking space. Jiang Qingyao panicked. She was still going to get into the car to shoot video footage and continue to create the image of a rich girl online. Wait. I can't pay for the gas? Jiang Qingyao stamped her foot angrily and burst into tears, not pretending this time, but crying for real. Jiang Hao then stopped the car, lowered the window and held up the payment code in front of her, saying, "Pay the gas bill first, then get in. I'll give you a discount this time, 500 yuan is enough." Jiang Qingyao took a deep breath and really scanned 500 yuan to Jiang Hao. She endured it in order to get the footage. There was no choice. After all, it was a matter of cost. A Ferrari like this would cost thousands to rent from a car rental company for a day, and you might not even be able to rent it. She was currently paying off the monthly car loan on a used Parramatta, and she also had a mortgage on the house she had just bought. Her savings had been completely drained by the down payments on these two things, and she didn't have much cash on hand at all. After getting back into the car, Jiang Qingyao sobbed quietly, wiping the tears from her cheeks non-stop. Jiang Hao ignored her and quietly took out a tissue. Jiang Qingyao was momentarily stunned, and then a strange smile rose at the corners of her lips. Sure enough, Jiang Hao still cared about her. He was going to hand her a tissue. Achoo! Jiang Hao sneezed after covering his nose with the tissue and impatiently said, "How much perfume are you wearing?" "It stinks." Jiang Qingyao froze, and it was only after a long while that she recovered. She clenched her snow-white fists and asked Jiang Hao with shame and indignation, "Why didn't you come and care about me? I've been crying like this, and you didn't even give me a..." She was filled with grief and indignation in her heart. What was going on? How had the Jiang Hao who had previously cared for her in every way become the cold and heartless ice cube she saw before her now? But Jiang Hao just said to himself, "I need to go buy a gift first, and then I'll take you back." Upon hearing this, Jiang Qingyao quickly dried her tears and snorted lightly. In the end, isn't this just an excuse to buy a gift for herself to apologize? The sad thing is, she doesn't know that the gift Jiang Hao wants to buy can naturally only be given to one person. That person is Xiao Yushang. She pretended to be ignorant and asked Jiang Hao curiously, "Jiang Hao, what kind of gift are you going to buy?" Jiang Hao glanced at her and said, "Whatever's good, whatever's expensive, Chanel, Hermes, something like that." Jiang Qingyao's heart warmed slightly, and she subconsciously looked at Jiang Hao. The young man next to her casually held the steering wheel with the bright Ferrari logo in his long, slender hands. His eyes were so sharp and proud, and his profile was so handsome. How had she not noticed how handsome Jiang Hao was before? Especially with that Ferrari-matching temperament, it was simply earth-shattering. Of course, what she didn't know was that the person who drove an ordinary car and was so attentive to her, and the person who now drove a Ferrari and paid her no mind, were the same person. His temperament had never changed. The only thing that had changed was the hot heart that Jiang Hao had originally liked for her, which she had cut into pieces with her own hands and made it cold and broken. Chapter 18, Not For Me? Jiang Hao and Jiang Qingyao got out of the car and walked into a Chanel store. Jiang Qingyao looked at the gleaming store and couldn't help but lower her head. To be honest, even though she had earned money in the past 2 years, she still hadn't bought this kind of luxury item. She had always had difficulty overcoming that subtle sense of inferiority. What's more, if you were just starting to buy this kind of luxury item, you couldn't buy anything really good without spending a premium of 1 or 2 million on ordinary quality goods. With her car and home loans, she couldn't even lift her head, let alone have any spare money to buy luxury items. Jiang Hao is so good to me. Jiang Qingyao muttered to herself, clearly not understanding that Jiang Hao's present today was not for her. She also completely forgot how good Jiang Hao had been to her before and how much money he had spent on her. "Hello." The Chanel saleswoman greeted Jiang Hao indifferently. The saleswoman was pretty and slightly flirtatious, a beautiful young woman with excellent temperament. However, she looked at Jiang Hao with a somewhat cold gaze. It was because Jiang Hao was a stranger and his attire was shabby. In their line of work, they are not arrogant sometimes. If they are not regular customers who know their strength, they are too lazy to introduce too much to ordinary strangers. In fact, they may even let new customers buy some inferior products, which do not earn much money, and the salesperson will naturally be indifferent. Luxury goods are a typical vanity tax that only reaps the rich. I don't know much about Chanel, so just give me the best bag in your store. As Jiang Hao finished speaking, the saleswoman pressed her eyes and said stiffly, "Sorry, sir, you are not yet eligible to purchase our best products. Please spend some money on basic styles first." Jiang Hao twitched the corners of his mouth. What was wrong with these luxury goods stores? Why wouldn't they let you buy the best if you wanted it? Jiang Qingyao, on the other hand, was stunned, her fingers trembling with excitement. Jiang Hao actually cared about her so much that he wanted to give her the best Chanel? In an instant, Jiang Hao's back turned into something tall in her eyes, making her heart flutter. A good Chanel bag costs more than 100,000 yuan, and Jiang Hao is being too generous, isn't he? Jiang Hao subconsciously turned his head and looked at the excited Jiang Qingyao behind him, impatiently saying, "Can you go find a place to sit first? What are you whispering behind me?" "Okay, Jiang Hao, you go ahead and buy it." Jiang Qingyao nodded happily and hurriedly sat on the sofa in the distance. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, carefully observed the basic bags and high-end jewelry handed over by the salesperson. After looking at them for a long time, he couldn't make head or tail of them, and could only scratch his head in confusion. "Get all of these bags." Then, he slapped the bank card Xiao Yusheng had given him on the table. Although it was a bit shameless to use Xiao Yusheng's money to buy a gift for Xiao Yusheng, Comrade Jiang Hao really had no other way. The debt crisis from the previous 2 days had shaken his pockets clean. "It's okay, after the company makes money, I'll just pay her back. I'll become a successful person," Jiang Hao vowed to himself. The saleswoman nodded and took the bank card to swipe it. In no time, the items were packed and delivered to Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao turned away from the counter, and Jiang Qingyao walked up to him, smiling and pursing her lips. "Jiang Hao, really, why did you buy so many gifts? Did you buy the best bag in the store?" Jiang Hao gave her a look. "Are you deaf or blind? Didn't you hear the clerk say that the best ones were not allowed to be bought and only the most basic ones could be bought?" Jiang Qingyao's eyes immediately dimmed when she heard the word basic. However, she was still very excited. After all, Jiang Hao had bought so many basic models. "Here, let me help you carry it. You bought so much for me, I'm embarrassed." Jiang Qingyao was very eager to take the Chanel from Jiang Hao's hands. Jiang Hao pushed her away at once, his expression slightly disgusted. "Who said I bought this for you?" Jiang Qingyao's original smile instantly froze on her face, and it took a long time before she reacted. "Not for me? I bought this for my girlfriend. What does it have to do with you?" Jiang Hao snorted and was about to walk out of the store. Upon hearing this, Jiang Qingyao's anger bit her lips and instantly broke through. At the same time, an indescribable sense of loss welled up in her heart. How could this be? Hasn't he been chasing after me and only liked me? Why would he suddenly have a girlfriend? Damn it! Jiang Qingyao hated it so much that her lips bled. After a moment, she took a deep breath and comforted herself mentally. It's okay, anyone who would look at Jiang Hao would definitely be an ugly person or a fat pig. Suddenly, she was startled by a loud noise. She saw a dark black Ferrari LaFerrari slowly pull up in front of the shop. Jiang Hao also noticed the LaFerrari in front of the door and couldn't help but look curiously into the car window. After just one glance, he broke out in a cold sweat. He saw the car door open and a woman wearing a white dress and a mask slowly get out of the car. Xiao Yusheng looked at Jiang Hao, who was staring at her in the shop, and smiled indifferently. Chapter 19 No Ifs. Xiao Yusheng tugged at the bottom of the mask, feeling very uncomfortable. There was no way around it, she was just too famous in Tianhai. Except in the guarded Xiao building, she would wear a mask to conceal her identity in other public places. Otherwise, as soon as she appeared, many businessmen or dignitaries would get the news and come to ingratiate themselves. Xiao Yusheng walked into the store expressionless, while Jiang Qingyao's eyes shone with excitement as she stared at the Ferrari LaFerrari outside the door. She recognized many cars and naturally knew that this LaFerrari was much, much more advanced than Jiang Hao's SF90. Jiang Qingyao shifted her gaze to Xiao Yusheng and reluctantly lowered her head. Even though the woman was wearing a mask and sunglasses, she couldn't see her face clearly. But from the special aura emanating from the woman and the Ferrari LaFerrari outside the door, one can also tell that she and this woman are on different levels. They are simply not comparable. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had reported to Xiao Yusheng earlier that he would be in contact with Jiang Qingyao over the next 2 days due to a plan. Otherwise, he would really be finished today. Jiang Qingyao's eyes flickered, and she snorted at Jiang Hao. "Jiang Hao, don't think that it's anything special for you to drive a Ferrari SF90. Look at someone else driving a Ferrari LaFerrari, they're not as arrogant as you. Jiang Hao's face was expressionless, and he simply didn't bother to respond to her. Jiang Qingyao was even more angry when she saw that Jiang Hao was indifferent to her sarcasm. It's just a SF-90, and a few luxury goods, what's the big deal? But the next moment, something that shocked her beyond belief happened. She saw Xiao Yusheng slowly walk up to Jiang Hao and fix his collar. Why is he wearing Chanel? Xiao Yusheng asked indifferently. I bought you a present. I know this kind of thing is no different from cabbage, but don't worry, when I make money in the future, I'll buy you something better. Jiang Hao scratched his head. Jiang Qingyao froze for a moment, glanced at the Ferrari LaFerrari outside the shop, then at Xiao Yusheng and Jiang Hao, and was shocked. Jiang Hao, is this your girlfriend? Jiang Qingyao exclaimed, clenching her fists tightly. Why? Jiang Hao asked calmly, without even looking at her. How could this be? Jiang Qingyao gave a miserable laugh, lowered her head disconsolately, and felt bitter in her heart. Just now, she was still convinced that the kind of woman who could be interested in Jiang Hao would definitely be an ugly plain woman. But now, even though this mysterious woman in a Ferrari LaFerrari was wearing a mask and sunglasses, she could still tell from the woman's perfect figure and temperament that this woman was definitely a great beauty who did not come along every day. She, herself, could never be compared to this woman. A sense of inferiority washed over Jiang Qingyao, and she could not help but bite her lips. What the hell had happened in the past 2 days? Why had her former dog-licking self suddenly become the boyfriend of a beautiful rich woman from Cailafa? She was unwilling to accept it, really unwilling to accept it. Why? Whether out of jealousy or extreme anger and unwillingness, Jiang Qingyao suddenly gathered her courage and walked directly up to Xiao Yusheng. Miss, have you been cheated? Jiang Hao is just putting on a brave face, and the Chanel he just bought you can't even be considered the best, just the basic model. Even the salesgirl looked down on him. Jiang Qingyao said coldly, and glanced at Jiang Hao proudly. As a woman, she knew that women hated when gifts with a sense of ceremony are bought perfunctorily. Unfortunately, she was wrong, dead wrong. Xiao Yusheng didn't need this, and second, Xiao Yusheng and a woman like Jiang Qingyao were never the same type, nor were they from the same world. Hearing Jiang Qingyao's words, a flash of murderous intent crossed Xiao Yusheng's phoenix eyes, and she subconsciously reached for the dagger in her pocket. In a place like this, killing a gold-digging woman who dared to speak ill of her husband was something the authorities could not control. However, Jiang Hao smiled and took Xiao Yusheng's hand, whispering in her ear, "Wife, don't be impulsive. Killing this kind of person will dirty your hands. After I've squeezed her dry in the next few days, whether I want to kill her or not will still be up to you." Xiao Yusheng nodded expressionlessly, then strode towards the Chanel saleswoman. Jiang Qingyao, on the other hand, was secretly delighted, thinking that the masked woman must be angry and wanted to ask the Chanel salesperson about Jiang Hao's spending just now. Just from the indifferent attitude of the salesperson towards Jiang Hao just now, she could also imagine what Jiang Hao's fate would be. Jiang Hao, I wish you a happy breakup. She snorted at Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, ignored her and sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, looking carefree. He knew in his heart that the more disgusting Jiang Qingyao was, the worse her fate would be in the long run. Jiang Qingyao looked forward to seeing the mysterious masked woman sitting at the counter and couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. However, at this moment, a scream made her lose her concentration. She saw that the female shop assistant, who had always been aloof, was shocked and her mouth hung open after seeing the masked woman. She was so frightened that she couldn't speak. This card belongs to you. You are that Xiao. Female clerk holding Xiao Yusheng's special bank card stuttered, and before she could finish speaking, Xiao Yusheng lightly tapped the counter. Do more work and speak less. Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. The female clerk instantly understood, quickly perked up, and beamed, Dear lady, you are our top-level VLC, what can I do for you? If you are tired, we can take you to the VLC room to talk in detail. I'm not tired. I want the best stuff in the store, the stuff for men. I want to give it to my boyfriend. Xiao Yusheng sipped the tea the saleswoman handed her. Jiang Hao had expected this situation, but Jiang Qingyao's mind was blank. This was not what she had expected. Wasn't the saleswoman condescending? Shouldn't she have told the masked woman to buy the basic stuff? Why had her attitude changed so quickly? Why wasn't she angry, but instead was giving the best thing in the store as a gift to Jiang Hao? No, how could this be? Jiang Hao is just a dog licker I had before. Jiang Qingyao screamed hysterically in her heart, her eyes red with anger. She looked at Jiang Hao, who looked indifferent, and felt extremely suffocated. After a while, the waiter, carrying a large pile of things, bowed respectfully to Xiao Yusheng. Miss, do you want me to take it to your car now, or wait until tonight to deliver it to your home? Deliver it to my home. And Xiao Yusheng's gaze turned cold, and she said expressionlessly to the saleswoman, I heard that disgusting woman surnamed Zhang say that you just had a bad attitude towards my husband. The saleswoman shivered, hurriedly trotted over to Jiang Hao, and fell to her knees with a thud. Yes, she fell to her knees. It was very magical, but this was the stark reality. This was the service that all Chanel stores provided to VLC. To Chanel, VLC was already a customer that was considered to be of the same level as company executives or shareholders, not to mention a top-level chaebol like Xiao Yusheng. If he gets angry, even the Chanel headquarters abroad will feel the tremor and send someone over to investigate. Kneeling down is the most simple and sincere way to apologize, and it is a compulsory course for every luxury store clerk. Mr. Jiang, I'm really sorry. Before the female clerk could finish her apology, Jiang Hao waved his hand, took Xiao Yusheng's hand, and turned away. Jiang Qingyao stared at Jiang Hao's back lost in thought, and an indescribable bitterness welled up in her heart. If only Jiang Hao had been nicer, if only she had accepted when he had pursued her. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Chapter 20, I will always be by your side, forever. Jiang Hao sat in the passenger seat of the Ferrari LaFerrari, taking in the luxurious and sporty interior of the car. This was much better than the SF90 he had driven today. Xiao Yusheng opened the door and tossed him the keys. You drive. This car was originally meant for you, but the family servants made a mistake and sent the SF90 instead. After saying that, she gestured for Jiang Hao to sit in the driver's seat. Come on, I don't think my status is worthy of this kind of car for the time being. I feel awesome driving an SF90. Jiang Hao laughed. So what? As long as you are worthy, that's fine with me. Xiao Yusheng's red lips curved into a nice arc, and she got into the passenger seat. Jiang Hao was stunned, and then shook his head helplessly. In a moment, the Rafa quickly sped out of the commercial street and headed towards the destination. Jiang Hao's hand holding the steering wheel trembled a little. After hesitating for a long time, he tentatively said, Do you really want to go have dinner with Su Ruoyan? His brows were knitted, and he was obviously very nervous. He was so nervous, and really couldn't blame him for being too scared, purely because Su Ruoyan was so terrifying. That crazy woman just wants to cripple him and lock him up forever. Jiang Hao was silent. He had too many grudges against the Su family in his life. When he was young, the Lin family was destroyed by the Su family. Later, Jiang Hao, who had assumed a new identity and gone into hiding, was imprisoned by Su Ruoyan. Are you scared? Xiao Yusheng asked softly, taking his right hand. Well, sort of. Su Ruoyan and I have a deep connection. Jiang Hao sighed. Xiao Yusheng was silent for a long time, and a rare tenderness flashed in his eyes. Everyone is afraid. Ever since the struggle for power in the Xiao family began, even now that I have succeeded, I am always afraid. Every night, I have nightmares, dreaming that one day I will die on the throne for no reason, and that everything I have gained will be reduced to ashes. I have overcome all of this. But guess what my only unovercome fear is? Xiao Yusheng said lightly. Jiang Hao was stunned and shook his head. He really didn't expect Xiao Yusheng to show him his vulnerable side without reservation. Just as he was lost in thought, a large truck quickly changed lanes in front of him. Jiang Hao was shocked and couldn't react at all. Seeing that he was about to be hit by the truck, Xiao Yusheng gently put his arm around his neck and slammed the steering wheel. Drive carefully. Xiao Yusheng gave him a soft kiss on the cheek. Jiang Hao let out a relieved sigh, quickly pulled himself together, and asked with a smile, I can't guess what your insurmountable fear is. Xiao Yusheng's red lips curled up into a stiff smile, and she whispered in his ear, Stupid husband, what I'm most afraid of is losing you. So, don't be afraid of Su Ruoyan, I'll be with you forever. She looked at Jiang Hao's somewhat surprised expression, and her eyes couldn't help but fill with memories. Her husband really is a forgetful person. The sunset cast a warm orange glow inside the car. It was also a warm day when she sat on the big stone at the back entrance of high school, crying timidly. Her originally white school uniform was covered in graffiti and there were even a few shoe prints on it. It was only the second day of school, and she was bullied so badly under the orders of some people. She rubbed her eyes helplessly and whispered shakily, I'm an illegitimate daughter, but I've never wanted to fight for family property. Why am I being expelled from home? Why do all the people bully me? Suddenly, a strange fragrance made her stop crying and she looked up blankly. What she saw was a simple lunchbox containing golden fried rice. The young girl touched her stomach, which could not help but rumble, and stared somewhat absent-mindedly at the sneaky green onion sprinkles buried in the fried rice. There are a lot of green onion sprinkles, it should smell really good. She hadn't eaten for 2 days, and the little money she had for food had been stolen from her. Go ahead and eat it, it's cold, but I have confidence in my cooking. A reassuring voice echoed in the young girl's ears. The girl didn't have time to say thank you, nor did she care who was standing in front of her. She took the spoon roughly and gobbled it down. She was really hungry. The fried rice, so fragrant and delicious. The eggs and spring onions were just right, overflowing with a fragrant aroma but not burnt. She thought to herself, someone who can cook such patient fried rice must be a very gentle person. Eat, eat. I saved it especially for you. As soon as I saw you, I wondered why, and then I thought of me a few years ago. The gentle, slightly sad voice made the girl stop, a little embarrassed. She looked at the fried rice, which was already empty, with even the grains of rice at the edge of the lunchbox clean. The girl looked up, ashamed, and what met her eyes was the gentle smile of the young man in the setting sun. It was a very bright smile, even brighter than the hazy sun halo reflected in her tears at the moment. The young man was frail, his pants and shoes were shabby, and his handsome face had well-formed gentle lips. He also had several large shoe prints on him, obviously having been bullied. I'm a transfer student who just transferred to the school today. I saw someone take your lunch and eggs away from you at noon today, and I thought you would be hungry, so I saved my fried rice for you. The young man's words made the young girl slightly stunned, and tears fell from the corners of her eyes. It turned out that the young man hadn't eaten yet either. She lifted her chin and her eyes darted about, avoiding contact. That classmate, thank you really, your fried rice is delicious, but the portion is a bit small. As soon as the young girl finished speaking, she regretted it and lowered her head in embarrassment, wishing she could find a hole to crawl into. You didn't get enough to eat? It's okay, here, I'll give you back your egg. The young man took something round and plump out of his pocket and handed it to her. The girl stared wide-eyed at the egg, which was already broken into pieces. You were bullied at lunch, and I was so angry that I went up to them to argue, and we had a fight. Ha, there were too many of them, and I got beaten up, but I got your egg back. But don't worry, even though I was beaten up, those guys didn't feel good either, they all have bruises on their faces. The boy awkwardly handed the broken egg, which was almost flattened, to the girl, and scratched his head apologetically. Why did you? The girl could not hold back her tears, and gently stroked the warmth of the boy's fingertips that remained on the egg. The tears ran into her mouth, salty and sweet. But for some reason, perhaps because of the lingering fragrance of the fried rice or something else, the salty tears now gave her a strange, warm sweetness. Don't be afraid, they won't dare bully you again. I'll be there for you. The boy whispered, his experience reminding him of his former self. Everyone in his family had died, and since then he had been all alone, and had suffered a lot of bullying. The young man looked at the sobbing girl, at a loss for words, and didn't know how to comfort her. As the last rays of the setting sun faded away, what remained in the girl's eyes was the young man's gentle smile. Can you stay with me forever? I'm so scared, I'm really so scared. The girl burst into tears. The recent tragic events had left her on the verge of collapse. The young man really didn't know how to comfort someone. After holding back for a long time, he could only gently stroke the young girl's little head like he was petting a stray kitten. After a long while, he took a deep breath. Don't worry, I will always be with you, forever. The young girl's gaze was slightly startled, her lips curled up into a shy arc, and she nodded with a blush and a pounding heart. The young man's hand was very warm, really warm. She thought, if she could let the young man stay with her for the rest of her life and stroke her head every day, that would be great. Chapter 21. No way. No way. Zhang Hao took Xiao Yoxing's hand and walked into the restaurant that Su Ruoyan had booked. The restaurant was very quiet as there were very few people. Under the guidance of the waiter, he and Xiao Yoxing entered Su Ruoyan's private room. To the blues music, Su Ruoyan held a glass of champagne in her hand and looked lazily at Zhang Hao, her red lips curling up in a cruel and evil smile. She was wearing a black skirt that hugged her hips, her legs wrapped in black silk, and her little feet in red high heels dangling leisurely. Su Ruoyan flicked her red hair behind her ear and nibbled her index finger lightly. Gee, Zhang Hao, you've gotten even handsomer in the past 2 days. I really want to pin you down and bully you. She laughed wickedly a few times, and her laughter made Zhang Hao shudder. It wasn't until Xiao Yusheng, who was sitting next to Zhang Hao, gave her a cold glare that Su Ruoyan stopped smiling. Mr. Xiao, sit, don't be polite. A trace of unnoticeable ferocity flashed in Su Ruoyan's eyes, but she still smiled and greeted him. Xiao Yusheng didn't say a word, and with an expressionless face, he sat down with Jiang Hao. Speak quickly. Xiao Yusheng sipped the tea in his cup. Gee, President Xiao, you really have a lot of nerve. You really aren't afraid that I've drugged the tea? Su Ruoyan giggled. This is tea on high. I didn't bring any security, but countless pairs of eyes are watching the restaurant right now. If I make the slightest mistake, you'll be skinned alive. Xiao Yusheng said with a poker face. Su Ruoyan ground her teeth, then after a long while, she gave a small smile and sat directly next to Jiang Hao, who had been keeping quiet the whole time, and grabbed his hand. Jiang Hao, younger brother, sister, you're in the safe period these few days, so you can continue to do what you used to do with your sister. Jiang Hao almost spat out the tea he had just drunk, and looked at Su Ruoyan dumbfounded. Xiao Yusheng, on the other hand, had her eyebrows raised, and a killing intent that was hard to dispel flashed in her eyes as she looked at Su Ruoyan coldly. What are you talking such nonsense for? I have never had that kind of relationship with you, so don't talk nonsense. Jiang Hao said coldly. Jiang Hao, younger brother, how can you turn your back on people? Well, it was you who insisted on doing interesting things with your sister at the time, and now you're blaming your sister instead. You were so rough with your sister and didn't know how to use protection. Su Ruoyan said innocently. You. Jiang Hao was furious, and just as he was about to continue arguing, he noticed that President Zhao's cold gaze had already fallen on him. You must believe me, Yusheng, right? I have never had that kind of relationship with her. Jiang Hao raised his finger in an oath. Xiao Yusheng glanced at him indifferently. How could I possibly know what you did? Jiang Hao wanted to cry, but he had no tears. He felt like he couldn't wash himself clean even if he jumped into the Yellow River. However, he quickly calmed down, because it seemed that Xiao Yusheng didn't believe him at all. Sure enough, Xiao Yusheng took Jiang Hao's hand and said softly, my husband is so obedient, how could he mess around with this kind of woman? Besides, I'll know for sure when I go home tonight and check for myself. Jiang Hao suddenly felt weak in the legs and couldn't help but shiver. Su Ruoyan saw that her attempt to provoke a fight had failed, so she said with a smile, oh, President Xiao is looking very pretty today. Jiang Hao, my younger brother, do you think I look better or President Xiao looks better? What kind of bullshit question is this? Jiang Hao snorted, and then he saw Xiao Yusheng looking at him with an inexplicable expression. Yusheng, you're not interested in her silly questions, are you? He swallowed. Xiao Yusheng put down the cup in his hand and casually wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin. So, who is better looking? Jiang Hao depressedly lowered his head. This is still a question to ask. He was about to say that Xiao Yusheng was better looking when Su Ruoyan gave him a kick under the table, playfully raising the corners of her lips. Jiang Hao, my dear brother, there are some things you need to think about carefully before saying anything. How can you be sure that I don't have some little hold over you? Jiang Hao snorted, and firmly told Xiao Yusheng, Yusheng, this woman is simply not qualified to compete with you. Xiao Yusheng nodded with satisfaction, while Su Ruoyan's eyes flashed with cold light. Very good. She sneered, feeling that some special measures were needed. Soon after, Xiao Yusheng frowned. She felt her skirt being tugged. Looking down, she saw a little girl with a pigtail, about 3 years old, grabbing her skirt and saying in a baby voice, what a pretty big sister, I like it so much. Xiao Yusheng froze for a moment, before the sharpness in the corner of his eyes softened slightly. Whose child is this, and why is it here? Jiang Hao looked at the child and immediately smiled. It's Yuner, why are you here too? Come to your big brother. This child is the young daughter of one of Su Ruoyan's maids, and the maid was very kind to him, so Jiang Hao also felt very fond of the child. You know her? Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. Well, she is. Jiang Hao's words were not finished when Yuner ran up to him, grabbed his pant leg, and said in a baby voice, Daddy, Yuner misses you so much. Jiang Hao's smile instantly froze on his face. Xiao Yusheng was also at a loss for words, and before he could react, Su Ruoyan sighed softly, Mr. Xiao, yes, we have a child. Jiang Hao. Xiao Yusheng. After a long period of silence, a cold and angry question resounded in the box. Jiang Hao, give me an explanation. Xiao Yusheng's eyes surged with unspeakable gloom, and she squeezed Jiang Hao's hand hard. Explain? What explanation? Jiang Hao was still in a daze, looked at her, and then looked at Yuner, who was calling him dad, his eyes bulging to the point of popping out. Yusheng, just listen to my explanation, this child is not mine. Explain what? A 3-year-old kid can't even lie. I'm innocent, I've never had that kind of relationship with Su Ruoyan, so how could there be a child? Jiang Hao wanted to cry but had no tears, while Xiao Yusheng was close to going crazy, hysterically questioning him. Su Ruoyan gave a wicked smile, then pretended to be anxious and said, "Stop fighting, I'll explain." Jiang Hao and Xiao Yusheng immediately looked at her together. Jiang Hao let out a sigh of relief, feeling that he had finally been saved. If Su Ruoyan didn't explain today, he really would be finished today. Thinking about this, he looked at Su Ruoyan with relief, feeling that Su Ruoyan wasn't completely insane. I will explain to President Xiao now. This is my and Jiang Hao's eldest daughter, and we also have a young son. Oh, and I'm also carrying Jiang Hao's younger brother's baby in my belly. There's really nothing I can do about it, after all, it's Jiang Hao's younger brother who wants to have sex with me every day. Su Ruoyan became more and more pleased with herself as she spoke, and she directly grabbed Xiao Yusheng's hand, which had turned pale at the moment, and laughed. Oh, I forgot, Jiang Hao's younger brother doesn't like you, he only likes his big sister me, that's why he begs me every day to have sex with him and let him have a baby with me. No way, no way, no way, is there really someone who has gotten Jiang Hao's younger brother, but now doesn't even have a child? Chapter 22, Long Time No See. Jiang Hao looked at Su Ruoyan, who was smiling provocatively at Xiao Yusheng, and his eyes went black, almost making him faint. It's over, there's no way to clear my name now. He pointed angrily at his 4-year-old daughter Yun. I loved you so much before, and this is how you slander your big brother? Yun innocently stuck out her tongue. Daddy, what are you talking about? Let's go home, mommy really misses you. Jiang Hao almost fainted with anger, while Xiao Yusheng gave a cold snort, shook off Su Ruoyan's hand, and said to him, Don't worry, I've come to my senses and know they're talking nonsense. Jiang Hao let out a sigh of relief, but Xiao Yusheng then leaned silently close to his ear, her voice seductive and tingling. But after she said that, I really want a baby. My dear husband, you will fulfill my wish, won't you? Jiang Hao couldn't help but get goosebumps on his arms, and awkwardly waved his hands. Okay. What a good husband. Then I'll give you the chance to take the lead tonight. You can bully me all you want. Xiao Yusheng's indifferent smile made Jiang Hao subconsciously cover his kidneys, and he quickly took a sip of tea. Su Ruoyan's eyes flashed with cruelty. She knew that without some special means, she could not provoke a rift between Jiang Hao and Xiao Yusheng. Thinking about this, Su Ruoyan sneered. President Xiao, I have some interesting photos here. Do you want to see them? They are all handsome photos of Jiang Hao's younger brother. Su Ruoyan smiled and handed the phone to Xiao Yusheng. Jiang Hao suddenly felt something was wrong and his heart sank. Could it be those kind of photos? Yusheng, don't look, there's nothing to see. Jiang Hao anxiously dissuaded him. Xiao Yusheng glanced at him doubtfully, then took Su Ruoyan's phone and looked at the photos. He saw Jiang Hao in the photos lying on the bed, like a puppet, being pressed down by Su Ruoyan. As if she was doting on her pet, Su Ruoyan held Jiang Hao tightly while taking a selfie with her phone in her other hand, looking smug and pleased with herself. President Xiao, your boyfriend is really sweet. Whenever he sleeps, he talks in his sleep like a little baby in my arms. Oh dear, is he angry? No way. You haven't held Jiang Hao like this when he sleeps, have you? Let me tell you, what you're playing with now is all I've got left. Su Ruoyan giggled, while Xiao Yusheng's face was full of gloom. He took Jiang Hao's hand and gradually tightened his grip. Yusheng, I. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth, but before he could finish speaking, he was kissed tenderly by Xiao Yusheng. I do care, and I really want to kill the woman next to you. But I know that you were forced to do it. Remember what I said before. I couldn't get the first time you had, but the last time in this life, it will definitely be mine. So, I don't blame you. Xiao Yusheng's clear eyes were filled with murderous intent, but his tone of voice was so gentle. Jiang Hao was stunned, and his heart felt warm. Su Ruoyan, on the other hand, clenched her teeth, wondering why Xiao Yusheng could not be provoked in any way. She wanted Xiao Yusheng to dislike Jiang Hao and abandon him. But now, why was he getting even closer to Jiang Hao? On the other side, Jiang Hao watched Xiao Yusheng, who had already taken out his phone to contact the killer on WeChat, and gasped. Are you kidding? How can Su Ruoyan be killed? She is a member of the Su family. The old man in the Su family is an extremely fearsome bureaucrat in the imperial capital's officialdom. Yu Xian, listen to me. Don't be impulsive. Once you are impulsive, your entire Xiao group may be. Jiang Hao whispered in her ear. Then I will let the entire Su family go to the grave with the Xiao group. She deserves to die for bullying my man. Xiao Yuxing's eyes flashed with intensity, and her red lips were tinged with a crazed coldness. Xiao Yuxing could have security rush into the box with just a snap of her fingers. Yes, she normally didn't bring security, but whenever she went out, security and assassins would protect her in plainclothes nearby. Su Ruoyan still crossed her legs as if she didn't care that Xiao Yusheng was about to kill her. Xiao Yusheng was prepared, so why wouldn't she be? Seeing that today's dinner was about to turn into a bloodbath, Jiang Hao gritted his teeth and directly took away Xiao Yusheng's phone. How could he just stand by and watch Xiao Yusheng go down the road to destruction because of him? Jiang Hao, you. Xiao Yusheng frowned, just about to take the phone back, when Jiang Hao already kissed her red lips. Su Ruoyan's leisurely posture instantly vanished, and a trace of an uncontrollable, morbid gloom flashed in her eyes. How dare you, a lowly puppet, touch another woman in front of me? She bit her lips hard, almost bleeding, and stared fiercely at Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao, however, continued to kiss Xiao Yusheng, and only slowly released her after a long while. Xiao Yusheng was obviously confused by the sudden kiss. Her eyes were blank, and a light blush rippled across her cheeks. Be a good girl and listen to me, my dear. You can't kill her now. Don't put yourself in a disadvantageous position because of me. Jiang Hao whispered in her ear. Xiao Yusheng was momentarily stunned, and nodded. Is he really concerned about me? My husband is so handsome today. A rare, shy smile appeared at the corner of her lips, and the murderous intent in her eyes completely dissipated. Su Ruoyan was standing nearby, her clenched fist trembling slightly, and she muttered to herself with a sneer, Good, my good doll is waiting. She took a deep breath, stood up directly, and coldly said to Xiao Yusheng, Xiao Yusheng, give Jiang Hao back to me. Jiang Hao narrowed his eyes. Su Ruoyan had completely lost her temper. The last person who talked to me like that is already dead. Xiao Yusheng glanced at her indifferently. Do you really think I'm like those little shrimps you've been hanging out with? Su Ruoyan grinned cruelly and placed a small black square on the table. I know that you have security waiting to rush in at any time, and I also know that Tianhai is your territory. But I tell you, if you don't give me Jiang Hao back today, I would rather destroy you together with myself one day. Anyway, I have no meaning to live without the puppet that can play my younger brother Lin Hao. Ha 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 ha. Su Ruoyan's crazy and sickly grin made Jiang Hao gasp. This woman is truly a pure psychopath. Xiao Yusheng frowned, but didn't find her difficult to deal with. She didn't think Su Ruoyan would be willing to die with her. She just sensed something fishy based on her many years of experience. Su Ruoyan dying with her? What a joke. The only possibility was that Su Ruoyan had colluded with some forces in Tianhai, giving her the confidence to die with her. Su Ruoyan gave a morbid smile, grabbed Jiang Hao's arm directly, and said in a sickly voice, Jiang Hao, my dear brother, come with me. I know I was wrong. I won't have the thought of crippling you anymore. At most, I will imprison you forever in my basement and make you an obedient good boy. Jiang Hao felt a chill and pushed her away directly, impatiently saying, I've had enough of playing the trick of being Lin Hao. Lin Hao is already dead, so why do you keep thinking about him? After saying that, he walked up behind Xiao Yusheng and looked at Su Ruoyan coldly. Xiao Yusheng, give him back to me, he's my doll. Give him back to me. If you don't give him back today, after a while, I will definitely kill every last member of the Xiao family. Su Ruoyan screamed in a miserable voice, crying and laughing at the same time, completely insane. Xiao Yusheng snorted, and just as he was about to pull Jiang Hao away, a woman walked into the box. The woman was wearing a loose black hoodie, with the hood covering almost her entire face. The only thing visible was the woman's pale and delicate chin, and her plump cherry lips. The woman was very tall, and even though she was wearing flat shoes, she looked to be about 177 centimeters tall. Her slender legs were perfect, like those of a supermodel, and had a strong visual impact. She looked at Xiao Yusheng, her voice indifferent, so that it was impossible to tell whether she was happy or sad. Long time no see. Chapter 23 Lin Hao is not dead. Su Ruoyan, who was going crazy, froze, as did Jiang Hao, who was thinking about how to quickly resolve the crazy Su Ruoyan. Who is this woman? Xiao Yusheng, on the other hand, frowned and his face changed. Jiang Hao raised his eyebrows in surprise. After seeing this woman, Xiao Yusheng was actually on guard? Who could possibly make Xiao Yusheng, the #1 tycoon of Tianhai City, feel nervous? The mysterious woman glanced around, and her gaze fell on Jiang Hao. Are you the one? The woman put her hands in her pockets, her voice not loud, but with an unquestionable air of authority. This was the kind of oppressive aura that naturally exudes from someone who has been in power for a long time. And the tone of her voice didn't sound like she was talking to a person, as if she was treating Jiang Hao like a lifeless stone, a dispensable piece of trash. Who are you? Jiang Hao narrowed his eyes. He was about to take a step forward and question the woman when he was stopped by Xiao Yusheng. Jiang Hao, it's hard for me to explain something to you right now. Just know that this woman has always wanted to kill you. Moreover, her identity is far more terrifying than mine. Xiao Yusheng bit her lips tightly. Jiang Hao was extremely shocked. This woman's identity was so terrifying that it was suffocating. That, you first tell me who this woman is. Jiang Hao whispered in her ear. Your rival. Xiao Yusheng said indifferently, interlacing their fingers. Rival? She's not a man. Something's wrong. Wait. Holy shit, she's a lesbian? Jiang Hao's hair stood on end, and he took a few steps back. Xiao Yusheng nodded, regaining her usual composure, and asked the woman, What are you doing here? I just arrived in Tianhai today, and I heard you were here, so I came. Also, I want to kill the thing next to you. The woman said this while tucking back her platinum blonde hair that was showing under her hood. And also, I've never held your hand. She looked up at Jiang Hao and Xiao Yusheng, whose hands were tightly clasped, and her emerald eyes beneath the hood were so still that no emotion could be seen. Let's go. Xiao Yusheng snorted, and directly took Jiang Hao's hand and left the box. This woman won't do anything terrible, will she? Don't worry, not for now. That's good. Yusheng, does she really like you? Well, she was after me for a long time before, and it was with her help that I took over the Xiao family. Yusheng and Jiang Hao chatted quietly as they walked towards the door of the box. Jiang Hao pushed open the door of the box and subconsciously looked at the mysterious woman who was still standing next to the door. He looked at the woman's slender and delicate hands and widened his eyes in surprise. Upon closer inspection, the woman was even whiter than he had imagined, even whiter than Xiao Yusheng. It was the kind of white that was unique to the Slavic race, the kind of white that was white to the extreme. The cold, bone-chilling fragrance exuding naturally from the woman sent a chill down one's spine, as if it were the smell of the pure white snow in the northern wilderness in winter. Just as Jiang Hao was secretly making associations, the woman's cold voice made him shiver. You are not worthy of her. I will kill you as soon as possible and take her for myself. The woman's voice was calmly terrifying, and no joy or sadness could be heard in it, as if she were narrating something that was only natural. Jiang Hao's mouth twitched as he was about to pull Xiao Yusheng away, but Xiao Yusheng snorted. You are not the one to decide whether you are suitable for each other. I will say it again, I am not interested in you. He is the one who has always loved you. Xiao Yusheng said indifferently, then put his arm around Jiang Hao's shoulders and gave a small smile. Honey, let's go home now. Jiang Hao nodded with a smile, and once again mentally applied the famous accuse method of mental victory, despising the mysterious woman on a mental level and cursing her ancestors 18 generations back. Xiao Shang, I have a bottom line for my doting on you. I can help you raise the Xiao family, but I can also destroy it. The woman said calmly. Sorry, but in my eyes, my husband is more important than the Xiao family. Xiao Yusheng said expressionlessly. But at this moment, Jiang Hao was suddenly violently pulled by the mysterious woman's arm. Yusheng, let him talk to me alone for a while. I really want to know what kind of person you like. Don't worry, I won't kill him. For now. The woman said. Xiao. Yusheng took a deep breath, knowing the woman's character to be decisive. She also knew that since the woman had said so, even if she disagreed, the woman would force Jiang Hao to stay. The security guards outside were nothing in the face of this woman. She had seen how terrifying this woman was. Jiang Hao pondered for a moment, then smiled and said to Xiao Yusheng, You go home first, since your friend here wants to chat with me, let's chat. Xiao Yusheng took a deep breath and nodded. After Xiao Yusheng left, the woman didn't say a word to Jiang Hao, but walked up to Su Ruoyan, who had been watching the fun from the sidelines. What do you want? Su Ruoyan took a cautious step back. Although she didn't know who this woman was, she understood that someone who could make Xiao Yusheng so afraid must be a very scary person. I heard that you've always been obsessed with Lin Hao of the Lin family. I'm telling you now, Lin Hao is not dead. The woman took out an old, yellow document and handed it to Su Ruoyan. Jiang Hao, who had been eavesdropping at the door, was instantly shocked and clenched his fists. How was this possible? After narrowly escaping death that year, no one knew about his assumed name except for the elderly person who had helped him settle down, and that person had since died. Moreover, this secret should have been buried with him in the grave. An indescribable fear welled up in his heart. If his identity were to be revealed, all that awaited him would be the endless pursuit of the Su family. In the private room, Su Ruoyan snorted, "What a joke." But when she saw the document, she immediately froze. After a long while, a single tear rolled down her eye, her voice hoarse. "How am I supposed to believe you, and why are you telling me? This document was retrieved after your old man begged me for mercy. As for where Lin Hao is now and what identity he is living under, I don't know either," the woman said indifferently. Su Ruoyan suddenly fell to her knees, clutching the document tightly, her red lips curled up in a sick and crazy arc. "Lin Hao's younger brother, I'm so glad you're not dead. I'll definitely find you and be with you forever. Ha 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 ha." She laughed maniacally, her eyes wide and bloodshot. Then, she looked coldly at Jiang Hao, who was nervously watching from the door. Jiang Hao let out a sigh of relief, and was even a little happy. Because even the mysterious woman didn't know that he was Lin Hao. Even if Su Ruoyan wanted to investigate where Lin Hao was and in what capacity he was living, she would never investigate him, because it would be extremely difficult. And if that was the case, Su Ruoyan would definitely let him go if she knew that Lin Hao was still alive. Just as he was thinking, Su Ruoyan pointed at him and sneered, "Since my Lin Hao brother is still alive, then you, this puppet who plays my Lin Hao brother, have also lost the meaning of living. I will completely destroy you, this trash with no use value." Jiang Hao snorted upon hearing this. "Destroy yourself? I am now protected by Sha Yusheng, so how can you destroy me?" At this time, the mysterious woman walked over to Jiang Hao and said indifferently, "Follow me." Chapter 24, Leave Her Alone. Jiang Hao followed the mysterious woman all the way to the nearby rooftop. The woman never took off her hood, and only a few strands of platinum white hair peeked out from it. She leaned against the fence and calmly gazed at the scenery below the rooftop. Jiang Hao stood silently at the top of the stairs, ready to escape at any time in case of an emergency. After a long silence, the woman spoke. "How much?" Without turning around or looking at Jiang Hao, she said these words indifferently. "What do you mean by how much? What do you mean?" Jiang Hao asked, puzzled. "How much can make you leave her alone? Name your price," the woman said indifferently. Jiang Hao snorted, not interested. The woman turned around and slowly paced to Jiang Hao. At the same time, she held a check in her hand, which she had added without knowing when. 100 million, is that enough?" She slammed the check in Jiang Hao's face. "Miss, you're being rude." Jiang Hao looked up coldly. "Not enough? Then 200 million. 300 million. Check after check was thrown at Jiang Hao, who just looked at the woman, unmoved. The woman lowered her cap, and her voice finally took on some emotional fluctuations, with an added coldness that seemed to freeze the air. "Add this, and I'll give you another 10 billion to leave her alone." Jiang Hao still looked at the woman unmoved, and after a long while, he gave a small smile. "You should be very jealous of me, right? You are jealous of me and want to kill me, but for some reason, you can't do it. I can hold Shenger's hand whenever I want, but you can't. I can kiss Shenger whenever I want, but you can't. Shenger and I love each other, and she has confessed her love to me many times since high school, but what about you? She doesn't even look at you. You are acting like this, ridiculously and shamelessly insulting me, just to cover up your jealousy." Jiang Hao smiled gently, his anger reaching its peak. "Damn it, I haven't provoked you or offended you, and you just threw money in my face. What do you mean? But since we've almost come to blows, I might as well provoke this woman a little more, and get back at her." What's more, Jiang Hao was certain that the woman would not kill him. If she wanted to kill him, she would have done it already, and there would be no need for negotiations. In that case, it would be enough to confront the woman fiercely. After all, the feud had been started from the beginning. The woman listened to Jiang Hao's words without the slightest reaction, still unable to tell whether she was happy or sad, and replied in a way that did not address the question. "So, you will not take the initiative to leave her side?" Jiang Hao narrowed his eyes, feeling that this woman really had some skills. Even though he was in such a state, the woman still could not tell that he was angry. It seems that a harsh move is needed. Upon thinking of this, Jiang Hao smiled slightly. "Miss, you like Shenger so much, you should know her very well, right? Can you guess what Shenger was doing last night?" The woman said quietly. "She was probably reading a book." "Wrong, dead wrong. Last night, Shanger was being coquettish in my arms, and was actively asking me to do something with her. Miss, do you know what that something is? It's man and woman loving each other and creating love. Shanger is really great. We had a blast last night. You can't even imagine how crazy Shanger was in my arms. Jiang Hao laughed, but before he could finish, he let out a muffled grunt and fell to the ground. He lay on the ground, painfully feeling his injured elbow. When he opened his eyes again, he froze. The woman was leaning over him, one hand holding a steel blade against his neck, the other hand supporting herself on the ground. But that didn't matter, what mattered was the woman's appearance. Jiang Hao looked blankly at the woman's face, thinking for a long time, and using countless adjectives in his heart, he was afraid to easily embellish the woman's peerless beauty with words. Her green eyes were quiet and dreamy, as if they were the pupils of an elf that could only be seen in games. Her features were deep, clearly of Slavic descent, but she still had the kind of elegance and softness of an Eastern woman. The pale, unreal, delicate cheeks and the slightly parted, glossy lips made Jiang Hao involuntarily think of the strawberry mousse he had eaten at the high-end restaurant last time. He suspected that the woman must be a mixed race, otherwise a face with both Eastern and Western beauty could not possibly exist in reality. Jiang Hao, feeling a little uncomfortable, flicked the white and blonde hair that was floating in front of his face. Without saying anything, he was simply overwhelmed by the woman's beauty. The woman's frigid fragrance made him gasp slightly, and he could only whisper, "What, are you finally angry?" Although the woman still had an expressionless face, and her eyebrows and eyes did not show any fluctuations in emotion, he could feel the murderous intent of the tip of the knife against his neck. "I wouldn't even dare to touch her hand." "How dare you?" The woman's voice remained calm, but her fingers slowly tightened. Jiang Hao felt a tingling pain in his neck, and he knew that the tip of the knife had slightly pierced the skin. He felt the fear of death, but sneered and said playfully, "I've done everything you can imagine, and I've had all of Shanger's first times, so what? Are you finally getting angry?" Jiang Hao was still certain that the woman would not kill him. Otherwise, the tip of the knife would have pierced his throat long ago. The woman's calm, turquoise eyes remained still, but without warning, she raised the knife. Then, she stabbed at Jiang Hao's face with all her might. Shit, did I bet on the wrong horse? Jiang Hao let out a wail in his heart, and subconsciously closed his eyes. He even thought of what his last words would be. But after a long time, he did not feel the pain of death. He opened his eyes blankly and saw that the tip of the knife had stopped a centimeter in front of his nose. The woman looked up indifferently, casually put away the knife, and got up to leave the roof. Jiang Haosan let out a sigh of relief, and his whole body felt as if he had fainted. He lay on the ground like a rag doll. Why are all the women I know crazy? He shook his head bitterly, and after confirming that the woman had left the roof, he walked towards the stairwell. In the shadows where he couldn't be seen, Ruoyan peeked out silently, smiling strangely. Lin Hao's younger brother is alive, so you, trash that has lost its value, should be disposed of as well. I'm thinking, should I find Lin Hao's younger brother first, or destroy you, this worthless puppet, first? Ruoyan's lips curled cruelly. Brothers who don't like lesbians can rest assured and look behind you, because this lesbian is not meant to compete with Jiang Hao, but to be slowly conquered by Jiang Hao behind her. I hope you understand what I mean. It's a popular and enjoyable plot of a lesbian breaking up. Chapter 25, I Want a Baby. In Zhao's manor, Jiang Hao and Xiao Yusheng sat face to face on the terrace. Jiang Hao put down the black tea in his hand and asked Xiao Yusheng, "Yusheng, just who is that woman?" Xiao Yusheng shook his head and said, "You only need to know that her background is extremely significant. It's not good for you to know too much about the rest." "What about her name? You can at least tell me her name, can't you?" Jiang Hao said helplessly. "Her surname is Ji, and she comes from the oldest family. Her mother is the eldest daughter of the richest man in the country, so she is a mixed-race person." Xiao Yusheng hesitated for a long time before revealing the woman's surname and origin. Other specific details, and even the name, were not told to Jiang Hao. This was also unavoidable. She was really afraid that Jiang Hao would know too much and attract disaster. Seeing that Xiao Yusheng was unwilling to disclose too much, Jiang Hao had to give up, and he ate the dessert on the table distractedly. He felt really trapped here with Xiao Yusheng. Even if she could let him go, he wouldn't dare to. Whether it was Ruoyan or that mysterious woman surnamed Ji, they could take his life in a minute. "You went to see my childhood nanny yesterday. What did you think of her? I mean, what was her attitude towards me?" Xiao Yusheng pinched the hem of her skirt, her eyes avoiding his from time to time. "What was Hang's attitude towards you?" It was quite good. I heard that after you caught a cold, you drank medicated wine and got drunk. You laughed very lovingly, just like a mother being kind to her daughter. Jiang Hao said with a smile. As soon as Xiao Yusheng heard the word mother, she immediately lowered her head and bit her lips tightly. Doesn't she resent me for treating her that way? Xiao Yusheng muttered to herself. What's wrong? Jiang Hao asked curiously, looking at Xiao Yusheng, who was very downcast. Xiao Yusheng took a deep breath, her voice even a little shaky. Jiang Hao grabbed her hand and sat down next to her, gently reassuring her. Why are you looking so sad when you're fine? Xiao Yusheng shook her head, and after a long while, took a deep breath. In the future, go visit Hang Junshuang every day. Don't say that I told you to go, just say that you snuck over there. For now, don't reveal our relationship in front of her, but you can tentatively tell her that I have a boyfriend and see how she reacts. Xiao Yusheng whispered a few words of advice, and Jiang Hao nodded and was about to leave. Don't stay at her place too long, it's going to get dark soon, so remember to come back as soon as possible. She tugged at the corner of Jiang Hao's shirt, her usual cold expression returning. It's only 6 o'clock, there's no rush. Jiang Hao said disapprovingly. Anyway, hurry up. It'd be best if it was over in half an hour. Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. Jiang Hao's short temper flared up all of a sudden. Frowning, he sighed, you told me to spend more time with her, and then you told me to finish in half an hour. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Yusheng looked at him coldly. Jiang Hao coughed. Okay, I'll be quick, I promise. The next moment, he was dragged directly to a chair, and then Xiao Yusheng roughly pinned him down. Honey, was I too gentle with you today? Why are you so fond of arguing today? Xiao Yusheng whispered in his ear, kissing him unbridled. Are you okay? Jiang Hao snickered. Honey, do you know what adjective you remind me of in your current state? Xiao Yusheng asked softly, cupping his chin with his hand as he lightly pursed his lips. I have no idea what adjective it is. Jiang Hao ground his teeth in indignation. I don't know, then I'll tell you. You are. Xiao Yusheng bit his ear, and his voice was so soft that it made Jiang Hao's skin crawl. What a jerk. Jiang Hao swallowed. Honey, I know I was wrong, I'll go see Hang and V now, I promise I'll be quick. You know you were wrong? It's a bit late, my dear husband. As a couple, you shouldn't refuse to let your wife play with you for a while. Ha! Xiao Yusheng's phoenix eyes rippled with unspeakable possessiveness as he gently undid Jiang Hao's buttons. Yusheng, you. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth, but before he could say anything, his lips were pressed against by Xiao Yusheng's index finger. Shu, there are a lot of servants around here. You don't want other people to hear your cute voice when I'm playing with you, do you? Xiao Yusheng's red lips curled up into a smile, and in Jiang Hao's ear, she said, word for word, my mixed-up husband. Jiang Hao nodded with tears in his eyes, suddenly thinking of something, his eyes shining. Then, he directly took out his phone and displayed a video in front of Xiao Yusheng. This was of course the video of Xiao Yusheng acting crazy after getting drunk yesterday. Watch carefully, we have 3 rules. The Honorable President Xiao will not go back on his word, right? Jiang Hao snorted, instantly gaining confidence. Xiao Yusheng, on the other hand, stared at the video, his face growing more and more gloomy. Haha, what's the matter? You can't threaten me, you can't restrict my freedom, and most importantly, you can't do this again before we get married next month. Jiang Hao laughed triumphantly, but after a moment, he looked at Xiao Yusheng's murderous gaze and suddenly wilted. Well, I didn't mean to film you when you were drunk. He looked at Xiao Yusheng's beautiful but cold and sinister eyes, and the more he said, the more he lost his confidence. After a long time, Xiao Yusheng smiled faintly. My husband is so cute. You look like a little baby who has done something wrong. But the cuter you are, the more I want to violate you. Xiao Yusheng reluctantly played with Jiang Hao's Adam's apple, and after a moment, his voice turned cold. Okay, I can promise you 3 agreements, but what you promised me today should also be fulfilled. What did I promise you? Jiang Hao was dumbfounded. Have you forgotten? You said you would let me get pregnant. Trying to deny it? Xiao Yusheng's lips curled into a cruel smile, and he said, tearing open Jiang Hao's clothes. It's even. I won't mention any promises. Jiang Hao wanted to cry but had no tears. How could he be a father at his age? What a good husband you are. In the future, you have to be as good as this, okay? Otherwise, if I'm not careful. Xiao Yoxing's green index finger traced across Jiang Hao's chest, a sinister look in his eyes. If I'm not careful, I'll ruin my husband. Now, go see Hang Junchuang. Jiang Hao nodded repeatedly and fled from the terrace. After Jiang Hao left, Xiao Yusheng recalled the video of himself getting drunk and bit his lower lip hard. How could I let him see me like that so easily? No, I can't let him see me weak anymore. In the future, I must never touch alcohol again. I must be more fierce with him, so that he fears me. Otherwise, if he runs away. Xiao Yusheng grabbed the hem of her skirt in panic, and after a long while, like a child who had done something wrong, she lowered her head and muttered to herself, I will never let you run away from me again, never. I really don't want to be alone anymore. A line of clear tears slowly fell from her cheek. A sickly curve bloomed from the corner of her lips. Chapter 26, What should I reward you with? Jiang Hao carried a basket of just the right number of blooming roses and walked into Hang Junchuang's secluded garden. It wasn't completely dark yet, and the few stars in the sky were a little forlorn, hanging alone by the crescent moon that hadn't yet fully formed. The garden was very dark, there were no street lamps, and it was eerily quiet. In the distance, one could only hear the restless chirping of small insects in the grass. How come there's not even a light? It's pitch black. Can Hang see at night? Jiang Hao complained, turned on the flashlight on his phone, and almost completely by memory, found the roses rustling in the breeze in the darkness, and the lonely stone table. Upon closer inspection, he saw that in the moonlight, Hang Junchuang was sitting alone by the stone table, occasionally placing the black and white chess pieces on the board in front of her. Jiang Hao coughed and walked over to her. Hang Junchuang looked up, propped her chin in her hands, and looked at Jiang Hao gently. You finally came, young friend. Jiang Hao was taken aback, sat down in front of her, and tentatively asked, Hang Jia, you didn't wait for me for a long time, did you? Not long. Just one day. Hang Junchuang said softly, and handed him a cup of tea that had already cooled. Ah? One day? The whole day? Jiang Hao exclaimed in shock. Well, don't feel bad about it. Even if I wasn't waiting for you, I spend most of the day sitting here anyway. Hang Junchuang nodded, then lit the candle on the stone table. Jiang Hao couldn't sit still anymore, and apologetically said to Hang Junchuang, Hang Jia, I'm really sorry. You know, I'm a servant, and there's so much work to do every day, and I just found the opportunity to come to you. It's nothing. Hang Junchuang shook her head. When she saw the roses in Jiang Hao's basket, a surprised smile suddenly appeared on her face. You really brought roses? She couldn't wait to pick up a rose, hold it between her nose, and inhale it lightly in ecstasy. Under the candlelight, Hang Junchuang's pale side face was tinged with an orange glow, making it look somewhat dreamlike. As she inhaled the aroma of the rose, the white ravines rising and falling with each breath made Jiang Hao feel a little embarrassed and look away. What are you thinking, little friend? Hang Junchuang opened her eyes and looked at the somewhat blushing Jiang Hao, unable to help but smile lazily. Cough cough, nothing. Jiang Hao waved his hand and was about to leave after a few polite words with Hang Junchuang when she suddenly got up and gently touched his face. The soft, delicate, cool fingers made Jiang Hao's face turn red in an instant. Hang Jia, I'm a decent person. Jiang Hao stood up angrily, but then felt rude and apologized profusely after a moment. Hang Junchuang was momentarily stunned, then shook her head and giggled, teasingly extending her hand towards him. You little rascal, what are you thinking about every day? Here, a little bug just flew onto your face. Hang Junchuang gave him a reproachful look, then let the little flying insect in her hand go. Jiang Hao let out a relieved sigh and smiled apologetically. Well, Hang Jia, I have a thin skin, so please bear with me. Why do you blush so easily? If someone didn't know better, they might think I was flirting with you. But the way you blush. Hang Junchuang put her hand on her chin and smiled slightly. It's quite cute. Jiang Hao blushed again, feeling extremely sad and indignant. Every day you point that big thunder at me, it's weird if I don't blush. Little friend, you're still at school, right? Are there a lot of little girls chasing you at school? Hang Junchuang teased. I've already graduated, not to mention, do I look young? Jiang Hao said indignantly. Well, you are indeed very young, like an underage boy. Hang Junchuang laughed lightly and refilled his cup, which he had already drunk. Hang Jia, you are really. Jiang Hao let out a bitter laugh. Before he could finish speaking, a cold finger with a hint of tea fragrance was gently placed on his lips. Okay, don't keep calling me you. Hang Jia doesn't sound good either. Let me see. I'll just call you Hang Jia, it sounds more intimate. Hang Junchuang smiled sweetly and gently wiped the tea stain from Jiang Hao's lips. Okay, Hang Jiejie, can you stop molesting me in the future? Jiang Hao said with tears in his eyes, subconsciously trying to block Hang Junchuang's hand. But as soon as he extended his hand, Hang Junchuang lightly frowned and grabbed it. Little brother, why are you hurt? She grabbed Jiang Hao's hand and pointed at the bruise on his hand. It's nothing, I just fell. Jiang Hao replied casually, really not wanting to mention the mysterious woman he met today. Isn't this injury the result of the woman accidentally brushing against him when she pushed him to the ground? Little brother, when facing an older sister, don't lie so easily. I've seen more of the world than you have. Did you get into a fight with someone? I can see the dust on your pants and the worn sleeve. Hang Junchuang raised her eyebrows and pretended to scold by tapping Jiang Hao's forehead. Without thinking, Jiang Hao replied perfunctorily, well, when I was helping Hang's sister pick roses today, I was caught by the other servants and beaten up. He was just making up a wild story, such as saying that he had beaten up 10 servants by himself. Before he could finish speaking, Hang Junchuang patted his head tenderly. Jiang Haowei was stunned, and then his heart was filled with rage. This was pure humiliation. It was only his turn to stroke someone's head, but why was it Hang Junchuang stroking his head today? You have to know that yesterday, my buddy was still stroking the head of President Xiao, the #1 tycoon in Tianhai. Don't do this kind of stupid thing for your sister next time. Your sister is very happy that you came. Hang Junchuang said tenderly, her eyes brimming with inexplicable emotions. Unexpectedly, she was all alone, under house arrest, and the only person who cared about her was a young manservant. Her family had been destroyed, she had been left alone for the rest of her life, and she wondered how long it had been since she had not been cared for. There was no benefit involved, no gain to be had, and yet she had simply taken the risk of sending him flowers, and for that she had been beaten up for no reason. He was just a young man in his early 20s, but he had suffered as a manservant just as much as she had, if not more. Thinking about this, she couldn't help but purse her red lips and grab Jiang Hao's hand, bringing it to her lips. Hang Jiushuang, what are you doing? Jiang Hao asked, puzzled. Hang Jiushuang didn't say anything, just gently blowing on the wound. The cool, moist breath made Jiang Hao feel like his scalp was itchy, like ants were crawling on it. Does it still hurt? I'll go get some aloe vera gel for you. Hang Jiushuang looked at Jiang Hao tenderly. It's nothing, it's just a small cut. Jiang Hao muttered, not noticing that his hand was actually scraped. Let me see. You were a very brave little boy today. The rose you gave me was also very much appreciated. What should I reward you with? Hang Junchuang pondered, rubbing her chin. Hang, you're like a sister to me, right? Can you stop calling me a little boy? I'm 22, it's embarrassing. Jiang Hao shook his head helplessly. That's not going to work. A child is a child. What should I reward you with? Hang Junchuang pondered for a long time, then looked up, her red lips curling into a warm smile. Then she stood up and leaned towards Jiang Hao's face. And gave him a light kiss that landed softly on his forehead. Is it okay to reward an older sister like this with a kiss? Chapter 27, Am I looking forward to it? Thanks to the wonderful boss for sending a 500-piece gift to this new book. I haven't seen the boss for a long time and really miss him. To repay the boss, I'm going to post more today. Under the moonlight, the mature woman in front of him made Jiang Hao look a little dazed. Whether it was the perfect and plump figure under the moon-colored cheongsam, or the seductive red lips, or the naturally charming, narrow, fox-like eyes. For a young man like Jiang Hao, the effect was devastating. After a long while, Jiang Hao gave a wry smile and said, Hang sister, don't kiss me on the forehead like that, I can't stand it. Hang Junchuang was very experienced, and as soon as she saw Jiang Hao blushing and pounding his heart, she knew what was going on. After a brief moment of surprise, she covered her mouth and giggled. Oh dear, you're killing me. Kids these days, with all those dirty thoughts going through their heads. Hang Junchuang was laughing so hard she was shaking, feeling like she'd never had such a funny moment in her life. Okay, Hang, you can laugh, I'm leaving. Jiang Hao was getting annoyed, and stood up to leave. Angry? I was wrong, I didn't think it would just be a peck on the forehead and ha ha ha. Hang Junchuang grabbed Jiang Hao's arm with a smile. Suddenly, an inopportune gurgling sound came from her lower abdomen. Hang Junchuang looked slightly embarrassed at Jiang Hao and smiled. Sister has been sitting here by the stone table all day, and she hasn't eaten yet, so she's a little hungry. Jiang Hao nodded with some shame. After all, Hang Junchuang had been sitting here all day waiting for him. So, he smiled slightly and said, "Hang's sister, go eat then, I'll go first." "No, go with your sister, just think of it as a late supper." Hang Junchuang gestured for Jiang Hao to follow her. Jiang Hao had wanted to refuse, but when he thought of Xiao Yoxing's request to him, he had no choice but to agree. He had yet to test Hang Junchuang's reaction to Xiao Yoxing's love. Under the moonlight, on the garden path, a woman and a man, walking one in front of the other, in the night breeze, among the flowers. Hang Junchuang tugged at the vertical hem of her cheongsam, her red lips trembling slightly with cold. "This side is by the sea, and the evening sea breeze is very cool. Little brother, let's walk faster." Jiang Hao nodded, then habitually took off his jacket and draped it over her. Hang Junchuang was slightly startled, gently stroked Jiang Hao's jacket, and the corner of her lips rose into an inexplicable arc. The warm feeling was very comfortable, and the lingering youthful smell of the jacket was also very refreshing. "I never thought that little brother was such a considerate person. And the smell is very nice." She turned her head and smiled. "Little brother, your jacket is very warm, thank you." "I'm glad you like it." Jiang Hao replied absent-mindedly, thinking about how to test Hang Junchuang's words right away. After a while, Jiang Hao followed her into a villa. The outside of the villa looked obviously magnificent, but the inside was empty. There were not many furnishings, and even the decor was minimalist in black and white. The only thing that showed some signs of life was the various green plants by the floor-to-ceiling windows. "What would you like to eat?" "My sister has asked the servants to bring it over. It may take a while, after all, the cook has to prepare it." Hang Junchuang patted the sofa, indicating that Jiang Hao should sit next to her. Jiang Hao hurriedly waved his hand after sitting down. "Hang's sister, there is no need to have the servants bring it over, I will make the midnight snack." "Just kidding. If it takes a long time, Xiao Yoxing's place will blow up." The whole point of coming over for dinner was to get closer to Hang Junchuang and test the waters. It's not worth wasting time over a big meal. "Little brother, you can cook? Come, I'll show you the kitchen." Hang Junchuang's eyes lit up, and she led Jiang Hao to the kitchen. Jiang Hao opened the kitchen fridge and looked at the empty freezer inside, with a wry smile. "This sister really doesn't cook. Oops, I forgot to mention that I rarely cook myself, so there are almost no usable ingredients at home." Hang Junchuang pointed a little embarrassed at some eggs that had been sitting there for who knows how long, and yesterday's leftover rice in the fridge. "Well, that's all there is." "Oh." Jiang Hao ran his hand along his chin, and after a moment he grinned. "These will be enough." After saying that, he immediately began the preparations. The eggs were broken, and the egg whites and yolks were mixed well. After the chopped green onion is fried, the eggs are added to the pan while still half-cooked, and the rice is added immediately. Next, the condiments are added. Hang Junchuang looks at Jiang Hao, who is holding the pan with great seriousness and extremely nimble movements, and her eyes twinkle with an inexplicable emotion. She is used to being simple and unadorned, and she doesn't really like the kitchen's bustling atmosphere. The slightly cool sea breeze outside the window continues to blow on her. But for some reason, whether it's because Jiang Hao is cooking and the temperature has risen, or something else, Hang Junchuang suddenly felt that she was warm, both physically and spiritually. The originally empty villa was no longer lonely. All she could see was the young man in the kitchen, stirring the pot with all his might. She considered herself a quiet person, and usually found even the slightest noise distracting. The sound of the young man cooking was loud, but she found it so comforting. She really didn't expect that there was such a cute and young little brother in the world, who would simply cook for her just because she was hungry. Just as Hang Junchuang was daydreaming, Jiang Hao had already placed 2 plates of fried rice on the table. "Hang, it's ready, come and eat." Jiang Hao greeted her warmly. Hang Junchuang took a spoonful of the golden and silver fried rice and tasted it. The next moment, her eyes widened in amazement and she was speechless. "Hey, what do you think?" Jiang Hao was quite confident in his fried rice skills. Because in high school, he stole the heart of a certain young girl with his fried rice. Of course, he didn't think Hang Junchuang would think his fried rice was that good, so he was just asking politely. "It's delicious." Hang Junchuang nodded vigorously, picked up the spoon, and took a big bite of the fried rice. Jiang Hao looked at the woman in front of him in surprise. Even though Hang Junchuang was trying hard to eat, her manner and posture were so elegant. Presumably, Hang Junchuang should be the kind of rich lady who was brought up from an early age to cultivate good manners. In no time at all, the fried rice on the plates of the two was consumed like wind-whipped leaves. "Little brother, thank you so much." I've never had such a good meal. You can cook and you're so gentle and considerate. And you're cute too. Hang Junchuang rested her hand on her rosy cheeks and a smile curled the corners of her lips. I'm sure there are lots of girls who like you. Jiang Hao shrugged his shoulders. A lot of girls like me? A lot of girls would rather kill me. Hang Junchuang burst out laughing and felt a strange feeling in her heart. Why did she feel a little happy when she heard this little brother say that no one liked him? By the way, do you want to stay a little longer? I can play the guqin for you. Hang Junchuang hadn't finished speaking when Jiang Hao gave a bitter laugh. Hang sister, that's not going to work tonight. I have to go on duty right away because the young lady is in love. Now she's on a date with her boyfriend, and we servants have to be on standby to serve her at any time. Hang Junchuang was stunned. After a long while, she asked in shock, Xiao Shang is in love? Are you sure? Well, I'm 100% sure. They're getting married next month. Jiang Hao touched his nose. Hang Junchuang was lost in thought for a long time, shaking her head and smiling lightly. That's great, I thought that girl was going to die alone. Jiang Hao observed her reaction carefully, then stood up. Hang Jianshang, I'll go after I wash the dishes. Oh, I don't know if anyone noticed that I snuck out. You're leaving now? If you could just stay a little longer. Hang Junchuang lowered her head slightly in disappointment, then waved her hand after a moment. It's fine, little brother, you go. 10 minutes later, Hang Junchuang stood alone on the balcony of the second-floor bedroom, staring disconsolately at Jiang Hao's receding back. She was left alone again. She didn't know what came over her, but she pinched the corner of her shirt and shouted towards Jiang Hao's back, Little brother, will you come again tomorrow? By the way, I still don't know your name. Jiang Hao turned around and smiled. My name is Jia Ming. Hang, don't worry, I skipped school and work, I'll sneak out again and come to play with you. Of course, he couldn't tell Hang Junchuang his real name. Otherwise, if Hang Junchuang knew that Xiao Yoshing's boyfriend was himself, and all those lies he had told before, wouldn't he be finished? Upon hearing this, Hang Junchuang's heart, which had been calm for a long time, was suddenly stirred as if a stone had been thrown in. Back in the bedroom, she opened the closet and filled the dresser, which she hadn't used for years, with cosmetics. Hang Junchuang looked at the beautiful clothes she hadn't touched in years and the cosmetics she hadn't used for a long time and smiled. I never thought that I would think about dressing up and putting on makeup tomorrow for a little brother. Really, am I looking forward to him coming tomorrow? Chapter 28, The Bad Husband. Not long after Jiang Hao left Hang Junchuang's place, Xiao Yusheng received a call from Hang Junchuang. Mom, you're finally willing to talk to me on the phone? You know, I didn't mean to put you under house arrest, I just... Xiao Yusheng stammered. Xiao Shang, I'm cultivating myself and being happy now, you don't need to blame yourself. For what I did back then, I'm very happy to be under house arrest. Also, congratulations, you've finally found someone you like. Hang Junchuang said gently. Xiao Yusheng heard this and tears flowed down his face. Mom, thank you for your blessings. Although we are not related by blood, in my heart, you will always be my real mom. Xiao Yusheng, I figured it out these past few days. People need to look forward, there's no point living in the past. Besides, I kind of like that servant girl Jia Ming. It's a kind of special feeling that I can't put into words. After Hang Junchuang finished speaking, Xiao Yusheng looked confusedly at a maid cleaning the house in the distance. That maid, Jia Ming, was responsible for delivering Hang Junchuang's meals every day. Wait, a special feeling? Isn't that the same as liking someone? My stepmother is actually a lesbian? She likes a little maid? Xiao Yusheng was shocked, and Hang Junchuang laughed lightly. Never mind, maybe I'm getting old. In a few years, I'll be 40, and I actually have a crush on that little maid. Maybe it's just because I'm used to being lonely, or maybe, yes, it's just my imagination. Xiao Yusheng hurriedly said, Mom, don't worry, as long as you like it, I'll set you up. You know, because I haven't cleaned up the old people in the Xiao family yet, so I can't let you go out for the time being, and I can't go see you either. It's okay, Xiao Yusheng, I'm already very happy that you can still call me Mom. Go to bed early, Mom is hanging up. As the phone hung up, Xiao Yusheng walked over to the maid named Jia Ming. She said lightly, You've been doing a good job lately. You've been delivering my stepmother's meals on time, so you'll get a pay rise. Jia Ming was taken aback, and then bowed happily. Thank you, miss. By the way, spend a little more time with my stepmother every day. She likes desserts, so deliver some to her tomorrow. After Xiao Yusheng had finished speaking, she turned and left. Jia Ming, on the other hand, muttered to herself, "Ugh, I don't want to spend time with that old woman under house arrest. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Maybe I can get someone else to deliver it for me." Jiang Hao returned to his bedroom after taking a shower and curiously asked a maid, "Does your mistress sleep now?" "Yes, she always goes to bed early and wakes up early." The maid replied respectfully. "Okay, then you can go, I'm going to sleep too." Jiang Hao yawned, and the maid sensibly left. He changed into his pajamas, walked to the door, and went to lock it. This was an old habit. After experiencing the destruction of his family when he was young, he has never felt safe. But at this moment, he was surprised to find that the door lock seemed to have been damaged and could not be locked no matter how hard he tried. Strange. Never mind, if it can't be locked, just go to sleep. Jiang Hao lay on the bed, turned off the light, and closed his eyes. The bed was very solid, and he was so relaxed that he wouldn't even have nightmares about Su Ruoyan. I don't know how long it was, half asleep and half awake, Jiang Hao seemed to vaguely hear his bedroom door creak open. Jiang Hao thought dazedly, it must have been an illusion. After a while, he felt as if his quilt had been lifted. Jiang Hao still didn't care, and just thought it was him kicking it. But a moment later, he suddenly felt that something extremely slippery and soft had burrowed into his arms. This is really strange, am I dreaming? Then, some kind of soft little thing covered his mouth. "Honey, kiss." The soft murmur instantly woke Jiang Hao, and he looked sharply at the object next to him. In the moonlight, he saw Xiao Yusheng wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him hungrily. Sad. President Xiao attacked him at night. Jiang Hao felt 1,000 regrets. He finally knew why his door couldn't be locked. "Hubby, you've finally woken up. Do you remember what you promised me before?" Xiao Yoshing's red lips curled up into a sickly arc, and then he directly pinned Jiang Hao under him. "Let's talk about anything tomorrow, can you let me sleep first?" Jiang Hao's sleepy eyes widened, and he gave a bitter smile. "Do you want to go back on your word? What a husband who doesn't keep his promises. Since you've forgotten, then I'll remind you." Xiao Yusheng leaned close to Jiang Hao's ear and said coldly, word by word, "Honey, I want a baby." Chapter 29, Good Night. Jiang Hao's expression froze, and he quickly said, "Yusheng, of course I want to have a baby with you, but, can we wait until after we get married?" Before he could finish speaking, Xiao Yusheng snorted, and with both hands, he pressed his arms against the pillow. A husband who keeps his promises is a good husband. A good husband gets a reward. A husband who doesn't keep his promises is naturally a useless husband. And useless husbands. Xiao Yusheng raised the corners of his lips in a morbidly cold manner and whispered in Jiang Hao's ear, "There will be unimaginably terrible punishments." Jiang Hao nodded with tears in his eyes, not knowing what to say. This is called having a perverted wife, and even the wolfberries have to be sent? Do you want to be a good husband or a useless husband? Xiao Yoshing's gaze turned cold, and he raised his voice in a cold manner, "Tell me." At that moment, Comrade Jiang Hao really wanted to yell at Xiao Yusheng, "I don't want to be anything, I just want to be your damn father." But he also knew what would happen if he said that. What should he do? After a moment, Jiang Hao came up with a plan and gave a small smile. He took the initiative and grabbed Xiao Yoshing's arm, towering over him. In the darkness, illuminated only by the moonlight, Xiao Yoshing's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "If it were normal, my husband would take the lead like this, and I would let him suffer a punishment that would be worse than death. But today, in order to have my husband's baby, please let my husband enjoy himself." Xiao Yoshing's eyes were mesmerized, and her fingers ran through the buttons of her pajamas. While Jiang Hao said, "Wife, it's not that I don't agree with you, but think about it, we're not even married yet, and if we have a child, you'll be the subject of gossip." Xiao Yusheng was momentarily stunned, and then said coldly, "I don't care about the stares of those people." She put her arms around Jiang Hao's neck and whispered, "There's only you." Seeing that Xiao Yusheng was impervious to persuasion, Jiang Hao was really anxious. After a moment of contemplation, he sighed and said, "Wife, you can care less, but I do care. Of course, what I care about is not the stares of others. Guess what I care about?" Xiao Yusheng shook his head and kissed Jiang Hao's cheek, already a little impatient. "What I care about is you, my wife. How can I bear to see you being gossiped about by those people? Even if you don't care, my dear wife." Jiang Hao laughed, imitating Xiao Yoshing's mannerisms and whispering in his ear, "My dear wife, if you are hurt even a little, I will be heartbroken." Wife, why aren't you saying anything? In the moonlight, he saw that Xiao Yusheng was blushing like a young girl, her eyes moist. Husband, are you confessing your love to me? After all these years, this is the first time I've heard my husband say such sweet things to me. I'm so happy, really happy. Back in high school, it was always me who took the initiative to confess my love. But back then, my husband would always laugh it off, insisting that he only saw me as a little sister. Now to hear him say that he loves me. I'm so happy. In the darkness, Xiao Yusheng's tears fell like rain, reflecting the poignant and faint moonlight. Jiang Haowei was stunned, and then tenderly wiped away the tears on her cheeks. Unexpectedly, the sweet nothings he had said just to placate her had made Xiao Yusheng cry like that. Jiang Haowei was saddened. He felt that compared to the love Xiao Yusheng gave him, his own love was a little lacking. But this is a paradoxical question after all. His original intention was to dilute his relationship with Xiao Yusheng. But now. Then, after we get married, let's have a baby. But if we take precautions now, we can still have sex with my husband. Xiao Yusheng said indifferently. Cough cough, didn't we agree on 3 rules? Before we get married, we can't have sex, and we have to sleep in separate rooms. Jiang Hao said sternly. As Xiao Yusheng heard this, her eyes immediately grew cold. This is not allowed, that is not allowed. It seems that my husband is not a good husband, but a mixed fish husband. Punishment is necessary for a mixed fish husband's words. Xiao Yusheng's red lips were tinged with a somewhat deranged, morbid smile. Then, she bit Jiang Hao's ear, harder and harder. Jiang Hao was in pain and immediately became anxious. Shenger, look, it's actually my fault. You act like this every day, and you transform into a sickly form at the slightest provocation. I have the heart to follow you, but I'm also afraid. If you just acted like a spoiled child once in a while. Act like a spoiled child? Xiao Yusheng was slightly startled. Well, yes, a normal wife should act like a spoiled child with her husband, but you. Jiang Hao froze before he could finish speaking. Xiao Yusheng was seen hiding in his arms, rubbing his arm with her little head while whispering, "Honey, I want to be loved." Jiang Hao's gaze softened, and he subconsciously stroked Xiao Yusheng's head. She really was being cute, and it was strange how it was endearing. Listen to me, honey, I'm not trying to avoid anything, I just want to maintain our love after marriage, so I came up with the 3 rules. If we do this every day, we'll definitely get bored after marriage. Don't worry, as long as you agree to my 3 rules and don't get cold feet before the wedding, I'll let you do whatever you want on our wedding night. Jiang Hao said with a smile. That's true. Alright, as you wish. You can't get cold feet, but we can't sleep in separate rooms. Xiao Yusheng said coldly. No matter how much you pout this time, it's useless. I'm a man of principle. As soon as Jiang Hao finished speaking, Xiao Yusheng wrapped her arms around his waist and whispered, I want to sleep with my husband. If I don't sleep with my husband, I'll be scared and have nightmares. Husband, please don't separate the rooms. Jiang Hao had no choice but to sigh heavily after a long while and say, okay, then let's sleep together. But remember, no awkwardness. After saying that, he closed his eyes and began to sleep. In the darkness, Xiao Yusheng gazed at the profile of Jiang Hao, smiling as she nibbled her finger. After making sure that Jiang Hao was asleep, she took Jiang Hao's hand and carefully climbed into his arms. I could tell from the sweet nothings you just said that you were just going through the motions. But I'm still very happy. Because even if you only love me a little, even if it's just a little love, it will make me feel endless happiness. I can hold your hand like this and sleep happily. Xiao Yusheng leaned into Jiang Hao's ear and whispered, Good night, honey, I love you. While Jiang Hao and Xiao Yusheng slept, on the other side of Tianhai City, in a villa, Su Ruoyan was smoking a cigarette and drawing something on a piece of white paper. Opposite her, the woman with long platinum hair was still wearing a hoodie, her stunning appearance completely hidden under the hood. Miss Ji, why don't you take off the hood? It's stuffy, isn't it? There's no one else here. Su Ruoyan was very excited at the moment, planning a certain route on the white paper, and said to Miss Ji without even looking up. Are you telling me what to do? Miss Ji spoke indifferently, her voice neither happy nor sad, but there was a hint of a stern atmosphere. Su Ruoyan clenched her fists and remained silent. Tomorrow, we can take action against Jiang Hao. What are you going to do? Miss Ji asked indifferently. Right now, he is being protected by that bitch Xiao Yusheng. As soon as Su Ruoyan said the word bitch, she spat out a mouthful of blood in pain. At that moment, Miss Ji's foot slammed into her lower abdomen. Say one more bad thing about Yusheng. I'll destroy your Su family. Miss G gently tucked her platinum blonde hair back under her hood, as if what had just happened had never happened. Su Ruoyan nodded with gritted teeth. After learning the identity of this woman, she dared not think of any resistance. Miss G, now that Zhang Hao is under the protection of President Xiao, the only way is to find an opportunity to assassinate him. And I know a very famous killer in the Tianhai city underworld. Therefore, before Su Ruoyan could finish speaking, Miss G turned around and left. As you wish. If you succeed, I will tell you the clue to Lin Hao. If you fail, I will personally kill him. Touch my woman, and he's already half dead. Miss G's voice faded away, while Su Ruoyan tied her red hair into a ponytail, her eyes flashing with madness. Lin Hao's younger brother, wait a little longer, I'll see you soon, sister. Chapter 30, The Cute Girl. Early the next morning, Zhang Hao climbed out of bed with sleepy eyes and yawned wearily. He really didn't sleep well all night. Every time he fell asleep, Xiao Yusheng would cling to him like a spoiled kitten and rest her head on his arm. But it was only 8 o'clock, did Yusheng wake up so early? Zhang Hao looked at the empty bed in surprise. As soon as he stepped out of the room, a maid said to him with a smile, "Good morning, young master." The young lady received a notice at 4 o'clock that she had to attend a national symposium in the morning, and she is probably already in the imperial capital now. I see. Zhang Hao nodded, relieved. The long-lost sense of freedom made him smile happily. Then, I'll go to the company in the morning and just hang out, and then enjoy my single life in the afternoon. He stretched comfortably and was about to go wash up and have some breakfast. Half an hour later, Zhang Hao was driving an AMG GT50, humming a little tune as he sped along the small road. Every time he went to the office, he had to pass through this suburb, and there wasn't much traffic or people, so he drove fast. Let me think, should I go drinking in the afternoon, or go to the bathhouse to get a foot massage? No, forget the bathhouse. Although I only go there to wash my feet and soak in the bath, what if Yusheng finds out? Zhang Hao was thinking nonsense, and after a moment he suddenly opened his eyes wide and slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched against the road, and the GT50 almost hit the young girl in front of the car. The girl looked to be barely legal, wearing a very youthful black JK uniform with her calves tightly wrapped in stockings. The girl's clear, peach-colored eyes were a little dazed, like a fawn lost in the forest, and her young cheeks were as beautiful as cherry blossoms just blooming in March. The strangest thing was the wooden box she was carrying behind her, which looked a bit like a guitar. It seemed like a girl who loved to play rock music. Little sister, are you okay? Zhang Hao anxiously pushed open the car door, walked over to the girl, and instantly gasped. He could see that the car's grille was almost touching the girl's skirt. If he had hit the brakes a little later, the consequences would have been unimaginable. But Zhang Hao was also very puzzled. The girl's cute aura was very similar to that of a fawn. But her IQ was the same as that of a stupid moose from the northeast. He had slammed on the brakes and honked the horn at the same time, but the girl was like a deaf person, not paying any attention at all. Not only did she not avoid the car, but she stood stupidly where she was, waiting for him to hit her. The girl didn't answer Zhang Hao's question, but looked at him blankly, then lowered her head and timidly said, "Big brother, can I ask you for something?" "Huh? What?" Zhang Hao was dumbfounded. "Sister, the dump truck almost killed you, and now you're asking me for something? Wait, could it be the legendary bumping for porcelain?" Zhang Hao almost laughed, but he didn't know what to say. After all, he was the one who almost became the driver at fault. "You want something, right? Fine, fine. I'll tell you, if you want money, forget it," he said coldly, then quickly returned to the car and picked up a can of fruit-hard candy. "Here, this can of candy is for the mental damages. Don't do anything rash, I'm telling you, I have a dashcam in the car." Before he could finish, the girl snatched the hard candy from his hand. The girl's original timidity vanished, and she said to Zhang Hao in surprise, "Thank you, big brother. Oh, I get to eat candy." With that, the girl joyfully took out a piece of fruit candy, carefully placed it in her mouth, and closed her eyes in enjoyment. Zhang Hao's mouth twitched. "So, little sister, are you sure you're okay? If I'm okay, I'll leave." The girl didn't say anything, just crouched on the curb and ate the candy obediently. She can't be mentally handicapped. Zhang Hao looked at the girl with pity, then drove away. The girl stared blankly at the GT50 speeding away, not saying a word, and continued to eat the candy slowly. At that moment, the girl's phone rang. Even though the voice on the other end of the line was extremely grumpy and cold, the girl continued to eat the candy at her own pace. No, I can't. I'm eating candy this time. I'll have to wait for next time. The girl mumbled to the other end of the line. Jiang Hao parked his car in the company's basement and leisurely walked to the nearest Wangba tea princess. This was his old habit, to refresh himself with a cup of coffee or milk tea before work every day. Haoran Media Company is located in the remote area of Lujiazui, but even if it is remote, there are still a lot of shops. Just as Jiang Hao was sitting in the Wangba Tea Princess store, using the WeChat applet to place an order, he suddenly had goosebumps all over his body and his hair stood on end. This was a very dangerous feeling, as if disaster was imminent. He was incredibly scared, and subconsciously looked around. Instantly, his pupils contracted and he gave a start. It wasn't because he had encountered something terrible. Rather, he had run into that young girl again. Yes, it was the young girl he had almost hit with his car before. The young girl was blinking her peach-colored eyes and tilting her little head, looking at him in puzzlement. Rather than saying that the look was one of observation, it was more like. Jiang Hao frowned. He felt that the young girl's look was somewhat like the look of some kind of animal he had seen in the world of animals when he was a child. What kind of animal was it? Just then, the young girl actually took the initiative to speak to him. Big brother, can I ask you for something? I'm not greedy. But, I can't give you candy this time. The young girl's immature voice, with its cute, high-pitched intonation, made Jiang Hao's heart throb. More stuff? Oh no, this is bad. He had really run into a gold digger. Jiang Hao smiled bitterly. How is it that he encounters all sorts of strange things? If the young girl really had been hit by his car, then he would admit it and pay compensation if necessary. But my car didn't even touch you, so why did you chase me from Xinzhuang to People's Square? You want something, right? Fine, I'll tell you, but I repeat, there's not a penny. Jiang Hao sneered at the girl with a murderous look, but when he saw her dumb and green face, he couldn't help but feel a little reluctant. He could only say angrily, there's not a penny, but I can give you a cup of milk tea. After saying that, he handed the girl the milk tea, before he had a chance to insert the straw. The milk tea is for your mental damages, don't ever think of asking for more. Jiang Hao snorted, and left through the shop door. The girl, on the other hand, slightly happily raised the corners of her lips, and held the cup of just-made Wanli Magnolia in her hands. She sipped the iced milk tea lightly, and after a while, the phone in her hand rang again. What are you doing? Why haven't you done it yet? The voice on the other end of the line was sinister and evil. There's milk tea to drink. The milk tea is delicious. The girl said in a low voice, and then hung up the phone. I'm warning you, if you don't. The woman on the other end of the phone didn't finish speaking before the girl hung up, and she happily drank the milk tea. At this time, a lecherous old man who had been observing the girl from inside the shop rubbed his hands together and sat down in front of her, grinning. Uncle, what do you want? The girl innocently greeted him, and quickly finished the milk tea. Little sister, are you interested in getting to know each other? My house is quite big, I can take you to play. The lecherous man looked at the beautiful young girl in front of him, and his mouth watered. Oh, I see. I understand, you want to invite me to play, right? But my mom said I can't go with someone like you. The young girl shook her head innocently. Hey, don't mention that, you like drinking milk tea, right? Come with me, I'll buy you some every day. The lecherous man licked his lips. Uncle, do you really have to take me away? But I already rejected you. That's a lot of trouble. Forget it, it's better to reason with Uncle. The girl smiled coyly and said, then she took off the wooden box she was carrying on her back. The lecherous man looked at the wooden box the girl placed on the table and said curiously, little sister, what is this? Uncle, this is my favorite thing. I can use this to reason with you. You'll see. I think you'll like it too, Uncle. The girl blinked her clear, beautiful eyes, and then slowly opened the box. Inside the box, quietly lying was a dazzling, sharp tang sword. Holy shit, what a cool sword. The lecherous man's eyes went wide. He felt that this sword was even more exquisite and gorgeous than the swords he had seen in anime or games. Do you like it, Uncle? I'm glad you like it. The young girl smiled simply and gently grasped the handle of the sword. For half a minute. The originally quiet Wangba tea princess was in an uproar, with frightened screams from time to time. The young girl slowly walked out of the milk tea shop with a cup of milk tea in her hand, pouting and muttering, "The ice has melted, it's not sweet anymore." She looked at her black school uniform again, like a little child, and cheerfully exclaimed with joy, "Black is the best, you can't tell it's been stained with blood." While the girl was overjoyed, she shyly whispered to the wooden box in her arms containing the Tangdao sword, "Dedeo, today's whetstone isn't very good, I'll find you a better one next time." The Tangdao sword did not respond to the girl's words. Instead, in the store, the wretched man, whose severed head had long been separated, looked in horror at the pure and innocent young girl outside the floor-to-ceiling window, his mouth wide open as if he were about to respond to something.